Yes, that's right. In today's feature-length movie-long video, you will see me play through 100, 200, 300, and 400 days of Stardew Valley Expanded back to back to back to back. Stardew Valley Expanded is a fan-made mod for the base game which adds things like more NPCs, new locations, new fish to catch, and a whole heap more. Before the video starts, if you do end up enjoying what you see, make sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel. That way more people get to see my videos. And these do take me ages to put together, so your support is much appreciated. So without further ado, sit back, relax, get your snacks ready to go, and let's get into 400 days of Stardew Valley Expanded. Day 1, I arrived at my new and improved looking farm and really just took in the scenery. With Stardew Valley Expanded comes a whole new farm called Grandpa's Farm, which I'm sure I'll acquaint myself with as I get further down the road. But for now, I planted my parsnip seeds into the ground and got to chopping down trees to make myself a chest. I then ventured into town where I met some familiar and unfamiliar faces. Victor and Olivia were two new characters who both lived in what I can only describe as a very, very big house. I mean, come on, they have a library, a TV room, and a sitting room. My farmhouse only has one room. I then continued venturing around the valley where I came across Sophia at Blue Moon Vineyard. I tried heading further east but got stuck on an invisible wall, so I may have to come back later. Over at Pierre's, I bought myself an extra 27 parsnip seeds before heading back to the farm, but I got stuck behind some rocks without my pickaxe. So one detour later and I was back at the farm planting and watering the rest of my parsnips. To finish the day off, I cleared some debris from around my crops and headed to bed. I emerged on day 2 to another lovely day in the valley. So I watered all of my parsnips, grabbed enough wood to make myself a chest, and headed on down to the beach. An old looking marina named Willie offered me his old fishing rod, so I decided to take it and took it up to the mountain lake to do some fishing for the day. I popped my chest down and got comfy. I then spent the rest of the day catching fish, as to be honest, there isn't too much to do when you first start in Stardew Valley. Instead, I just enjoyed the sound of the nature around me. That was until that night I passed out at 2 AM. Day 3 was a guaranteed rainy day, which meant I didn't have to worry about watering any crops today. So with that extra energy, I popped down to the river to try and catch me some catfish. But I ended up failing to catch any, so I sulked my way up to the mountain lake where I kept on fishing. My goal here was to stockpile all of my fish and to get to level 5 fishing, where I could choose the Fisher perk. This increases the price of fish you sell by 25%, that way I can sell them all for a whole lot more. So I continued to fish until I passed out that night at 2 AM. The rain had eased on day 4, so it was back to watering my parsnips, and fishing of course. I fished all the way to about 8 PM. Afterwards, I made a few trips back and forth to the farmhouse to bring back as much stuff as I could. I had my fingers crossed that I had caught enough fish to get myself to level 5 fishing, and as I passed out at 2 AM, again, I had managed to get to level 5 fishing, so I chose the Fisher perk. Day 5 started out with dumping all of my fish into the shipping bin and reading the mail. I had received my 3rd letter about someone saving me after passing out, and I was starting to worry about my image around town. But who cares about that when you have parsnips to harvest? I shipped most of them off, but kept a few for a bit of energy because today we were going on an expedition. That's right, today the mines open up and I'm gonna go cave diving. Of course, being in the expanded mod, the mines have moved from where they usually are. I met an old looking miner who offered me his old rusty sword. I popped down my chest and I dove into the mines. I wasn't too worried about getting as far down as I could. I was mainly hoping to get as much copper as I could, specifically enough for a furnace and 5 copper bars. I did end up getting down to level 10 and I think I had just enough copper for what I wanted. Just before bed, I popped some valuables I had found from my expedition into the shipping bin just for a little bit of extra cash, and I called it in for the night. Clint paid me the morning of day 6 to give me a blueprint for a furnace. What a nice guy. I then smelted 5 copper bars and headed into town. I met up with Mayor Lewis, who showed me around the old community center. It was going well until I started seeing this cheeky yet adorably cute little guy who made me look a bit crazy. Not a good start in the valley considering I've needed help 3 times after passing out at 2 AM already. Anyway, the reason I wanted 5 copper bars was for the simple fact that I wanted a pickaxe upgrade. So over at Clint's I did exactly that. I'll just have to wait a couple of days until it's ready though. I paid a visit to Pierre's afterwards where I splashed the rest of my gold on 135 potato seeds. Pierre didn't know what had hit him, and neither did my wallet. Then for the rest of the day I spent it setting up an area for all of my potatoes until bedtime. Day 7 I was up at the crack of dawn watering all of my potatoes. And let me tell you, there are a lot of potatoes. I made my way over to the old looking wizard who offered me a taste of his weird potion. One potion up the nostril later and I was able to read the ancient language of Junimo. A bit unorthodox if you ask me, but hey, here we are. And then it was back to fishing up at the mountain lake for the day. With my pickaxe out of action for another day, I thought it would be best to stock up on fish for energy before I hit the mines again. And yeah, I ended up fishing for the rest of the day. But just before bed, I did take all of my mining resources up to my chest in the mines so I wouldn't have to worry about doing it later. It was day 8 and I was back to watering potatoes. Someone remind me next time not to buy so many damn potatoes. Before heading to the mines for the day, I passed by Clint to pick up my newly upgraded copper pickaxe. Ooh, so shiny. And then I hit the mines for the day. My aim was to get to level 40 before the 13th so that I could make myself some sprinklers. That way, when I get my hands on some strawberry seeds from the egg festival, I won't have to worry about watering them all. I continue down and... hold on. Is that a... no. It can't be. Oh my god, it is. It's an ancient seed. Now for those who haven't played a lot of Stardew Valley before, the ancient seed is an artifact. Passing it on to Gunther at the museum, in return he'll give you a plantable ancient seed back to you. Now these plants take 28 days to grow, but they grow in all seasons except winter. And you get a fruit every 7 days once the plant is fully grown. Then if you put the fruit into a keg and wait 6 days, you'll get ancient fruit wine, which is probably one of the most profitable items in the whole game. So, long story short, I was very excited. To round the day out, I managed to get all the way down to level 25 before returning home to bed. Day 9 started out with some more watering. I swear to Christ, if it doesn't rain and I have to painstakingly water all of these potatoes, I'm gonna be so mad. And then it was back to the mines for the rest of the day. I gained another 10 levels, putting me on level 35 by the end of the day. Just before bed, I decided to use up the rest of my energy clearing some more area around my crops just in case. Marnie visited me the morning of day 10 with the goodest looking boy I've ever seen. Of course I said yes to adopting him and named him my new best friend Samson. As cute as he was though, it's too bad he can't water crops because I'm getting sick of this. Then just like yesterday, I returned back to the mines for the day. I did have a riveting chat with Marlon though. I mined my way down to level 45 collecting iron and other materials as I went before calling it in for the night. Day 11 and yeah, you already know what I'm doing first. Having spent the last 3 days down in the mines, I was after a change of scenery, so I took my spring forageables off to the community center and completed my first bundle. Afterwards, I kinda just explored around the expanded valley. I hadn't taken much time to really look around the different areas. Back up at the Adventurers Guild, I found a hidden grave by a waterfall. I passed Sophia at Bloom Moo Vineyard, and found Vincent and Jazz playing around by the sewer, which is definitely not hygienic at all. I paid a visit to Andy's farm and found out he's a Joja fanboy, and also a bit of a slob. Down in the Cindersap forest, I found my way into a huge clearing where I stumbled across Aurora Vineyard. From the rundown fields and decrepit house, I think I can safely say no one has been here in a while. I did find a strange doll, some old newspaper, and what I assume is a bankruptcy notice, but I'm sure at some point I'll be able to bring this old vineyard back to its former glory. But right now, I don't think I'm doing squat about it, except getting lost in the woods. That's right, I spent a solid 3 minutes running around trying to get out of this damn forest. But I did manage to find my way out, and I went back home to sleep. My potatoes were ready to harvest on day 12 and I couldn't be more happier to not have to water them. I shoved them all into the shipping bin, I kept 10 for some extra energy though, and I spent most of the day carrying everything from my chest in the mines and back to the farm. And when I say most of the day, I mean it. After 3 trips there and back, it was already 3 PM. And what did I do for the rest of the day, you ask? I smelted ores. Yep, that's about it. But overnight I did get myself level 5 farming where I chose the tiller perk, which makes crops worth 10% more. Day 13 was the egg festival day and I spent the morning doing some big brain calculations. Mainly I was just working out how many strawberry seeds I could afford and how many sprinklers I would need for them. But math is hard, so I got my tools out and started clearing out some more debris for a bit. Over in town at the egg festival I stopped by Pierre's stall to buy myself 80 strawberry seeds and then decided to have a chat with every single villager. I then started up the egg hunt and I won't lie, I didn't know Expanded changed the location of the eggs, so I was a bit thrown off. But of course, being a highly talented Stardew Valley player, I adapted on the fly and still bet everybody, getting myself a beautiful straw hat for my efforts. I went to bed that night and I dreamt about how awesome I am. Day 14, I started my day waiting for Pierre's to open, but it's okay, as you all know I'm a very patient person. I did get to meet a new villager called Claire, and meeting her went very well. I definitely did not bonk her on the head. Finally, I was led into Pierre's and I bought myself a parsnip seed, potato seed, green bean seed, and a cauliflower seed, as these were needed to complete the spring crops bundle. Back over in the mines, I spent the rest of day 14 resetting level 40 and 20 to farm for copper and iron, as I still needed quite a lot for my sprinklers. And by the night time, I had more than enough to make enough sprinklers. Day 15, I just spent smelting my ores into bars. Yep, that's not a joke, I was smelting ores until the late afternoon. But with my sprinklers ready to go, I started my setup. I hadn't used normal sprinklers in a while, so it took me a while to nail down the pattern. But it got too late, so the morning of day 16, I finished off placing all of my sprinklers, planted my strawberries and spring crops, and it was looking pretty good. I'll never have to water another crop again, and I am so happy. I paid Gunther a visit at the museum and dropped off a couple of artifacts, including my ancient seed, which I took back home and planted next to my spring crops. For the rest of the day, I just cleared out some more area around the farm and stared longingly across my field of strawberries, admiring my beautiful handiwork, I assume. And then I headed off to bed. Day 17, I was passing through town and found Morris outside of Pierre's waving around some Joja pamphlets. Not cool, Morris. Not cool. I was, however, on my way down to Willie's so that I could get myself the fiberglass rod. For today, I was fishing for community center fish. From the ocean, I got a sardine. Over in the river, I fished myself up a sunfish. And up at the mountain lake, I caught a largemouth bass, chub, carp, and a bullhead. I still needed to catch a bream, but since they were not catchable until a bit later on, I filled my time by foraging for salmon berries around the farm. It finally got late enough for me to catch one, and then I dropped off all of my catches to the community center, after which I went to bed after a hard day's fishing. Day 18, I continued with my salmon berry picking around the valley. I did pop by Andy's to say hi. I really gotta stop doing that. I found Lewis up by the mountains having a grump about Jojamart being responsible for the rockfall blocking the pathway up to the railway. He did mention another villager called Susan who resides up there, who is unfortunately stuck there at the moment. But I couldn't do much about it, so sorry Susan, it was back to salmonberry picking. For the rest of the day, I used up my energy clearing more debris out from my farm before getting some sleep. Andy paid me a visit the morning of day 19 to warn me about crows. But I've taken precautionary measures to make sure my crops don't get eaten, so thanks, but no thanks. I took a stroll through town and over to the museum where I had to wait, and oh boy do I love waiting. And I dropped off another artifact to Gunther. Up at Robin's, I returned her lost axe I found yesterday while berry picking, and then I hit up the mines. I was doing so well, I had made it down to level 53, and then while trying to eat a salmon berry, I accidentally backed up to the ladder and left the mines. I decided it was getting too late to go back down and try again, so back on the farm I used my remaining energy to clear some more debris until bed. Day 20, despite my unfortunate early exit from the mines yesterday night, I was back there today determined to dive down even further. I spent the whole day in the mines. I even managed to swap out my wooden club with a crystal dagger, a major and much needed upgrade of weapon. By the end of the day I had reached level 67 and I headed back home just before it got too late. Day 21, the rain was pouring down, which meant I had some more community center fish to catch. I ventured down to the river where I caught myself a catfish and a shad. I popped by Gunther again and handed over another dwarvish scroll where I was rewarded with some cauliflower seeds. A bit too late to plant them now, but hey, thanks anyway, Gunther. Up at the community center, I handed over the catfish and the shad to go towards the river fish bundle. But I wasn't finished just yet. I had one more fish to catch, which was the eel. You can only catch it in the rain and after 4 PM, so I spent a while on the pier waiting to hook it. After a while, I finally managed to catch one, and I passed by the community center to hand it in before heading home and eventually to bed. Demetrius popped by the farm the morning of day 22, offering to do something with my cave. My farm cave, of course, get your heads out of the gutter. So I said I wanted fruit bats, meaning my cave would fill up with free fruit. I mainly chose this option over the mushrooms to help with the community center bundles. But anyway, it was back to the mines today and I was putting my crystal dagger to good use. I managed to get all the way down to level 80 and I upgraded my dagger once again to a bone sword, which I think I enjoy using a lot more anyway. But with having reached level 80 where gold all spawns, and summer just around the corner, I farm for gold for the rest of the day. This is because I want to make quality sprinklers heading into summer, which requires gold bars to make. Normal sprinklers are fine, but I don't want to look poor, you know? I returned home with my haul of goodies, put them away in my chest, and I headed to bed. Overnight, I managed to get to level 5 mining, so I opted to go with the miner perk, which adds 1 ore per vein I mined, which is very handy to have in the early game. Day 23, the rain was once again pouring down, so to avoid getting my beautiful hair wet, I headed back to the mines where, you guessed it, I farmed for more gold. And also, how did this frog get down here? Running back home felt quite moody with all of this fog, and with a bit of time time left in the day, I decided to take some materials over to the community center and complete the construction bundle, which opened up the boiler room and the vault. And just before bedtime, I cleared out some more of the farm. Day 24, my first strawberry harvest was ready to go, so I picked them all and dumped them straight into the shipping bin. Afterwards, I gathered up everything I needed to complete every bundle in the boiler room and headed into town. But before I could do that, Leia showed me the community garden, which I think is very wholesome. I dropped off all of my goodies to the boiler room plaque, which completed it, meaning that starting from tomorrow, I will have the minecarts to help me get around a lot easier. I even got a couple of goodies back for completing all 3 bundles, and since I was in the mood for some more community center completion, I took a few more things from my chest to hand in, and then it was back to the mine grind where I spent the rest of the day resetting level 80 and farming for more gold. Overnight, the Junimos performed a sick-ass dance number which unlocked the minecarts for me. It was day 25, and from my many trips down in the mines, I had gathered up quite a horde of geodes. So over at Clint's, I had him break them all open for me, after which I donated a bunch of new undiscovered minerals to Gunther at the museum. I repeated the process once again since I ran out of inventory space the first time. Then back on the farm, I remembered my mining chest was full of stuff I could donate, so I hauled them back to Gunther, who was honestly probably having a field day watching all of these donations roll in. I gathered up my rewards and I headed back to the farm to drop them off. Down at the beach, I used some spare wood to repair the bridge over to the tide pools and did some foraging. Back on the farm, I spent the rest of the night smelting ores and clearing some more debris off the farm. Mayor Lewis popped by the morning of day 26 just to check up on me, and I think that's lovely. All I did today was clear out more of the farm and smelt ores into bars for those quality sprinklers I wanted to have for summer. And yeah, that's about it really. Day 27 provided with a bit more excitement because I was back in the mines. This time I was resetting level 20 looking for copper as I was running a bit short. By the afternoon I had gotten quite a lot of copper, so I headed down to the museum once again where I donated a rusty spur. Up at Robbins I bought myself a whole heap of pathway crafting recipes because I wanted to spice up my farm a little bit, which is what I spent the rest of the night doing. You know, usually I go for stone walkways, and if you've seen my other How Far Can I Get in 100 Days series, then you'll know fully well that I love my stone walkways. So I decided to challenge myself and I went with the wooden walkways just to change it up a wee bit. And honestly, I was pretty happy with the final results. This walkway will head up to my hub area, and this is where I'll put my chests and my furnaces. I'm a big fan of the stone pathways in between the wooden paths though. Man, I'm so good at decorating. Day 28 was the final day of spring. My spring crops had grown just in time. Talk about cutting it close. So I took them over to the community center where I completed the spring crops bundle. Back on the farm, it was the second and final strawberry harvest, so I went along and picked my berries. Being the impatient person that I am, I took them straight to Pierre's so I could have my gold now, because I want it now. Also, Morris came into the store and gave everyone more Joja coupons, which was a real kick in the teeth to Pierre considering he's outside every morning waving them around anyway. What a dick. Anyway, I spent the rest of the day building my hub area and moving everything over, where I got to reorganize all of my chests. You know, I don't think there's anything more satisfying. I added some torches around for light and I headed to bed ready for summer. Day 29, I walked outside, smelled the sweet summer air, and got to work. I went about removing my sprinklers and upgraded to some quality sprinklers. I popped by Pierre's to get myself 16 melon seeds with 16 fertilizer, 96 blueberry seeds, and the final backpack upgrade. It did then occur to me I had forgotten to purchase my summer crop bundle seeds, so one walk of shame back to Pierre's again, and I had everything I needed. Back on the farm, I got to watering and planting my seeds. The melons and fertilizer I need for the quality crops bundle. The summer crops are obviously for the summer crops bundle, and the blueberries are going to be my main source of income for the summer. After a hard day's work setting up my crop area, I went to bed and dreamed about how awesome I am. Day 30, I woke up and checked to make sure I had set everything up right, and it was looking pretty good. I visited my fruit cave for the first time and cleared out a bunch of fruit before heading on over to Pierre's to get a poppy and a sunflower seed, as they're 2 flowers I'll need for community center bundles. Back on the farm, I started to lay out plans for a big old tree farm. Now, it wouldn't be a Stardew playthrough with Poxyl if I didn't have a tree farm, now would it? I plan to fill up this first area with all oak trees and tap them with tappers for a whole bunch of oak resin. This is because I'm gonna need a lot of it for keg making when I eventually fill my farm with more ancient fruit. And then I kinda just ran around the valley for a while. Don't ask me why I did, I just did. I did try very hard to hop on the swing, but unfortunately I don't think that's possible. Before bed I added some more acorns to the tree farm and headed to sleep. It was day 31 and I was woken up to a loud explosion. Before I could go investigate though, Susan paid me a visit. Now she was the one stuck behind the rockfall, which is now cleared. I'll go and pay her a visit soon, I think. I managed to find the cause of said explosion last night, and yeah, It's a big old meteor, but it's across the river, so I'll deal with that later. I then spent an hour waiting outside Clint's, which is my favorite thing to do, as you all know. Once inside, I put my axe in for a copper upgrade, and then I ventured up to the railway to visit Susan on Emerald Farm. Now don't get me wrong, Susan, I love kegs too, but that is the most inefficient way to lay them out. I mean, you can't even reach the ones in the back. She's obviously not a pro farmer like I am. I moved on from Emerald Farm and explored a little bit further north and came across a graveyard with a couple of goodies. They're probably cursed, but hey, what's the worst that could happen? Back in town, I found Pierre and Morris having a lover's quarrel. Let's be real, we shipped them though. And then I dropped off my summer forageables to the community center, completing another bundle. For the rest of the day, I hit up the mines collecting copper and any other materials I could get my hands on. I passed by the Adventurers Guild to see what was up, and then I headed to bed. Day 32, I spent back in the mines collecting iron, resources, and slaying monsters. And yeah, that's about it. Day 33, I braved the rain and headed on over to the museum to drop off another dwarf scroll I had found before picking up my shiny new copper axe from Clint's. Wasting no time at all, I put my freshly upgraded axe to work cutting down trees in the Cindersap forest, which with the expanded mod adds a whole buttload more trees. Super handy for when I'm trying to make 400 kegs later on. Back on the farm, I added a few more acorns to my tree farm and ventured down to the traveling cart where I bought myself a Reii seed. This is so in fall I can grow it and get myself a star drop, which I totally remembered to do, by the way. That is something I definitely remembered to do. But I thought it would be better to get it now in preparation, and then I headed off to bed. Day 34, I turned a whole heap of bug meat into bait, loaded it up onto my fishing rod, and headed out for a bit of fishing. At the mountain lake, I caught a sturgeon, and down on the pier, I caught a bunch of fish. Most importantly, a tuna, a tilapia, and a pufferfish. I dropped off my catches to the community center. By evening time, I was back to chopping down trees for more wood, and I made a start on decorating more of the farm by adding some grass and pine tree seeds. I said goodnight to Samson and I headed to bed myself. Overnight, I reached level 5 foraging, so I went with the Forester perk, which drops 25% more wood when chopping down trees. And with all the trees with the expanded mod brings, I'll have no excuse for not having enough wood. It was day 35, and on this beautiful summer's day, I decided to expand my tree farm a bit. I thought this side of it could house maple and pine trees with tappers on them for pine tar and maple syrup. So I chipped away at it, and by the afternoon I was pretty happy with the layout, so I added in my tree seeds. I then popped by piers to get some more grass starter, which I placed around my hub area. The rest of the night, however, I spent it down in the mines, slaying monsters and collecting resources. I found an infested floor on level 21, so I kept resetting it for slime kills, which is an extra fun bonus fact for you. If you find an infested floor and reset it, then it'll always be an infested floor, but just for that day. Day 36, I was contemplating the loneliness of being a farmer and dreamed of having some friends. So I cleared out one of these massive fenced areas where I planned to have some animal friends join me on my farm. Of course, it wouldn't be a farm without a space for machines, so I made this little spot for them and fenced it off, which I think looks really nice. I no joke spent all day on this, but it was worth it because I don't want to be so lonely anymore.
They ask you how you are, you just have to say that you're fine when you're not really fine, but you just can't get into it because they would never.
I spent the morning of day 37 contemplating what to do for the day, but then I decided a good use of my time could be spent collecting gold and resources, so that is exactly what I did. By the late afternoon, I was bored of the mine, so I spent the rest of my energy chopping down trees for wood before calling it an early night. Day 38, my poppy and sunflower were all growing up, so I picked them and headed on over to the community center to drop them off. Down in the mines is where I spent most of the day though, collecting resources and slaying monsters. It wasn't until later on that night I was lucky enough to receive a second ancient seed. I continued grinding away in the mines until late, and I headed back home to sort my inventory and plant my second ancient seed. Day 39, I started out my day by finding a chicken statue artifact. And today was the Valley Luau. But seeing as there was a whole nother area to the west of the valley, I decided to see if I could catch any cool fish I hadn't caught yet from this bridge. I did catch a minnow, which is a tiny little fish. I mean, look how cute it is. But it was time for the luau, so I grabbed a gold quality spiceberry and headed on down to the beach. I chucked it into the potluck soup and hoped the mayor liked it.
Where's the lamb sauce?
Nah, just kidding, he liked it. When I left though, it was already 10 PM, meaning I had been on the beach for a whole 10 hours. What could I have possibly been doing for 10 hours? You know what? Let's just move on. Day 40, on my way into town that morning, I came across another good looking boy called Dusty. Of course, I gave him some pats. Over at the museum, I handed my chicken statue over to Gunther and headed on down to the beach to do some foraging. I did manage to dig up a starfish, so I went back to Gunther's to donate it. I set myself up on the pier and decided to do some fishing for the day. I then fished up an anchor, so back to Gunther's I went to donate it. I then managed to fish up an ornamental fan, so back to Gunther's I went to donate it. I did fish up another type of starfish, who I will admit looks very cute. But it was getting late, so back on the farm I organized my stuff back into my chest, dumped my fish into the shipping bin, put some iron into my furnaces, and called it a night. Day 41, my melons were ready for harvest. I went along and picked them all, I dumped them into the shipping bin, and I kept 5 for the bundle. I headed into town where I dropped off the melons to the community center and got enough melons to replant back on the farm, just for some extra cash. I popped by Robin's to purchase myself a coop, which I placed in my new animal area, and I was that much closer to having some friends on my lonely farm. But there was no time to wallow in despair, so I dived into the mines to slay monsters and collect more resources. I spent the rest of the day there, and just before it got too late, I headed home to drop off my spoils and go to bed. It was day 42 and my blueberries were finally ready to harvest. So I went along and picked them all. And my summer crops were ready to be harvested too, so I picked them as well. I journeyed into town where I found Demetrius by the fountain and he decided to give me a quick history lesson about the valley. I agreed, but make this quick man, I got shit to do. After that invigorating talk, I completed the summer crops bundle in the community center, sold my blueberries to Pierre and put my axe in for an iron upgrade at Clint's. Down on the beach, I did a bit of foraging before heading up the mines again for gold, resources and slaying monsters, which is exactly what I did until bedtime. Day 43, I was straight back to the mines and resetting level 40 for more iron and stuff, which is pretty much where I spent the whole day. Day 44, my very first ancient fruit was ready to be picked. Look at it in all its glory. My axe was also ready to be collected, so I stopped by Clint's to pick it up. I put it to good use by opening up the secret woods, which can only be accessed with an iron axe. And my goodness me, this area has been vastly expanded, which is fantastic for collecting hardwood. I managed to find some new forageables, including a poison mushroom, a 4-leaf clover, and some red baneberry. I found the old Master Cannoli statue, but spent way too long trying to get to him through this little maze thing. I honestly didn't even make it to him, I just gave up. Defeated, I slowly made my way back to the farm from the secret woods. Good to know I can easily access it from the farm though. I did some reorganizing of chests before heading to bed early. Was I embarrassed by today's events? Yes. Do I want to talk about it? No. I started off day 45 by getting myself a barn from Robin's, which I placed next to my coop. I then cleared out the trees from the backwoods as I was trying to make up for all the wood I had just spent on the barn. I then continued my tree chopping rampage down into the cindersap forest and ended up chopping trees for the rest of the day. Day 46 was another round of blueberries ready for harvest, so I got to picking. I headed straight to Pierre's, but of course I had to wait outside. I sold all my blueberries to him, where I made a pretty penny off of them all, and using some of my newfound wealth, I put my pickaxe in for a steel upgrade. I then went for a walk around the valley, where I stumbled into Sophia at Blue Moon Vineyard again, who kindly gave me a quality sprinkler. I fished down at the river for a bit before getting bored and heading up to the mountain lake for a change of scenery. Although Abigail was there for a while and kinda just stared into the distance for ages. You know, I wonder what she was looking at. Back on the farm, I dropped my fish into the shipping bin and decided to head to bed. Day 47, I popped by Marnie's to get myself some chicken friends for the farm. I called one Doug and the other June. I love them and they will be my friends forever. I did lose them for a bit though because they're tiny, so I had to follow the moving grass to find them. I then made a few tappers to put on some of my trees that had grown over in the tree farm and headed on down to the traveling cart to see what was for purchase. Nothing good as usual, so thanks for nothing. For the rest of the day, I swung my axe around chopping trees in the cindersap forest for wood, which took me all the way to sleep time. The morning of day 48 started out with some peaceful foraging on the beach. I even found a sand dollar. And I got my new and improved steel pickaxe from Clint's. And then it was time to hit the mines again, but this time I was heading for the bottom. On floor 90 I got myself the obsidian edge sword, and by the end of the day I had made it all the way down to level 100, where I discovered my first star drop. Star drops increase your overall energy and there are 7 to collect. So 1 down, 6 to go. Day 49 I started my day breaking rocks and saying hello to my new friends June and Doug. With my barn now complete, I paid Marnie a visit and bought myself another another friend, Fergie the cow. She was a little shy at first, but I'm sure she'll warm up to me. Over at Clint's, I popped my hoe in for a copper upgrade and headed back to the farm where, yes, this is controversial, but I tore the wooden paths down. I know, I said I always use stone paths, but there's a reason for that, and I was not warming to the wooden paths one bit. So for the rest of the day, I worked on the exterior remodel. I didn't have enough time yesterday to finish it, so I continued to work on day 50 to finish it off. And after painstakingly putting all of my chests back in place after moving them, I was much happier with how it looked. I took a quick pause in my creative stride to harvest some blueberries, and then I was right back to it. I won't lie, I had some real trouble working out a furnace area. I literally changed it about 5 times, so if you see it change, just know at some point it'll all work out. But after 2 days of work, this is what I had come up with, and I am much happier with how this looks. You see, stone walkways never let me down. Day 51, another ancient fruit had grown, so I picked it and put it away for safekeeping. I popped by Clint's, and I got my copper hoe and swapped it out for a watering can upgrade. I popped by Robin's to get myself a barn upgrade, but I forgot it was Tuesday, so... I swear every time I walk into Robin's for something, it's a Tuesday. The one day she doesn't work because she goes to Pilates. Feeling sad and stupid, I headed into the forest to commit heinous acts of deforestation by chopping down all the trees for wood. But they grow back, so it's okay. Back on the farm that evening, I wanted to see what stone pathways around the tree farm would look like, and yeah, I quickly got rid of them and I just headed to bed. Day 52, I waited very patiently for Robin's to open, and I finally got my barn upgrade. Afterwards, I headed up to the mines where I spent the rest of the day around level 20 farming for copper as I was running low and I needed lots of tappers for my tree farm. Day 53, I said hello to Fergie, June, and Doug and popped by Clint's to pick up my watering can. Afterwards, it was back to the mines and back to the grind. This time, I was mining around level 40. This was so I could collect iron for kegs and slay dust sprites for coal. Not to mention dust sprite kills to get the burglar's ring. Now, the burglar's ring is a ring that increases mob drop rates, and it is a super useful ring to have. But you need 500 dust sprite kills, so it'll take a bit of time. I ended up spending the whole day in the mines. I ended up with 176 iron ore, so hey, it's not a bad effort if you ask me. The rain was once again pouring down on day 54, but my blueberries and melons were ready to harvest, so I didn't mind. I did make some lightning rods because there was thunder in the air, and I hoped it would strike a few of them to get me some batteries. In the meantime, I popped by Gunther at the museum and donated the last dwarf scroll, which gave me the dwarvish translation guide, meaning I could now understand the dwarf in the mines. Not that I've really spoken to him before anyway, so. I took a quick detour down to the beach and did some foraging before fishing for a red snapper, which I caught first go. It was the last ocean fish I needed, so I took it up to the community center and completed another bundle. I once again changed up my furnace area by adding in more. I swear it's like Poxsteel. Make up your damn mind already. And I was one short too. So what did I do? I changed it, of course. No, that's not quite right. Okay, that's a little better. Day 55, I think I was getting closer to the perfect furnace area, so I worked on that for a bit. By late morning, I had this, and I was digging this a lot more than the other one. Clearly, I was in a decorative mood today because I took some tree seeds and planted them around to spice up my hub area a bit. I then paid Marnie a visit and got Fergie a new friend, Bumbo the goat. I popped by Pierre's to get myself some grass starter, and back on the farm, I laid it all down. For the rest of the night, I kinda just potted around the farm, smelting quartz until bedtime. Day 56 was the final day of summer. I started my day off with a quick trip up to Robin's where I purchased myself a coop upgrade. Then I gathered some exotic foraging items and completed another bundle over at the community center. That afternoon, I extended my farm area with another 8 sprinklers as I was gearing up for the fall season. And to pass some time, I chopped trees down for wood around the cindersap forest. I stayed up way past my bedtime to attend seeing the Moonlight Jellies, but when you have a banger track like this, how can you say no? Welcome to fall. It's now day 57, and as you would expect on the first day of a new season, I got to sorting out my crops. I prepped the crop area by getting rid of old plants, hoeing the ground and watering it. I popped by Pierre's to get 16 corn seeds and then went all out on pumpkin seeds, as I planned to put them into kegs to make some more cash in the long run. Usually I'd go for cranberries, but our budget doesn't allow for that just yet. I did also get 16 fertilizers so that I can guarantee 5 gold quality corn for the quality crops bundle. Back on the farm I got to planting and got some chores done before heading down to the Cindersnap forest to chop some wood for the rest of the day. Day 58, another ancient fruit was ready for harvest, so I picked it and stored it away. Seeing as I had some animal friends now, I thought it would be nice to have a path through the top of my animal area, so I spent a bit of time working on that. Speaking of animals, since Robin had finished my coop upgrade, I paid Marnie another visit to purchase myself Roger the Duck. And I got some hay while I was there. But then back on the farm, Marnie decided to come and visit me, where she told me animals won't actually wander out of the fenced areas anyway. Too little too late, Marnie. Too little too late. Over in town I found Robin and Lewis putting up the special quest board, and I can't wait to get into work on some of those soon. It then dawned on me I hadn't bought my fall crops yet, so I quickly ran to Pierre's before he closed to get them. And back on the farm I planted them around my sprinkler. I wasn't done there though, as I managed to find a hazelnut, so off I went to the community centre where I completed the fall foraging bundle. And for good measure I completed the crab pot bundle too, which rewarded me with a few crab pots. So down at the beach I set up my crab pots and did some foraging, and then I finally went to bed. Day 59 I went around saying hello to all of my animal friends before spending the day committing heinous acts of deforestation once again. But it's okay because they grow back. And I was collecting wood for Robin's special quest, which I think I picked up yesterday. While I was there I picked up a mushroom colony, and then I went back to chopping trees, which I did for the rest of the day. Day 60 I woke up to a letter from Robin congratulating me on obtaining 1000 wood, and it had blueprints for a stone chest. A few more trees had grown in my tree farm, so I put some of that wood I gathered yesterday to good use by tapping more trees, which did use up quite a lot of my copper, and since I was running low, I hit up the mines for the rest of the day to replenish some of it. I even got my hands on another ancient seed artifact, which I can turn into a plantable ancient seed and save for later. I started day 61 doing some chores around the farm, saying hello to animals, smelting ores and making some machines for animal products. I then ventured into the secret woods to gather up some more hardwood and forageables, but I was after danger, and what better way to get that than down in the mines? I had my sights set on the bottom again, and that's where I started to head. By the end of the day I had managed to reach level 110, where I picked up some snazzy purple boots. I continued my journey to the bottom of the mines on day 62, and by the early afternoon I had cruised my way down to level 120, where I received the key in the shape of a skull. I'm sure I'll find out what that's for later on. Back on the farm I did some organizing of chests and kinda just ran around aimlessly, so I decided to call it in early for the night and get some sleep. Day 63, it was raining, and I had the intention of catching some more fish for the community center. I perched up by the river and fished until I had both a tiger trout and a walleye. It took a while, but by the late afternoon I had both, so I ran them up to the community center where I handed them in to complete the night fishing bundle and river fish bundle, which just left the specialty fish bundle to complete the fish tank. Back on the farm I shipped away my other catches and again wandered around the farm aimlessly. Now look, I like to think I'm being productive and planning stuff out in my head, but I honestly cannot remember, so I'm just gonna go with that. Day 64 I was on a mission to complete the animal bundle, but I needed a large cow's milk and goat's milk, so off to Marnie's I went to get the milk pail. But for some reason she wasn't in today. I even checked her little shed and nope, still not there. Ah, never mind, I found her. She's just down there. Oh well, I guess I'll just have to come back another time. I passed by the special quest board to pick up Clint's Cave Patrol quest, which tasked me to slay 50 bats, and then took the minecart up to the mines. I then spent the rest of day 64 all the way to day 68 down in the mines around level 40. That is no joke, and if you're wondering why I was down there for so long, I'll elaborate. I had a few things I wanted to achieve. I wanted to complete Clint's special quest, I wanted to slay 500 dust sprites for the burglar's ring, and I needed to get a ton of coal. The only other noteworthy things that happened were on day 66, a witch came along and gave me a void egg which I put into incubation, and on day 67 I made my first lot of kegs which I placed down below my crops. But it all paid off because on the afternoon of day 68 I emerged from the mines after 4 days in a row victorious. Not only had I managed to slay 500 dust sprites, but I had slain 50 bats and completed Clint's special quest. Also, I had slain 200 bats, completing another monster slayer goal, not to mention all the resources I had gathered. I walked into the Adventurers Guild, I took my rewards, and I headed home. That afternoon, I stopped by the traveling cart, who was once again selling nothing of interest. Then for the rest of the night, I chopped trees in the pouring rain, which I won't lie was a nice change of pace from 4 straight days in the mines. It was funny number day and I finally remembered to buy the milk pail and shares from Marnie, which I took back to the farm and I used on my animals. In between putting the cow's milk and goat milk into my cheese press, I was chopping down trees in the cindersap forest, and when both cheeses were ready, I took them along with some fruit to the community center where I finally completed the artisan bundle. With not much else to do for the rest of the night, I just headed back to bed. Day 70 was my first pumpkin harvest, so I gathered them all up, shoved what I could into my kegs, and made a fancy new stone chest to put the remaining pumpkins into. I popped by Pierre's to buy some more pumpkin seeds, but I ran out of money. So I headed back to the farm, I picked up my gold quality pumpkins to sell to Pierre, and used the money to buy the rest of the seeds I needed. And back on the farm, I planted them all. Now you may be thinking, Poxil, don't you need 5 gold quality pumpkins for the quality crops bundle? And to that I say, yes. Yes I do. I am dumb. But not to worry though, I'll just have to save 5 gold pumpkins for the next harvest. For the rest of the night I just chopped down trees for wood. I did find Abigail lurking about, who asked me if she should dye her hair. I tried what I thought was the nice answer, and I got some sass back. And you know, after what happened in the last 100 Days series, I think it's best that we stay friends, Abigail. Overnight I managed to get to level 10 farming, and I chose the artisan perk so that my pumpkin juice would sell for a lot more gold. Day 71, my corn was ready for harvest. Not only that, but with my fall crops grown too, I now had everything to complete the bundle. So off I went to the community center to complete it. All I needed for the greenhouse now was the quality crops bundle. Of course it was the quality crops bundle. Why would I was rewarded with a bee house though, so I placed it down next to my lightning rods, which by the way, haven't produced a single battery. I have had 0 thunderstorms, and it's getting ridiculous. All I can hope is that I get a thunderstorm soon and I can stock up on batteries then. That afternoon, I started work on a pathway which leads in from the northern entrance of my farm in between my tree farms. I went with a stone walkway with grass in the middle, which I do quite like. I put some grass around the tree farm, which honestly looks way better than stone pathways. And that night, I moved my lightning rods to be hidden behind the coopin barn. Out of sight, out of mind. Since they're bloody useless at the moment. It was the Stardew Valley Fair on day 72. I gathered up some items out of my limited range of stuff I had collected so far and headed into town. I set up my beautiful Grange display and started to get working on some star tokens. I played both the target game and fishing game before spending way too long trying to gamble in on the spinning wheel, but in no time at all I had enough tokens to buy my second star drop and a rare crow from the shop. Lewis then judged our displays and I ended up getting second place. Not too shabby for my first fair. And with that, it was time to head home and to bed. Day 73, my animals had given me everything I needed to complete the animal bundle over at the community center, so that's exactly where I headed. And I was rewarded with another cheese press, which I placed next to my other one. I then crafted and used some fertilizer on the last of my baby trees because I was so close to having a full tree farm. Over in town, I stopped by the special quest board and picked up Robin's project quest, which tasked me to collect 80 hardwood. And since the secret forest had been expanded, I have a feeling this is going to be a piece of cake. So that's where I headed to chop some hardwood. I did also find a new forageable called Rafflesia. At least I think that's how it's pronounced. I don't know. It was getting dark, so I headed back to the farm and straight to sleep. Day 74, a bunch of oak resin was ready to be collected, so I made some more tappers, collected my oak resin, and tapped the untapped trees. I did this at the same time so they'd all be ready again at the same time. It's just more satisfying that way. Using the oak resin, I made a bunch more kegs and collected up my first batch of pumpkin juice, which I dropped into the shipping bin. Having burnt through my copper reserves making all of those kegs, I decided to head up to the mines where I spent the rest of the day farming for copper and resources. Day 75, my corn was ready for another harvest. Although I don't need them for anything, a little bit of extra cash never hurt nobody. My void chicken had finally hatched and I called her June. Look how cute and little she looks. Isn't she just so cute? I just want to give her a little hug. Being a Friday, the traveling cart was also here, and since Zeus was taking a vacation and giving me no lightning, I have no choice but to hope the traveling cart has some batteries for me, which it did not. I mean, why would it? I then made a seed maker and decided to turn all of my ancient fruit I had collected into seeds. That afternoon, I hit up the mines to farm for coal from dust sprites with my burglar's ring. But then halfway through, I suddenly remembered Robin's special questy at 80 hardwood and did a quick 180 and headed on back over to the secret woods to chop some stumps. Afterwards, I dumped everything into my chest and called it a night. Overnight, I did hit level 10 mining and chose the prospector perk, which doubles your chance of finding coal. Good for the early game, but I'll probably change this later on. It was day 70 76 and I started my day saying hello to all of my animals before heading back into the secret forest to collect the last of the hardwood I needed for Robin's quest. Back on the farm, I went about clearing the debris in front of this bridge, and I added a nice stone walkway from the bridge onto the farm. Then, for the rest of the day, I dove down into the mines collecting copper and resources. Day 77, I had somehow forgotten about Robin's special quest yet again until today, so on the final day to complete it, I patiently waited outside before heading inside and dropping off the hardwood to her. Back on the farm, I added 4 chests to the hub area, which finished it off. I'm sure I'll find a use for these at some point. Although it's not very visible, I did add a small path from the main path to the fruit cave and then continued to work on my paths around the farm. I removed some paths from the furnace area, extended the pathway just above it, and added this long pathway from the tree farm all the way down to the southernmost farm entrance. And after a long day of path laying, I headed to bed. Day 78, another batch of pumpkin juice was ready for me to collect, so I collected it all up. Then I went back and re-kegged them with more pumpkins. I collected some maple syrup from my tree farm before paying Pierre a visit to get some instant profit from my pumpkin juice. Oh yeah, look at all that gold. With my newfound wealth, I took off to the community center where, in a baller move, I purchased every vault bundle, which will unlock the boss overnight. One of the rewards was a crystallarium, which replicates any mineral you put in it. So I decided to put in a diamond. That afternoon, I headed on over to the secret woods to collect more hardwood. Truth be told, I was wanting to get a stable, but unfortunately, I didn't have enough hardwood. I even found a morel, which if you've seen my first 100 Day series, you know is the bane of my existence. But not this run. Back on the farm, I was experimenting with different materials to spice up the main pathways, and I was loving how the stone pathway was working with the stone walkway, so I kept it. Also, Samson and I had a cute moment together. I did some more pathway renovations around the tree farm and took away these paths, which makes it look way nicer. Before bed, I made the path to the fruit cave a bit bigger. It's hard to say, but trust me, I did. And then I called it in for the night. And overnight, just as expected, the Junimos performed a wonderful show number which magically repaired the bus, meaning I could now visit the desert. I spent day 79 on a mission to complete the last fish tank bundle, the specialty fish bundle. Over in the mines, I caught a ghost fish. Over in the desert, I did some exploration since this area has also changed from the expanded mod. Now, does this just keep on going? Like, is this endless or no, okay, it does stop. I met a woman named Sandy who seems very lonely, and I caught myself a sandfish. Back in the valley, I popped by the secret woods to catch the last fish I needed, a wood skip, and popped by the community center where I completed the last fish tank bundle. And then with not much left to do, I kind of just headed to bed. Day 80, I started out with visiting Clint to open some geodes I had been hoarding. I opened them all and I popped by Gunther to donate what I could to the museum where I got myself another rare crow as a reward. I was still after hardwood for my stable though, so I headed off to the secret woods for a bit where I chopped down some stumps to get some. While I was there, I dug up an ancient fern seed. Now, I have no idea what this is, but I will definitely be planting that in summer. Up by the mountain lake, the glittering rock had been removed and Willie gave me a copper pan to go penning. You know, I'm sure this will come in handy for something, but I can't quite put my finger on it. Over at Robin's, I walked in on an argument about Robin's new hardwood bed. So of course I took Robin's side. Take that, Demetrius. And then I finally got myself a stable, which will be ready in 2 days. I even picked up 2 more morels on the way back home, so now I have no excuse not to have one. For the rest of the day, I kinda just ran around the farm, planning things out of my head. You know, as I do. The rain was pouring down on day 81. Was there lightning though? No. Of course not. I got rid of my ancient fruit plants as they wouldn't sprout any more fruit before dying in the winter, and I extended the pathway all the way to the main path. I then emptied my tappers of its oak resin and decided to go and collect wood. I plan on making a lot of kegs and I want to make sure I have sufficient wood. After hours of wood chopping, I came back home, made my kegs, placed them down by the others, and headed to bed. Day 82, another batch of pumpkin juice was ready, so I collected it all up and tossed in the last remaining pumpkins. Also, Robin had finished my stable, and I called my new friend Sally. To welcome her onto the farm, I gave her a lovely straw hat, and doesn't she look beautiful? I did have a small patch of land in front of my house, so I added a pine tree with some grass. You know, just to add a bit of pizzazz. Sally and I rode down to the traveling cart, which was selling nothing good as usual, before heading to the mines to farm for iron and resources for the rest of the day. Day 83 started out with my second and final pumpkin harvest. I put away my pumpkins into the pumpkin chest, and yes, I remembered to save 5 gold ones. But on my way to the community center, I forgot the Spirit's Eve festival was being set up, so I couldn't even get in. So instead I headed up to Robin's where I splashed down and got myself a big coop upgrade. To fill in time before the festival that night, I dove down into the mines to farm for more iron and resources. But after a while, it was finally time to head to the Spirits Eve festival. I said hello to the Pumpkin King, bought myself a rare crow from the stall, and then dove into the maze, which by the way is different to the normal one, so it actually took me a while to figure out, which was super fun, I won't lie. I grabbed my golden pumpkin, I ran out in the maze, and I headed home to bed. Day 84 was the final day of fall, and I found an owl statue in my animal area. So I put it up on the hill overlooking my farm. Hopefully it won't give me any bad juju. With access to the community center now free with no events, I dropped off my 5 gold quality pumpkins and finally completed the pantry, which will give me access to the greenhouse from tomorrow onwards. I rode Sally down to Marnie's ranch where I stocked up on hay for the incoming winter season and got 2 heaters so my animals won't be cold. I then decided I wasn't a fan of the grass between my pathways as I was the stone paths, so I swapped it out, and honestly I'm pretty glad I did. I think it looks way better. And for the final time, I reorganized my furnace area to look a little better. I popped by Pierre's to grab some grass starter, which I placed around my farm like my furnace area, by the fruit cave, and outside my animal area, and it was looking pretty good. I took away the extra layer of path around the furnace area, and it was perfect. That is the definition of trust the process. We got there eventually. For the rest of the night, I rode Sally around the farm, somewhat planning out the final days of these 100 days in my head. And overnight, the greenhouse was restored, all ready for me to use. It was day 85 and the first day of winter. I made sure all my animals were looked after before heading out into the valley. In town, I passed by the special quest board and picked up the Curious Substance quest, which tasked me to find ectoplasm in a slain ghost. I then visited the beach where I dug up a few snow yams and found a single crocus flower in the cinder sap forest. But I had at least one of each winter forageable, so off I went to the community center where I completed the last crafts room bundle. I found Krobus wandering around, so of course I followed him up to the playground where I spooked him, and in return he gave me a magnifying glass, meaning I could now find secret notes. Back on the farm, I planted my winter seeds as they're the only seeds you can plant outside in winter. Just before bed, while heading to the secret forest, I found another crocus flower, and inside the woods I kept digging up bearberries. I'm not too sure what they're for, but they look delicious. Back on the farm, I made 10 more winter seeds, planted them, and decided to light up my tree farm with some torches. Overnight, the Junimos danced their little hearts out. Actually, I don't know if they have hearts. But the bridge was fixed, and I now had access to the quarry. Day 86, another batch of pumpkin juice was ready to be collected, and after re-kegging some more pumpkins, I headed to Pierre's for some instant profits. While I was there, I got myself an apple tree sapling and an apricot tree sapling. Up at Robin's, I moved the greenhouse closer onto the farm for convenience reasons and got myself a big barn upgrade. Back on the farm, I checked out my new greenhouse and planted my apple and apricot trees. I then suddenly remembered about the wizard special quest I picked up yesterday, so off I went to the mines. Well, that went a lot better than I thought it would. With some time left in the night, I headed on over to the wizard and handed over the ectoplasm. I headed back home and called it in for the night. Day 87, I received a mini obelisk crafting blueprint in the mail from the wizard for my efforts yesterday, which was very nice of him. Over in town, I found Morris waving coupons around, probably because he knows he's going out of business soon if he took a look in the community center. And then it was off to the desert for my first skull cavern run. I was sure to be very careful as I descended through the caverns as I didn't have the best of gear, but I did manage to survive. I managed to walk away with a few iridium ore and even a rabbit's foot, which is something I need for the community center. After a successful run in the caverns, I went to bed and I dreamed about how awesome I am. It was day 88 and another batch of oak resin was ready to be collected. I only had the bulletin board left to complete in the community center, so I gathered everything I had and headed on over there. I handed in everything I had, completed the field research bundle, and I only had a few more things left to get to finish the community center. Back on the farm, I made a start planting my ancient fruit with some speed grow. Since I've had 0 lightning over the course of the last 88 days, I can't make any iridium sprinklers, of which I need 6 to fill up the greenhouse with ancient fruit, so I'd have to go back to watering them every day until I managed to find the materials to make the sprinklers. Like a peasant. Oh, and I also planted my rare seed because I forgot to do that. Whoopsies. I then popped by Robin's and got myself a silo. I love my animals, but I'm sick of feeding them every day because I'm lazy. And a silo with a deluxe coop and a deluxe barn lets you auto-feed your animals. That night I didn't achieve all too much, so I just headed to bed early. Evelyn paid me a visit the morning of day 89. Brave to be out in the cold, but hey, she looked happy. Anyway, she gave me a garden pot and a blueprint to make more, so hey, thanks Evelyn. To start the day, I watered my ancient fruit before heading on over to Pierre's where I bought the remaining fruit trees, and back home I planted them in my greenhouse. I then popped by Marnie's where I bought 2 new friends, Fred the sheep and Sir George the rabbit. Right after that I finished tapping every tree in my tree farm and it was all done and finished. For the rest of the day I cleared out debris from my other fenced area and ended up finding a hidden path that comes out beside the travelling cart. Very handy. Day 90 I was back to watering my ancient fruit, collecting pumpkin juice, re-kicking more pumpkins and collecting copper and resources from the mines, which about sums up my day honestly. Pierre showed up at my door the morning of day 91 letting me know about his stock for next year, which sounds pretty promising. With gold coming out of my ears now from all that pumpkin juice, I paid Marnie a visit to stock up on hay and get a new friend, Ron the pig. In my humble opinion, Ron is a fantastic pig name. And then it was back to the grind in the mines, collecting anything and everything I could get my grubby little hands on, which pretty much took up the whole day. Oh, I did pop by the Adventurers Guild where I met Alicia and picked up the hard hat for completing a monster slayer goal and slaying 30 total Dougies, which I gave to Sally, because you can never be too careful. Day 92, my winter seeds were ready to be picked, and I promptly turned them back into even more seeds, which I then planted again. Stonks, am I right? And I also watered my ancient fruit. I'm not going to include that in my daily recap anymore, because it's tedious, so just assume I'm doing it. But today was the Ice Festival, and more importantly, the ice fishing competition. I bought another rare crow from the traveling cart lady, and then it was time for the competition, which, and I don't want to brag here, I frickin' smashed everyone at. I received my winnings and I headed home. Day 93, I gave Sally my sailor hat I had won yesterday because why not? She looks amazing. My morning started with a few chores around the farm before heading to the museum and dropping off an artifact I had found a few days ago while in the mines. Over by the special quest board, I picked up the prismatic jelly quest, which tasked me to find and slay the elusive prismatic slime for its prismatic jelly. Now this quest has given me trouble before, and that is certainly not going to change this time. From days 93 to 95, I scoured the mines looking for this damn slime. But do you think I could find it? Absolutely not. The only other things that happened during this time was on day 94, I got myself a pond from Robin, and I got another batch of pumpkin juice. Aside from that, I was down in the mines going from floor to floor, hoping to see that color changing slime. But then, on day 96, I shit you not, the very first floor I picked, there it was. And there was only one thing left to do. Without delay, I rode Sally down to the Wizard, where I accidentally stumbled upon his basement library, and then I handed him the prismatic jelly. Afterwards, I did a little bit of snooping, which I probably shouldn't have. And back home, I tried to place my other prismatic jelly on the table, but it wouldn't let me. I then worked on some pathing around my new pond and made plans for where the next 2 were gonna go. I don't know what it is about these wooden planks around the ponds, but I don't know, it just looks so good. I kinda just mooched around the farm for the rest of the night, so I went to bed early. Day 97, I received the Monster Musk recipe for my work on completing the prismatic jelly quest yesterday, which is going to come in very handy when completing monster slayer goals. Up at Robin's, I took over some supplies and asked her to upgrade my house, and of course she said yes. I then, no joke, chopped down trees for the rest of the day. Day 98, I collected up my final batch of pumpkin juice, which I then dumped into the shipping bin and headed on down to the beach. I popped into Willie's to buy myself the iridium fishing rod and put it to use fishing out on the pier. I spent most of the day out here fishing, but just before bed I stopped by the traveling cart, who to no surprise has disappointed me once again. Day 99, my winter seeds were ready to be picked again, so I went along and collected them, turned them all back into seeds and filled up my crop area with them. I did stop by Robin's, but she wasn't there. I wanted to buy a couple of things, but I may have to come back another day. I passed by the special quest board in town and picked up the Juicy Bug quest, which tasked me with, you guessed it, killing bugs. Sally and I then waited patiently for the first night of the night market to open, and believe it or not, the traveling cart was selling batteries, and 5 of them. It's like a miracle. I took the submarine down to do some deep sea fishing and tried so hard to catch a blobfish, but it wasn't meant to be, unfortunately. I did catch quite a few midnight squid and spookfish though. Back home, I placed down 2 candy canes I had bought because you know, why not? I think they look great. But it was getting late, so I headed to bed. And finally, day 100. I did some chores around the farm and found Clint lurking about this boulder. But he was adamant he could move it and invited me back to his shop to figure it out. But maybe I'll save that for the next 200 days. But as is a tradition in all of my 100 days videos, on the final day I soaked in the spa and relaxed. I did pull myself to the night market once again to check the vendors, but they weren't selling anything good. And with that, I headed home and finished up the final day in this 100 days series. I emerged on day 101 to the frosty air of winter. Back on the farm once again, I took a deep breath and I got to work. In my greenhouse, I got to watering my ancient fruit as I still don't have any iridium sprinklers for them just yet. And of course, I went and said hello to my beautiful animal friends. Sally and I rode down to Sofia on Blue Moon Vineyard, as you all told me in the comments from the first 100 days that you could buy sprinklers from her. Although she doesn't sell iridium ones, this would have been great to know last time. But that aged Blue Moon wine gives you +7 lux, so I may be back for that one at some point soon. Another thing you mentioned to me in the comments from the last video was to befriend the wizard. So I took a void essence down to him where I accidentally completed a quest instead of gifting it to him. I quickly popped by Robin's to get myself a calendar, which will make keeping a track of birthdays a whole lot easier. I rode Sally back to the Cindersap forest and handed Rasmodius another void essence. Turns out it was his birthday today, so that's even better. Outside, I found him working some of his magic, where he was fortifying the boundaries around the valley to protect us all from monsters. So, hey, thanks for that. That night, Sally and I headed down to the final night of the night market, where I took the submarine down to the ocean floor and finally caught myself a blobfish. I headed back to the farm where I set up 3 stone chests in the kitchen to hold all of my fish that I end up catching. Because Expanded adds in so much more content, I'm gonna turn into quite the hoarder over the next 200 days. I finally went to sleep and my first day back on the farm was over. It was day 102 and it was time to complete Willie's Juicy Bugs Wanted special quest. I collected up a batch of oak resin and took the mine carts up to the mines. I popped on some of that new Calvin Klein Monster Musk smell and got to work. Lucky for me, floor 21 was an infested floor, and with Monster Musk increasing monster spawn rate, this quest was gonna be a breeze. By the early morning I had gathered enough bug meat, so down to the beach I went where I shoved it all into a bin. After doing some foraging on the beach and sorting my full inventory back into my chests, I spent the rest of the day fishing on the pier. I dumped the fish I had caught into my chest that night and I headed to bed. Day 103 was Marlin's birthday. I whipped up a fresh brew of life elixir and I headed up to the Adventurers Guild. I found Marlin standing on a small pier watching the snow fall, and I handed him the life elixir. And then he told me Pierre had shown him the pumpkin juice I had sold to him. Now that's a cool piece of dialogue. Over at the museum, I paid our old mate Gunther a visit and donated a rusty spoon before heading down to the wizard and handing him another gift. I mean, hey, you guys told me to befriend the wizard, so that's exactly what I'm gonna do. I rode Sally to the secret woods where I chopped some stumps down for hardwood, and back on the farm I started clearing the way up to this old looking shed. However, my steel pickaxe just isn't quite strong enough to break this meteor in the way, so it looks like I'll have to come back with a stronger pickaxe. For the rest of the night, I kinda just stared airily out across my farm before calling it a night. I started day 104 handing Evelyn a beautiful diamond for her birthday today because she deserves it. I mean, I can't even imagine having to put up with George, so yeah, she really deserves this. While I was in town, I popped by Clint's where he asked me to collect 20 iridium ore and 20 coal to make that bomb he mentioned at the end of the first 100 days, as he wanted to clear a way to the summit. I put my pickaxe in for a gold upgrade while I was there and headed past Robin's where I commissioned a second pond to be built on my farm. Back home, I was looking at what I still needed to collect to complete the community center. So I quickly went over to Pierre's to get some cooking stuff, and back in my kitchen I whipped up a fried egg and a maki roll. Down at Marnie's I bought myself some hay, 10 I'll keep for the community center and the rest I'll shove into my silo. I then visited the community center and handed over my items before fishing in the river for a while. After such a hectic morning, this is nice. So nice in fact I stayed there until it got late. Day 105, I started my day riding Sally down to the traveling cart. I was on the lookout for more batteries since my lightning rods had proven themselves useless in the last 100 days. but unfortunately she wasn't selling any today. Disappointed, I headed back home where I fixed up some paths and kinda aimlessly rode Sally around the farm. That afternoon though, things got a lot more exciting when I found Marlon on his little pier who said he wanted to show me something. We headed into town where he unlocked the sewers and we headed on down. This is when I met a shy looking shadow person named Krobus, and I swore not to tell another living soul in the valley about him. Afterwards, Marlon handed me a key to the sewer, so hey, that's a bonus. So of course I went to see what rare goods Krobus had for sale. I purchased myself a recipe for void salmon sushi and another star drop. It was also at this point that I remembered Krobus sells iridium sprinklers, albeit it was one every Friday, but hey, that was still way better than what I had now, which was nothing. So as I left, I swore to Krobus I'd be back next Friday. Back on the farm, I put some iridium ore I had into my furnaces and headed up to the mountain lake, where I fished away the rest of the day. Before bed that night though, I caught myself a sturgeon, which I then chucked into one of my fishing ponds. This is because their roe, when put into preserve jars, produces caviar. And look, I even made a little sign for them. Day 106, my winter seeds had once again produced a full field of forageables. I went along gathering them all up, turned them back into seeds, planted what I could, and shipped the excess off for some extra cash. With my 3 iridium bars smelted, I had just enough materials to craft 3 iridium sprinklers, which I placed in the greenhouse. Sally and I then rode through town and on over to Clint's where I picked up my gold pickaxe and swapped it out for a gold axe upgrade. Heading back home, I passed by the special quest board again where I accepted Gus's famous omelette quest, which tasked me to collect and hand over 2 dozen eggs. With my new and improved gold pickaxe, I got to breaking that meteor, and once I did, I headed inside. I won't lie, it's looking a bit worse for wear at the moment, but I'm sure I'll have it back to working standards in no time at all. I then decided to hit up the mines and I headed down to level 100 as I wanted to catch myself a lava eel. And okay, I'll level with you. This is only because I wanted to breed them in my second pond back in the farm as they turn the water red and it looks cool. But do you think I could catch one? No, of course I couldn't. I honestly just ended up filling my pockets full of trash. So much so that I gave up and I just decided to head back home. I did manage to put down 1 more iridium sprinkler into my greenhouse though, so it wasn't all too bad I guess. And since it was getting late, I decided to head to bed. Overnight, I hit level 10 foraging and opted to go with the lumberjack perk, which gives you a chance to get hardwood when chopping down regular trees. It was day 107 and Leah's birthday, but before I could go and see her, I wanted to get my 3rd and final pond for the farm. So I waited outside in the freezing cold. I love waiting for shops to open. I got inside and suddenly realized it was a Tuesday, meaning Robin wouldn't be working today. But if you pull a fast one, you can still purchase things as she walks past the counter. So I caught her just in time and commissioned the final pond. Back on the farm, I gathered up some maple syrup and artisanal items before heading out once again to the saloon, and this was to get a salad for Leah's birthday. I went back to collecting trash on floor 100 in the mines, trying once again to catch a damn lava eel. But I managed to catch one and I could not be more relieved. With some time still left in the day, I passed by the saloon again to hand Leah her birthday gift, and back on the farm I dropped my lava eel into the second pond. I even made a little sign for them. Day 108, the snow was coming down and it was the perfect day to hand the wizard another gift. Over in town, I was back at Clint's picking up my newly upgraded gold axe and upgrading my hoe to steel. I then took the minecart over to the quarry for the first time, where I ventured through the quarry mine. Fighting through hordes of slimes and flying skulls, I finally made it to the statue in one piece, where I acquired the golden scythe. For the rest of the day, I put my shiny new axe to use, chopping trees and collecting wood before bed. Day 109 was Christmas Day, Feast of the Winter Star. But before that, I had received a letter from the wizard who proposed he'd teach me some basic magic. Visit me in my chambers at your earliest convenience, he says. No, not like that. Get your heads out of the gutter, thank you. My sturgeon was feeling a little materialistic as he asked for a diamond, so I obliged. Just before heading off to the feast, I grabbed some goat cheese as my person this year was Robin. Over in town, I joined the festivities, handed Robin her gift, and found out my gift giver was George, who gave me a blackberry cobbler. Okay, I'll be honest, that's not the worst gift I've ever received. And before I knew it, it was already late, so off to bed I went. Robin visited me the morning of day 110 since she had noticed the abandoned shed on my farm. I followed her to the shed where she did an analysis on its structural integrity. Sounds fancy. She told me to visit her shop so we could go over the details. Being a Friday and just like I promised, I paid Krobus a visit in the sewer to purchase an iridium sprinkler before heading on over to Clint's. I picked up my steel hoe and handed him a gold bar since it was his birthday today. Happy birthday to you. I'm just kidding, I'm not gonna do that. I passed by Robin's shop who laid out the plans for restoring the shed and okay look, 600 stone? No worries. 150 pieces of hardwood? That's doable. 50 iron bars? Piece of cake. But 20 batteries? Are you kidding me? I'll just have to hope that my second year in the valley treats me a little better with lightning storms. Ironically though, down at the traveling cart she was selling 5 more batteries, so maybe I spoke a bit too soon. I was, however, on my way to hand the wizard another gift. However, before that could happen, I was made to drink another elixir, which actually tasted quite nice this time. I was taught the ancient ways of changing one's appearance, which naturally I mastered on the first go. I handed Rasmodius his gift and headed on back to the farm. That afternoon I spent decorating the greenhouse, mooching around the farm with Sally, and saying hello to my animal friends before bed. I started day 111 with a trip to Blue Moon Vineyard, where I handed Sophia a big old pumpkin for her birthday. Back on the farm, I cleared the remaining debris from around the shed, dropped 600 stone into the chest, and decided to clear some more debris from where the greenhouse used to be. I shoved some iron into my furnaces before heading to the secret woods to collect hardwood. Apart from the batteries, I was pretty close to having enough hardwood and iron to fix the shed, and that night I dropped 50 iron into the chest and headed to bed. Day 112 was the final day of winter. I did some chores around the farm, smelting ores, petting my animals, and handing my lava eel 3 fire quartz. Then I was back to the secret woods for more hardwood. Afterwards, I rode Sally into town and bought some more grass starter from Pierre's before paying a visit to my old friend the wizard, to, you guessed it, hand him another gift. I did pass by the traveling cart, who, to no surprise, was selling nothing good, and then I dropped off my void essence to the wizard. For the rest of the evening, I worked on my pathway up to the farm totem, after which adding some paths and grass was looking quite nice. I headed to bed ready to commence my second year in the valley. It was day 113 and the first day of my second year in the valley. A new guy named Kent popped by to introduce himself, and after that brief conversation I got to scything down my now dead plants. I started to do some big brain calculations while standing in the middle of my fields figuring out what I wanted to grow this season. And then I took off into town. I found Mayor Lewis packing a sad about this old patch of land with nothing to do with it. So of course I offered to make good use of it at some point in the near future. Over at Pierre's I bought a whole bunch of seeds and headed back to the farm. Now you may be thinking, Poxil, why do you have so many different seeds? Well, I'll tell you. Over the coming seasons, I'm going to be using my crop fields to grow as many different crops as I can. Some will be great for gifting, some will be great for cooking recipes, all of them I'll need for the shipping collection, and because I'm not too sure what else the expanded mod adds, I'm just going to cover my bases just in case. After planting all of my seeds, I was thrilled to see my rare seed had finally grown, so I took it straight to the secret woods, made it through the maze this time, and handed it over to the old Master Cannoli statue, who in return gave me another star drop. For the rest of the day, I kinda just bummed around the farm, and gave the wizard another gift. Before bed, I took a late night ride to the special quest board and picked up the Biome Balance quest, which tasked me to catch 20 lakefish. And then I headed to bed. The rain was pouring down on day 114, and despite the lack of thunder, I was excited to see my first harvest of ancient fruit was ready to be picked. I spent a few hours putting them all through seed makers and filled up more of the greenhouse once they were done. Sally and I rode down to the wizard once again, who rejected my void essence because I had given him too many gifts. To be fair, he probably has a whole pile of void essences by now, so maybe it's a good thing. And then I headed to the quarry where I spent a while clearing it out. After a hard night's work clearing rocks, I went to bed and dreamed about how awesome I am. Day 115, Sally and I rode into town. We passed Morris, still giving out coupons I see, and headed on over to Gus's. However, I forgot he doesn't open till 12, so in the meantime I thought it would be the perfect time to make some kegs. The reason I cleared out the quarry yesterday was for the simple fact that it was going to be where my kegs are. Since it worked so well in the last 100-day series, I thought, why not do it again? I collected up my kegs on the farm and started placing them in the quarry. After a while, I had a good start on my keg area. Back over at the saloon, Gus had finally opened the door, so I placed 24 eggs in his fridge, completing the famous omelette special quest. Sticking in town, I headed over to the small farmable patch Lewis had shown me a few days ago and decided to clear it out. I'm not too sure what I'll grow here, but I'm sure I'll find a use for it at some point. And I didn't do too much that night. So on to day 116, where the rain was pouring and I was once again crossing my fingers hoping Zeus would bless me with some lightning. My apple tree had finally sprouted 3 glorious apples, so I picked them, collected some oak resin and maple syrup, and headed straight to the community center where I dropped off my 3 apples. Being a good luck day, I thought a good use of my time would be spent in the Skull Caverns hunting for iridium and any other goodies I could get my hands on, so that's exactly where I went. After a day in the caverns, I headed home, dumped what I had collected back into my chests, and suddenly remembered it was Kent's birthday today. I hurriedly rushed over to his house hoping he was still up, and thank goodness he was. So I gave him a rabbit's foot and headed home to bed. Day 117, I started my day picking my parsnips and garlic. I then dumped them into a chest I had prepared earlier. Sally and I rode into town where we stopped by Pierre's to get some more seeds to replace the ones I had just harvested, and over at the museum I donated a couple of bones I had found yesterday while scavenging the caverns. Back on the farm I planted my new seeds and decided now's a better time than any to finish that biome balance special quest I had picked up a few days ago. So I got cozy on the mountain lake and cast out my line for the afternoon. It wasn't until later that night I had fished up 20 lakefish, so I headed home, dumped my catches into my fish hoarding chests, and worked on pathways around the crop area until bed. Day 118, I wasn't ready to part ways with my unfinished pathways, so I worked on that for a little bit. Once it was done, I took off to Robbins and commissioned myself a slime hutch, which I ended up placing where my greenhouse used to be. I did intend for that area to be for my obelisks when I eventually get them, but I was running out of room on the farm for a big structure, so I think I made the right decision. That afternoon, Sally and I rode on over to the West Bridge to do some fishing, and I caught myself a couple of new fish, including the butterfish and the puppyfish. It did start getting dark though, so I headed home and I called it an early night. It was day 119 and I had a field of crops waiting for me, so I picked my tulips, scythed the kale, and harvested the potatoes before dumping them into my spring crops chest. Ron had finally produced a truffle for me too, which was another item I could tick off for the community center. I rode Sally into town where I gave Lewis a lovely daffodil for his birthday, handed in my truffle to the community center which completed the chef's bundle, and popped into Pierre's to buy some more seeds. Back on the farm I planted my seeds and decided to spend the rest of the day chopping trees for wood, so that's exactly what I did. Marlin braved the rain and paid me a visit the morning of day 120. Since my slime hutch had finally finished construction, Marlin gave me a green slime egg to help me get started. What a nice guy. And with a new week comes a fresh pair of special quests. So I headed over to the board and picked up Linus's community cleanup quest, which tasked me to collect 20 pieces of trash while fishing. But I put that on hold for now and decided to spend the day diving through the mines collecting resources, since I was running a little low on copper and stone. Back on the farm that night though, I had noticed it had been thundering today. And I had 2 charged lightning rods. Not great, but you know, it's better than nothing. Day 121, my sturgeons were once again asking for my support, more specifically 2 maple syrup, so I happily obliged and handed them what they wanted. A week prior, I had put out a single ancient fruit into a keg to make some wine for the community center, and it was finally done. Speaking of ancient fruit, my second harvest was waiting for me in the greenhouse. Sally and I rode into town where I dropped off the wine and completed the enchanter's bundle before dumping my ancient fruit into my kegs up at the quarry. You know, I could have turned them into more seeds, but my wallet was looking a bit sad and I wanted some gold, damn it. I then spent my afternoon filling my pockets with trash, purposefully this time, down in the mines for Linus's special quest. And that evening I dumped it all into the bin, which completed the quest, and I headed to bed. For the 3rd day in a row, the rain was pouring down again on day 122. I collected up some batteries from my lightning rods and praised Zeus because it was another thunderstorm. So you know what? I'm not too mad it's raining again. Today was also Vincent's birthday, so I bought him a delicious pink cake. Down at the beach, I found Willie fishing with that bug meat I had caught, and I don't mean to be rude, but what the is that? Thanks, Willie. I'm never gonna get that image out of my head. After foraging on the beach, I set up shop on the pier and just fished the day away. Day 1, 2, 3, the sun was shining again and my lightning rods had finally proved themselves useful. Look at all of those batteries. Now that I finally had all the hardwood and batteries, I headed on over to the shed and put them in the chest, meaning Robin now had everything to fix the shed up. Up at the mountain lake, I found Linus getting all natural in the lake. And I popped into Robin's where I purchased myself a couple more crafting recipes. Down in the Cindersap forest, I found Willie coming back from a fishing trip, who showed me a king salmon head caught. Maybe I'll have to try and catch one for myself. I was, however, on my way to give the wizard another void essence and to add to his ever-growing collection, which I'm sure he appreciates, right? I then wandered into the forest east of the wizard's tower and found myself venturing up a hidden pathway. At the end was a single maple syrup and a cave, so instinctively I headed into the secret woods where I found a bear absolutely gushing over my maple syrup, who then said to come and visit him at his cave. Now I have a bad feeling I stole this bear's maple syrup and then gave it back to him. Am I a bad person? However, back at the cave I found the bear who was selling some pretty cool stuff and a couple of new cooking recipes. However, being a bit low on funds, I thought I'd come back another time. And after a long day, I headed home and I went to sleep. Robin paid a visit to the farm the morning of day 124 to let me know the shed will be refurbished by tomorrow, which is very exciting. Hey, you like jazz? 'Cause my blue jazz flowers were ready to be picked. I gathered them up and dumped a few into my crop chest. Up at Robin's, I bought my first out of 4 barns I plan to have in my second animal area, as I'm going to fill it with pigs and start a truffle oil empire. Back on the farm, I planted a mahogany tree by the greenhouse and surrounded it with grass. You know, just for a bit of pizzazz. That evening, I passed by Krobus in the sewer to get my weekly iridium sprinkler, which I placed down in my greenhouse. For the rest of the day, I faffed around collecting hardwood and riding Sally around the farm before heading to bed. Day 125 was the egg festival. I picked a whole bunch of crops that were ready for harvest, did some quick calculations about how many strawberries I could afford, and headed into town. I stopped by Pierre's stall and got my seeds, then started up the egg hunt. I made today the second year in a row, smashing everybody at the egg hunt yet again. Take that, Abigail. It was day 126, and I started my day heading straight to the shed to see Robin's work, and my, this is looking very nice. I headed upstairs and found a whole patch of tillable land, meaning that I could expand my ancient fruit collection up to the shed at some point. Down by the wizard's tower, Rasmodius decided to let out some emotions and come clean about his toxic ex, and also mention Caroline. Is that why Abigail has purple hair? Anyway, today is also Haley's birthday, so I found her by the fountain and gave her a coconut. Back on the farm, I worked on some pathways up to the shed since it was now restored and added some fences and torches for a little bit of detail. With not much else to do, I just headed to bed early. Day 127, I spent the day fulfilling some quests in my journal that I had kinda neglected. Better late than never. And later in the afternoon, I handed Olivia a pink cake for her birthday. That evening, my ancient fruit wine was ready in the quarry, so I went along and collected it up. And since I had my shed up and running now, I had a change of heart and decided my main keg area will be in the shed, since the bottom floor was perfect for it. So I gathered up my kegs and headed back to the farm. My lava eels were requesting another item, and this should be pretty easy. Hold on. You want a dwarf scroll? Man, you really are picky. I headed to bed and decided I'd sort my kegs tomorrow. Day 128, I started my day picking my ancient fruit, petting my animal friends, and laying out my kegs. Nah, that doesn't look quite right. Okay, that's much better. It wasn't entirely filled up, but it was looking pretty good for now. So I dumped my ancient fruit into the kegs and found Robin on my doorstep. Now that the shed was refurbished, Robin was offering to build a bridge over to it for only 900 stone. Man, these things aren't cheap. With last night's injection of gold from my ancient fruit wine, I headed to Clint's to splash some cash and get myself a steel watering can upgrade. That evening, I was in and out of the shed figuring out how many kegs I would need to fill up the bottom floor and smelting ores, which honestly took me all the way till bedtime. I started day 129 with some farm chores before adding 30 more kegs to the shed. Sally and I rode into town where I picked up Emily's rock rejuvenation quest, which tasked me to get Emily a jade, ruby, topaz, emerald, amethyst, and diamond. So I did exactly that, handed Emily everything, and then realized the amethyst just completed a separate quest. Okay, not a lot of things piss me off in Stardew Valley, but this is one of them. So once I had returned and handed Emily her second amethyst, I headed on over to the wizard to give him, you guessed it, a void essence. But I was feeling sad for the wizard. He seems like a lonely fella. So in solidarity, I used the Shrine of Illusions and I turned my hair purple. Which doesn't look too bad in my humble opinion. I raced up to Robin's before it got too late and commissioned my second barn, which I placed in my pig area. With not much left to do, I called it in for an early night. Day 130 was Pam's birthday. I collected up some oak resin and waited patiently in the pouring rain to hand her a parsnip. I then spent a while diving through the mines, collecting resources and stone, mainly for that small bridge. But I got bored and decided to head back home. I picked some green beans that had grown, scythed away at some grass to get some hay, and I headed to bed. My cauliflower was ready to be picked on day 131, so I picked them all and dumped them into my crop chest. After doing some chores and visiting the traveling cart, who, by the way, was selling garbage, I rode Sally on over to Clint's, where I picked up my steel watering can, and I opened some geodes I had been holding on to. I passed by Gunther to donate any new minerals I had found, and repeated the process since I ran out of inventory space. That afternoon, I did some foraging on the beach and passed by Blue Moon Vineyard, where I found Sophia being consoled by her friend Scarlet, who was visiting from town. I was heading on over to the Cindersap Forest, where I was trying my hardest to catch a king salmon, but I'll be honest, I wasn't too sure if I was fishing in the right spot. I may not have caught a king salmon today, but I did haul up a dino egg, and I wasn't too mad about that. Unsuccessful though, I headed back home and I put my dino egg in my incubator and I called it a night. Day 132 was a good luck day, so I decided what a perfect day to hit the Skull Caverns again and get some iridium. I blew most of my money on bombs and headed to the desert. I spent the whole day carpet bombing level after level, collecting as much iridium as I could, and near the end of my run I managed to get a whole prismatic shard. I then passed out at 2 AM with 68 iridium ore and I was pretty happy with my efforts. I started day 133 picking my strawberries. Definitely a lot less action-packed than yesterday. But that is what makes Stardew so fun, you know? My sturgeons were after some Omni Geodes, so I chucked in 3 and they seemed to like that. I took the bus back out to the desert. However, this time I ran my prismatic shard down to the bottom of the map and I stood in the middle of these 3 obelisks with my prismatic shard high above my head. My screen went all sparkly and I was granted the Galaxy Sword, one of the best weapons in the game. Back in the valley, I found Rasmodius tending to his crops, and I handed him another gift. I'll be honest, not too much happened for the rest of the day, but I did find my duck Roger swimming in the river, and I think that's adorable. Day 134 was a nothing day spent on the farm, doing chores, smelting ores, and I finally filled the shed up with the remaining kegs, and yeah, that's about it, honestly. Oh, I did stay up to collect my ancient fruit wine, which I dumped into my shipping bin before heading to bed. It was a Tuesday on day 135, so naturally I had another ancient fruit harvest waiting for me in my greenhouse. So I passed by the shed and dumped my ancient fruit into kegs before heading off to Fairhaven Farm. For you see, it was Andy's birthday today, and I heard through the grapevine, definitely not through the wiki, that he was a big fan of blackberry cobbler. I'm sure George won't mind, right? For the rest of the day, I dove down into the mines, resetting level 20 to farm for copper, stone, and any other goodies I could get my hands on. Overnight though, Ron the pig gave birth. Not sure how that works, since Ron is a single parent, but anyway, I decided to name the baby Don. Because of course I did. Day 136 was the day of the flower dance, so I ventured down into the Cindersap Forest and headed to the dance. I then popped by Pierre's stall and got myself a rare crow and the tub of flowers crafting recipe. I wasn't too sure how many hearts I had with people, so I asked Haley, and well, I don't know why I bother really.
They ask you how you are, you just have to say that you're fine when you're not really fine, but you just can't get into it because they would never.
On to day 137 and my last strawberry harvest was ready for me, so I went along picking them all, collected some green beans, put some in my crop chest, and shipped the rest off. I paid Robin a visit and asked her to commission a third barn in my pig area before heading up the mines once again to farm for resources. I also managed to complete the Slime Monster Slayer goal. So later that night I popped by the Adventurers Guild where Marlin saw my Galaxy Sword and offered to sell me other Galaxy weapons. And I picked up the Slime Charmer Ring from Gil. On the way home, I passed by the special quest board and picked up Pam's quest to keg a few potatoes and make potato juice. Which sounds disgusting, by the way, but who knows, maybe that's just me. So before bed, I dropped a few potatoes into my kegs and called it a night. Day 138, I finally had my hands on 900 stone. So I rode Sally up to Robin's and put it into her chest just as she requested. I dropped off another void essence to the wizard, and while riding through town, I found Andy having a screaming match with himself, really. I felt a little bad for Lewis, I won't lie. I continued my gift giving up to Marlin by handing him a green slime egg which he actually liked. I checked up on Andy just like I promised Mayor Lewis I'd do, and he kinda gave me the cold shoulder. Later that night I had completely forgotten about Pierre's birthday, so I ran over a rabbit's foot where I waited for him, and gave it to him just in time. Exhausted from all of today's social interactions, I decided to get some sleep. Robin came out to the farm the morning of day 139 despite the rain. She told me she had received the stone and that the bridge would be up by tomorrow. Now isn't that just great news? Sally and I rode down to Marnie's so I could buy some auto grabbers. Trust me, I love my animal friends, but I'm sick of collecting their products every single day. After placing down my auto grabbers, I headed on over to Pierre's where I bought a whole bunch of parsnip seeds. These are so when it rolls over into summer, I won't have to worry about hoeing and watering my crop area. Yeah, I'm pretty smart like that. Anyway, I was heading to give a birthday gift to Emily and found a rock rejuvenation class going on, so I thought I'd wait. And then I waited ever so patiently to hand Emily a ruby for her birthday. Back on the farm, I planted all the parsnips before heading up the secret woods for some hardwood. Seeing it was getting late though, I decided to hit the hay. The sun was beaming down on day 140, the final day of spring. The traveling cart disappointed me once again, so I headed back to the farm to check out my new bridge, and it was looking very nice. I then spent a while in the mines looking for resources, but I think I must have had a bad luck day because it wasn't looking too good. So I bailed early and decided to hand the wizard his 400th void essence, who was almost at full hearts by the way, so it seems to be working. As the sun set on the final day of spring, I was looking forward to what lay ahead, but I don't think I was quite prepared for how insane this was gonna get. Day 141 was the first day of summer, and I got right to scything down my now dead crops. Riding into town, I saw a bird go headfirst into a window, but luckily Emily was there to take care of it. Over at Pierre's, I bought a whole bunch of seeds to take back and plant, which is exactly what I did. Also to note, I could finally plant wheat and red cabbage seeds, which were the last two crops I needed to complete the community center. So it's safe to say I was pretty excited. For the rest of the day, I slapped on some of that intoxicating monster musk smell and headed back into the mines. This was so I could knock off some more void spirits towards the monster slayer goal. Before bed, I popped by the shed and gathered up my ancient fruit wine and potato juice, shipped away the wine with some other artisan goods and headed to sleep. My ancient fruit patch was looking quite healthy the morning of day 142, so I got to picking. And because I like having money, instead of turning them into seeds and filling up the rest of the greenhouse like a normal person, I shoved them all into kegs, like the impatient man I am. Over in town, I passed by Pam's trailer where I put the potato juice into her fridge, completing the special quest. And speaking of special quests, I picked up another one from Olivia, who planned on hosting a prestigious reception in the town square. This tasked me to provide 10 starfruit wine, 10 cheese, and 10 goat cheese. So back on the farm, I gathered 10 of each cheese and headed back to Olivia's house and down to her basement, which is actually a bar. See, I told you they were fancy. And that just left me to get 10 starfruit wine by the end of the season. Wasting no time at all, I rode the bus out to the desert where I acquired 64 starfruit seeds and headed on back to the valley. I gathered up what I needed and headed on over to the patch of farmland in the town and spent the rest of the day setting up and planting my starfruit. Day 143, I was right back out to my starfruit to add some paths and make it look pretty. Right, now that's done, let's hope I don't forget about it. That afternoon, I blessed the wizard with another void essence, which puts him at max heart. And then I found him on a summoning circle surrounded by Junimos. Seeming quite flustered, he asked me to send them back to their home, and just like that, they were gone. I promised to keep his little secret just between us. After dealing with that, I raced up to Robin's just before she closed to build my fourth and final barn for my pig area. And then I have to upgrade every barn twice. Oh man, this is gonna take some time, isn't it? I mooched around the farm for a while before calling it in for the night. It was Jazz's birthday on day 144, so I cooked up a plum pudding and went out to find her. It did take me a lot longer than I'd like to admit, but I finally found her watching animals on the ranch. I made my way over to my patch of starfruit to admire it, I guess? Poxio, what the hell are you doing? I then decided to fish the rest of the day away. Day 145, my sturgeons were being a little bit more reasonable and asked for a nautilus shell, which I happily handed on over to them. I still can't find that damn dwarf skull 3 though. I then popped into town to see Gunther and donated an amphibian fossil to the museum, before heading back home and collecting my wheat. After dropping 10 off to the community center and completing the fodder bundle, I only had one thing left, and that was of course The damn red cabbage. I stuck around and waited for Gus to open the saloon so I could stock up on salads, as I hadn't really had any real source of energy, and they're good to have just in case. I planted some replacement wheat back on the farm and decided to spend the rest of the day chopping trees and stocking up on wood. My patch of hot peppers were ready for harvest the morning of day 146, so I picked them and dumped them into my summer crops chest. Today was Martin's birthday, and so I parked my horse up, sneakily got myself an ice cream, and caught Martin on his way to work to hand him a birthday gift. I then, no joke, spent the whole day gathering wood. Hey man, I need a lot of it, so it was worth it, trust me. On day 147, my radishes were ready for harvest, so I picked them all and dumped them into my crops chest for safekeeping. Sally and I visited the traveling cart, and although I was tempted by this iridium bar, I decided against it because it was 4,000 gold.
Oh my god.
Inflation, am I right? I did a quick ride by my starfruit to make sure nothing bad had happened to them, and I paid a visit to Pierre to buy some replacement seeds. Back on the farm, I planted down some poppy seeds, and for the rest of the night I swagged my axe around again, committing more acts of deforestation before heading to sleep. Day 148, I saw I had quite the egg collection, so I thought it would be useful to make a couple more mayo machines, which I placed down in my machine area. Over in town, I waited very patiently for the saloon to open so I could surprise Gus with a birthday gift, but I found him walking back from Pierre's, so that works too, I guess. While I was there, I picked up another special quest from Susan, who wants me to make some homemade fertilizer. Not store-bought though, oh no, I had to make it myself. Before I could get started on that though, I paid Robin a visit and commissioned a shed to be built. This is where I plan to put my jade crystallariums and oil makers in. At some point. I'm too poor to achieve that at the moment. Anyway, back on the farm I had to dig into my fish reserves because Susan wanted 50 fertilizer, which is 50 fish. Luckily for me though, I had been hoarding fish anyway, so I managed it pretty easy. Naturally, I rode Sally up to Emerald Farm and dropped the fertilizer into Susan's chest, which completed the quest. Of course, being a Monday night, my ancient fruit wine was ready to be collected, so I gathered it all up and dumped it into the shipping bin. Before bed, however, I prepared my greenhouse for more ancient fruit seeds, and crafted a whole bunch of deluxe speed grow so I could speed up the ancient fruit growing. Day 149 started with chopping wheat and lots of ancient fruit. I placed down my deluxe speed grow, turned the ancient fruit into seeds, and finally finished filling the greenhouse. The remaining fruit I put into kegs just for some extra cash. Sally and I then rode to Pierre's where I purchased some blueberry plants, which I then planted back on the farm. I didn't accomplish much for the rest of the day. I kinda just faffed around the farm before heading to bed that night. Although a crop fairy did come overnight, so that was cool. It was day 150 and it was a good day today because my red cabbages were finally ready for harvest. Without delay, I rode Sally as fast as I could over to the community center, where I handed in the red cabbage, completing the dye bundle, and finally the community center. It was safe to say I was very happy. Today was also Maru's birthday, so I gave her one of her favorites, a strawberry. Afterwards, I thought I'd better see the inside of Jojo Mart at least once before it gets demolished. I did find Pam giving poor Martin a hard time on the cash register. And then I bought some more summer crop seeds since Pierre was closed today. I spent the rest of the day diving through the musty mines, looking for gold, stone, and anything else I could get my hands on, really. Overnight, I had reached level 10 combat and opted to go with the Brute perk, which lets you deal 15% more damage. Day 151 was the summer luau. But before I could be on my way, Gus came over to visit me. He came all this way over to hand me a mini jukebox and a crafting recipe to make another one, which is lovely, thank you Gus. I placed it down in front of my house to show it off. I rode Sally into town and came across a community celebration for the restored community center. I joined the festivities inside and Mayor Lewis presented me with the Stardew Hero Trophy. Morris then came marching in demanding everyone go back to Joja. So I told Pierre to finish things the old-fashioned way and okay, remind me never to get on Pierre's bad side. Anyway, from one festivity to the next, I headed on down to the beach where I put a truffle into the potluck soup and wowed the governor for the second year in a row. Day 152, I woke up to a mailbox full of cooking recipes, and after sorting through them, I headed on down to Willie's shop. Amongst all the recipes, Willie had asked me to come and visit, so that's exactly what I did. Upon entering the back room, Willie showed me an old boat that needed a bit of love, so he asked me to provide the necessary materials, and he'll get to fixing it. Sally and I then headed up to Robin's where I commissioned a big shed upgrade before finding the wizard up by the railroad in a bit of a huff. He lectured me again about his ex-wife, saying he he'd lost his magic ink in her hut somewhere, and that, of course, it was up to me to retrieve said magic ink. To move this thing in the way though, I need a talisman. The wizard suggested Krobus would know, so I guess I'll head there then. But first Susan wanted to show me her big melons. Hey, the ones made with the fertilizer I gave her, thank you very much. I made my way down to the sewers where Krobus opened up the mutant bug lair saying the talisman was in there. One adventure through the lair later and I had my hands on the talisman. So back up at the railroad I moved the statue and headed into the swamp. What's this? A goblin in my way? No worries, I have some void mayo for you. I got my hands on the magic ink and teleported straight back to the wizard's tower where I handed it over. He rewarded me with the Book of Summoning. Now this is where I can purchase things like Junimo huts, obelisks, and the golden clock. However, I'll come back for them another time because I don't quite have the funds for them at the moment. As if this day wasn't action-packed enough though, I was intrigued to find a warp symbol on the ground to the south of the Cindersap forest. What did I do? I stepped in it, of course. And suddenly I was transported to a secret area of the woods. I found a plaque which read, "Follow the mushrooms." And then I realized there were mushrooms that littered the paths, offering hidden paths around the forest. After hours of exploring, the night was coming and I was losing time fast. But finally, I found my way down to a Junimo-filled village, who sell incredible things like artifacts, legendary fish, tiny crops, minerals, and lots more. I quickly grabbed a Dwarf Scroll 3 before passing out and vowed to come back another day. Day 153 started with an eerie shot of Aurora Vineyard, and I have a feeling my presence will be needed there. But before I could head there, I finally satisfied my lava eels with the Dwarf Scroll before heading on over to One River Road. Evelyn taught me how to make some cookies, which was very nice, and I handed Alex a birthday gift since it was his birthday today. Over at the museum, I found Martin getting flustered over some books he was looking at. Turns out, Martin was looking through old family trees from the valley because he didn't actually know his own parents, which is really sad. I was there, however, to donate an elvish jewelry which I had found yesterday in the woods. Back on the farm, my melons had grown, so I picked them and put them in my summer crops chest. I popped by Pierre's and found all the farmers having a cute wee moment together before purchasing some spangle seeds, which I planted back on the farm. That afternoon, I did some decorating by the greenhouse and fluffed around the farm for a while. Since today was a thunderstorm, I used a rain totem to ensure tomorrow was the same, which as you'll see I do for the next couple of days. Gunther stopped by the farm the morning of day 154 to let me know that all the donations I had made to the museum meant that we were going to get a large donation, and that I would be getting a portion of said donation. Hey, I mean, sounds pretty good to me. Down at Willie's shop, I had everything I needed to repair the boat to Ginger Island, so I handed it over. Now I just need to wait until tomorrow when it's fixed. Back on the farm, I spent the rest of the day mooching around doing some chores, like petting animals, replanting crops that had grown, and watching my lightning rods charge up. Riveting stuff, I know. But overnight, Willie and Robin used the materials I had given them, and they fixed the boat. So on day 155, that is exactly where I headed. I waited patiently for Willie to open his shop, paid for a ticket, and set sail to the Fern Islands. Once on the island, I didn't have time to soak in the sights because I had work to do. I met a boy named Leo who seemed quite shy, but if I wanted to speak his language, I'd have to go hunting for golden walnuts. But before I could even start, this happened. Hold on, wait for it. Any second now. Right there. That's the moment I realized I got the living hat. Now for those who haven't played a lot of Stardew before, or don't know the big deal behind this hat, it has a 0.001 chance of dropping when chopping weeds, and if I'm not mistaken, that's a 1 in 100,000 chance. I rest my case. I was very excited. Anyway, after that crazy luck, I got to collecting walnuts. And after a day's work collecting walnuts and opening up other parts of the island, I headed back to the valley where I collected my wine, shipped it off, and headed to bed. Day 156 was another Tuesday, which meant my ancient fruit was awaiting harvest. So to my greenhouse I went, where I picked my ancient fruit and shoved them into kegs over at the shed. I then picked some crops that were ready to harvest before riding Sally into town. Also, Sally has been put in charge of the living hat, and I think she looks great. I passed by my small farm patch in town, where I collected up my now ready to harvest harvest starfruit as they had finished growing, and back home I put 10 into kegs for Olivia's special quest. I decided to keep the rest just in case I needed them, and as you'll see later on, I'm pretty glad I did. I popped by the desolate Jojo Mart building to find a plaque for the missing bundle. I'll need a few in-game items to complete it, so I'll keep an eye out for them on my adventures. For now though, I took a trip down to Cindersap Forest and found a scared looking Jazz lost in the woods, so I took her back to Marnie's. I was here because I wanted to finally visit Aurora Vineyard and see what was up. All I found in the old abandoned house was a single Junimo plaque. Unfortunately for me though, I couldn't understand the writing. So I took off to see the wizard. After confronting Magnus about the scroll, he still couldn't quite decipher it. So he asked for help and another witch came to our aid. Her name was Camilla. She deciphered the scroll, saying there was a young Junimo who inhabits the basement and asks for 200 starfruit. I left thinking, dang, that's a lot of starfruit. It was however getting too late to visit the desert and buy the starfruit seeds I need, so I thought I'd map out the top of the shed, which would make for a perfect place to grow 200 starfruit. I popped 6 iridium sprinklers down and I headed to bed. Day 157 started out with a bus ride to the desert. I paid Sandy a visit at the Oasis shop and purchased my 200 starfruit seeds. Arriving back in the valley, I headed back to Grandpa's shed where I got to planting. Since I can only plant 144 crops at a time, I'll have to do this in 2 batches. And after working on my starfruit for so long, the day had just kind of rolled on by. I handed Sam a birthday present, said hello to my animal friends, and called it in for the night. It was back to Ginger Island on day 158. I spent a bit of time collecting more golden walnuts and running through the volcano dungeon. I spent the majority of the day in the dungeon collecting cinder shards, slaying magma sprites, and collecting more golden walnuts. And since I was too far deep by the time night rolled around, I ended up passing out there at 2 AM. Day 159, I woke up on the island, but I headed straight back to the valley where I sorted my inventory back into my chests and got ready for another day. Sally and I rode up to Robin's where I handed Demetrius's favorite, a strawberry, over to him for his birthday. And then I caught a ride on Willie's boat right back to Ginger Island. Over on the island farm, I set up a normal sprinkler and planted a melon, wheat, and a garlic, as I need to grow these for the Gourmand frog. Look, he's a very particular frog. I headed north where I opened up the dig site and bombed this cave to let Professor Snail out. He looks after the island museum, so I'm sure I'll be stopping by to see him again. I then cleared out the dig site, collected some more golden walnuts, and dropped off some bones to our new friend Professor Snail. And then it was time for your favorite segment of all time, and season 2 of Panning with Poxial! If you're new to Panning with Poxial, the game is very simple. I'm after a certain ring called the Lucky Ring, which can be panned up from the dig site river, and while wearing the ring, the player will be granted with +1 luck. So I spent a while patiently waiting and panning until the unthinkable happened. Holy shit. I'd just like to thank my family, the academy, those who supported me through the hard times when I could never get the ring. I genuinely cannot believe it. I finally got the ring. Day 160, the rain was pouring down, but I was far from a bad mood after yesterday's incredible events. After finishing some chores around the farm, I rode Sally over to the museum where I donated a few artifacts I had found yesterday while clearing out the dig site. And then I was back to the volcano dungeon where I spent a good portion of the day fighting my way through levels of danger, trying my hardest to reach the top of the volcano. And after hours of dodging fireballs and slaying magma sprites, I emerged at the forge. Waiting for me at the top was an adventurer named Lance, who was very impressed with my efforts. Having the forge unlocked is very important as I get into the late game, as the forge allows me to combine rings, enchant tools, and upgrade weapons. I hopped on the boat back home and made my way back to the farm where I headed to bed for a well-deserved rest. Lance paid me a visit the morning of day 161, who handed me his schedule, so if I ever needed to contact him, I'd know exactly where to go. And then Lewis showed up soon after, letting me know that there will be a community day on the 22nd of every season. This is where everyone in town hangs out in the community center for the day, and I definitely won't forget about this. I started my day harvesting some summer spangles, petting the animals, and checking on my starfruit up in the shed. Up at Robin's, I commissioned an upgrade on one of my soon-to-be pig barns and headed on over to Clint's. He needed some help gathering 30 gold bars for a project Mayor Lewis wants done. So I headed back home, I gathered up 30 gold bars and headed back. I dumped the gold bars, and while I was there I dropped off 20 coal and 120 iridium ore he needed to craft that bomb he asked for all that time ago. That afternoon, I passed by the Witch's Swamp where I caught a few void salmon and ticked off another item I needed for the missing bundle. I then passed by Krobus in the sewers where I purchased a couple of crafting recipes and a cooking recipe. I started day 162 harvesting crops and gifting the dwarf an amethyst since it was his birthday today. I then slapped on some monster musk and ran through the mines slaying void spirits for the rest of the day. Before heading home though, I did check into the Adventurers Guild to see my progress and it was coming along quite nicely. Back on the farm, I collected up my ancient fruit and starfruit wine from the shed and dumped the ancient fruit wine into the shipping bin before heading to sleep. Day 163 started off with some exciting news. Rasmodius came by to let me know the Ferngil Republic Ministry of Magic has expressed their interest in developing my arcane potential and to visit him at my earliest convenience to learn about warp magic. I'll be sure to pop by, but for now I still had work to do. More specifically, picking my ancient fruit, shoving them into kegs, and gifting Victor a duck feather for his birthday. While I was there, I put the 10 starfruit wine into Olivia's basement bar, which completed her special quest, and I was rewarded with 80,000 gold. Now that is a worthwhile special quest. Up at the railway, Clint had obviously bombed through the boulder in the way of the summit, so of course I'm gonna go up and snoop around. There wasn't too much up there except for some new forageable flowers, golden rods and thistles. I won't lie though, it did feel a bit weird being up there. So I quickly left and headed on down to the wizard, excited by the prospect of learning warp magic. I started my learning by downing another elixir which offered me the ability to open warp gates. Magnus and I then went through a training montage and I quickly learned to put my abilities into actions. Now that I had mastered the art of opening warp gates, it was time to secure my nexus. I headed over to the backwoods where I met up with the wizard once again and he showed me exactly where my nexus would be stationed. Once inside, we used our magic to secure said nexus, and I created my first warp gate, which led me straight to the wizard's tower. Back in the enchanted grove, I was left to my own vices, and it was going to be up to me to find and fill my nexus full of other warp gates to many places around the expanded valley. And I was very excited. I also found a new forageable called a dewdrop berry, which had grown in the enchanted grove. I had a bit of fun warping back and forth between the wizard's tower and my nexus before finishing up the day and heading back on the farm to do some chores. Day 164 was Willie's birthday, so I started my day riding Sally into town, accepting Gunther's fragments of the past special quest, and gifting Willie a sea cucumber. Sally and I headed north up to Robin's where I commissioned another barn upgrade before slapping on another batch of monster musk and hitting the mines. Gunther's quest tasked me to collect 100 bone fragments, so with some monster musk and the burglar's ring, this was gonna be a piece of cake. By the evening time, not only had I collected all 100 bone fragments, but I also had ticked off the skeleton monster slayer goal. That night up at the Adventurers Guild, I created my second warp gate, and upon entering the gate, I created an area in my nexus that I could use to return to the Adventurers Guild at any time. Back on the farm, I then created my third warp gate from my farm totem, which was great because I thought I'd have to walk to the backwoods every time, but now I can do it from the comfort of my own home. So before bed, I spruced it up with some fences and torches. It was day 165, a good luck day, and I thought, what better way to spend a good luck day than down in the Skull Caverns. I popped by the dwarf to buy some bombs. Down at Sophia's, I purchased a bottle of aged Blue Moon wine, which will grant me with +7 luck, and I took off to the caverns. With luck on my side today, I made my way down the caverns, collecting as much as I possibly could. On floor 100, I found the elusive Mr. Key waiting for me, who congratulated me on my efforts and praised me for not using ladders. I received and drank a bottle of iridium snake milk, which will boost my overall HP by 25. And then I passed out on floor 103, happy with today's efforts. I checked my haul as soon as I woke up on day 166, which included 150 iridium, 2 prismatic shards, 3 iridium bars, and a whole bunch of other goodies. I quickly sorted it back into my chests, gave Sally a cowboy hat I had found yesterday, and donated a couple of things to the museum. I then harvested some crops before spending a good portion of the day knocking down my crop fields. As sad as it was to see them go, I now had the resources to make some upgrades, so it was time to make that happen. I spent the rest of the night planning out the area, but it got too late, so I think I'll have to finish it tomorrow. Day 167, I walked down onto the farm, looked at what I had so far, and I got back to work. I placed down my iridium sprinklers, added some lampposts for light, bought 2 Junimo huts from the Wizard's Book of Summoning, aligned the area with fences and torches, and I finally had the perfect crop area, which I was honestly very happy with. That afternoon, I was riding through town and found Olivia hosting her banquet, and with my provided cheeses and wine, it was looking like a real hit. I was, however, on my way to Ginger Island. Moments before the banquet, I had just crafted an iridium band, meaning I now have the 4 rings I wish to combine together to make the ultimate combination. So up at the forge, I combined my iridium band with the lucky ring and my slime charmer ring with the burglar's ring. It was safe to say that I was now a happy man. Back in the valley, I spent the rest of the night constructing the interior of my slime hutch. This design is pretty standard for me, I do it all the time, but once I'm finished I can see why I do it every time. It's simple, it's classy, and I love it. Day 168 was the final day of summer. I moved some slime eggs I had collected over to the slime hutch and put a couple into incubation before heading up to Robin's, where I commissioned another barn upgrade. That afternoon I popped by Pierre's where I purchased a load of grass starter and worked on a path to the slime hutch for the rest of the afternoon. And bada bing bada boom, it was looking pretty nice. I stayed up past my bedtime and headed down to the beach where I watched the moonlight jellies come up to the pier, and I enjoyed this absolute banger of a track once again. Funny number day plus 100 was the first day of fall. Sticking to the theme of each season, I spent the whole day hoeing dirt, watering the ground, and planting as many different types of fall crops as I could, which is pretty much how I spent the whole day. Before bed though, I collected all of my ancient fruit wine from the shed, shoved it into the shipping bin, and headed to bed after a long day of planting crops. The rain was pouring down on day 170. I started my day with some chores around the farm before heading into town with Sally to find Penny. I found her by the museum and gifted her a melon because it was her birthday today. I passed by the special quest board and picked up a quest from Sophia, which tasked me to gather materials for a fairy garden, which I totally do. I definitely do not completely forget about this and then never do it. Back on the farm, my starfruit had finally grown in the shed, so I picked it all and replanted the final batch so I could finally make some progress with Aurora Vineyard. I then picked my ancient fruit in my greenhouse, which was a beautiful sight seeing every single plant ready for harvest, and I dumped them all into my kegs before heading back to the Junimo village. That's right, I finally remembered to go back. I conjured up another warp gate while I was there. I stepped through the warp gate, which took me back to my nexus, and I had my 4th warp point up and running. Back in the village, I decided to splash my cash on a whole bunch of different artifacts I hadn't donated to the museum yet, and then I headed back home. Day 171, I started my day with some chores before riding Sally into town. I popped by the museum and donated all the artifacts I had bought yesterday, and then I headed up to Robin's where I commissioned another big barn upgrade. Afterwards, I took a boat trip across the ocean to Ginger Island, as I'm pretty sure my 3 crops would have grown. Ah, there they are. I showed all 3 to the Gourmand Frog, who paid a handsome sum of 5 golden walnuts per crop, which I used to rebuild the island resort. With the debris cleared, I collected some more golden walnuts by the Pirate's Cove before spending the evening clearing my island farm of the debris. I spotted Birdie fishing, as she usually is, and told me about her late husband's lost keepsake. So she gave me a war memento she had found and hoped that I could retrieve said pendant. I headed back to the valley where I emptied my inventory into my chests and went to sleep. Most of day 172 I spent completing Birdie's quest. I handed the war memento to Kent, who gave me some gourmet tomato soup. I took the soup to Gus, who traded that with a Stardew Valley rose. I paid Sandy a visit in the desert, who loved the flower so much she returned the favor with an advanced TV remote. I took the remote to George, who handed me an Arctic shard. I paid Rasmodius a visit, who traded the Arctic shard for a worm. And down at the beach I handed Willy the worm, who finally gave me the pirate's locket, which I handed back to Birdie on Ginger Island. I was rewarded with the crafting recipe for fairy dust and some more golden walnuts. To finish the day off, I was back at the dig site for another episode of Panning with Poxil. Hey, don't think just because I got it once, I'm cancelling the remaining episodes. I want to get as many as I can now. Unfortunately, today though, I wasn't able to add another lucky ring to my collection. That night, I passed by the Pirate's Cove, which was full of life. I had played some darts and bet this guy 3 times in a row, pretty embarrassing for you, buddy boy, who gave me some golden walnuts for my skills. I then headed back to the valley and finally to bed. Day 173, I woke up to my Junimos working hard collecting crops. The joys of having Junimo huts on your farm is that you don't have to pick crops, they do it for you. I popped by Pierre's and bought some replacement cranberry seeds, which I planted back on the farm. Today was also Elliot's birthday, so I rode Sally down to the beach where I found him on the pier, and I gifted him a duck feather. Back on the farm, I did some exterior decorating by planting trees and filling this bare spot with some grass. As for the rest of the day, I kinda just fluffed around the farm, not really achieving all too much. I started day 174 admiring my crop area. It's so colourful. I paid the sewers a visit, not to visit Krobus this time however. I was here to reset my foraging skills. Since wood wasn't going to be too hard to buy now with all the gold I have, I decided I will finally change my foraging skills, which will happen overnight. For now though, I was back to Ginger Island where I was making my way through the volcano dungeon, collecting golden walnuts, gathering cinder shards, and collecting anything else I could get my hands on. Back in the valley, I headed to bed where I then changed my foraging skills to Gatherer and Botanist, meaning anything I forage will automatically be iridium quality, and I have a chance to pick up 2 items from 1 forage. It was day 175 and I thought I should add some preserve jars closer to my ponds since they were producing quite a lot of roe now. I then decided the space around my farmhouse looked a bit bare, so I added a pathway with some fences, torches and grass, which took up most of the day, but I didn't mind because I really like it. Aw, see, Samson loves it. Day 176, I was passing by the special quest board and picked up the mysterious venture quest from Marlin, which would only be revealed if I accepted. So of course I did, and it turns out he needs a lot of bombs. But I think I'll finish that another day, as today I was back to the volcano dungeon on Ginger Island. Again, I was looking for more cinder shards, golden walnuts, and dragon teeth. I did spend the whole day running through the dungeon. It wasn't until later on that night that I travelled back to the valley, collected up my ancient fruit wine, dumped it all into the shipping bin, and headed to sleep.
Tell them to bring me my money.
Day 177 was another Tuesday, so I spent the morning picking ancient fruit and filling my kegs for more wine and more money. I also finally had everything I needed to complete the missing bundle, so I rode Sally over to the rundown Jojima and handed in all the items to the final plaque. The Junimo said his last goodbye and vanished in a flurry of stars. While in town, I consoled Victor about losing a dear animal friend of his before heading up Pierre's to buy some more fall crop seeds, which I then planted back on the farm. With not too much to do, I decided to call it in for an early night. However, overnight, the Junimos dance for one final time and the Jojima will now be replaced with a movie theatre. Day 178 started with a morning ride to Clint's where I put in my hoe for a gold upgrade, and then I passed by Robin's where I commissioned a second farmhouse upgrade. This would add in a nursery and the option to add in 2 extra rooms if I so wished. I quickly popped by the summit just in case there were some different forageables for the fall season, however there were not. And then I spent the rest of the afternoon shipping one of everything I had for the shipping collection. That evening, Lewis popped by the farm and offered me a farm extension at the low price of 250,000 gold.
Oh my god, bro.
Man, land does not come cheap. I said I would and that I'd have to talk to Lewis again to confirm my option, but I don't think there's any time limit, so that's something I'll do later on when I can definitely afford it. Overnight, I somehow got level 10 fishing. I'm a little confused because I looked over the footage again and I didn't go fishing today, but I mean, hey, that was the last max player skill I needed, so I'm not complaining. It was day 179 and I started my day by making bombs, gifting Jody a diamond for her birthday, and stashing said bombs into Marlin's chest, which completed his special quest. I wonder why he needed so many bombs. And then I was back to Ginger Island. I found a gem bird and put its gem on the eastern pedestal before heading to the dig site for another episode of Panning with Popsil! Unfortunately, I couldn't add another lucky ring to the collection today, but I'm certainly determined to get more. Day 180, my pond of void salmon had requested 10 bat wings, so I gave in to their demands and handed them over. I quickly popped on over to the museum where I donated a dino egg my little dino friend had produced, and up at the Adventurers Guild I found out what all those bombs were for. Turns out a place far away called Castle Village was in need of them, and they were taken away in a blink of an eye. Marlin rewarded me for my my efforts with an order ledger, which lets me buy some cool decorations from the Adventurers Guild. I waited around for the guild to open and I had a look through the ledger and it was filled with some pretty cool stuff. I'll have to come back and buy some decorations later. That afternoon I worked on a path that led off the slime hutch path into the secret woods, and you know the drill by now. I placed paths, fences, torches, grass, and by the evening I had a pretty cool looking path, which I made sure to keep horse friendly just for Sally, and then I decided to head to bed early. I suddenly awoke on day 181 to a much bigger house. Did that happen while I was sleeping, or you know what, never mind. Today was Abigail's birthday, so I waited patiently for Pierre's to open and handed her an amethyst. After purchasing some more fall crop seeds from Pierre, I passed by Robin's where I commissioned the final house upgrade, and then I circled back into town to pick up my gold hoe, and swapped it out for a gold watering can upgrade. Back on the farm, I finally planted down my seeds, replacing all the crops my Junimos had picked, and I'll be honest, I didn't achieve much for the rest of the day, so... On to day 182, I was back at Pierre's to buy more seeds, but not before helping Abigail smoke the first level of Journey of the Prairie King. Back on the farm, I planted down my seeds, and decided today would be the perfect day for another episode of Penning with Poxiel. Today's episode came with more excitement as, yes, that's right, I added a second lucky ring to my collection. Jody decided to pay me a visit the morning of day 183 to invite me to dinner. They did request I bring a largemouth bass though, but lucky for me I had one already in my chest ready to go, which meant I could spend the morning doing things like chores around the farm, collecting my gold watering can, and giving Sandy a birthday gift. That afternoon I checked up on my starfruit in my shed, and they were all ready for harvest, so I collected up all 200 of my starfruit and raced on over to Aurora Vineyard. And upon entering the old abandoned house, I went straight to the plaque and handed over my 200 starfruit. I waited a couple of seconds, but I think I'll have to wait for something to happen overnight. I headed over to Jody's place and spent the night having a lovely dinner full of fried bass before heading home to collect my wine and ship it off. Before bed, I decided to make a whole bunch of deluxe speed grow, which I placed over my soil in the shed, since I'm gonna fill this area with ancient fruit tomorrow. And that is exactly what I did the morning of day 184. Actually, today was the Valley Fair, but I think I had more important things to do, so I think I can afford to miss it, just this once. I picked my ancient fruit, spent the morning turning them back into seeds, planted 144 ancient fruit down, and put the remaining fruit into kegs. A job well done, I think. I passed by the special quest board in town and picked up Willie's tropical fish quest before heading back to the farm and to bed. Day 185, I noticed the Junimos had been hard at work, paid by the kindness of my heart and not minimum wage, so I purchased some cranberry seeds, which I planted back on the farm. I rode Sally over to Aurora Vineyards where something magical had happened, and I was introduced to this adorable looking guy whose name was Apples. So cute. He thanked me for the starfruit and headed back to his village for the day. Although nothing much had changed on the farm, I had made a new friend. Maybe the real treasure is the friends we make along the way. Anyway, I spent the afternoon painting my farmhouse, stable, coop, and barn. I was there for a while, but I was pretty happy with the final colours. Before I left, I did commission the first deluxe upgrade on one of my barns. With some time left in the day, I ran a rabbit's foot over to the delivery truck driver, who in return handed me a special charm, which permanently increases my daily luck. I headed into the movie theatre where I found Claire and Martin working at the till. So despite the removal of Jojo Mart, I was happy to see them. Up at the bathhouse, I followed another secret note and fished up a lost necklace which belongs to Caroline. Now you can hand it to Abigail and get more friendship points, but after what happened last series, I gave it to Caroline, just out of spite. After which I headed home and finally to sleep. It was day 186 and it was Marnie's birthday, so Sally and I rode down to the ranch where I gave her a diamond. I then paid a visit to my slime hutch, which was now very full of slimes, before popping by Aurora Vineyard again. Apples was nowhere to be found though, so back I went to the farm where I spent a while trying to fix the grass clipping through the stable and the house. 4 fences looked kinda weird, so I did some problem solving, got a decoration from the ledger, and placed it down. Now you can barely see it, and no grass will grow there, meaning no more clipping grass. And with that success, I decided to go to bed. Overnight, however, Fred the sheep gave birth, and I called the baby Ted. Very on brand, I know. I started day 187 with a trip to Aurora Vineyard, and Apples was finally back from his trip to the Junimo village. With Apples levels back, I could now open a warp gate to the basement, and once I walked through, I solidified another warp location in my nexus. Back in the forest, a hidden pathway had opened, and I followed it to this magical looking spring. I got to talking with these creatures I couldn't quite see, but soon I found out they were forest sprites, and I was standing in front of Sprite Spring. They allowed me to cross the spring where I set up a warp gate. I hurried back to my nexus, took the warp gate back to the spring, and was met with a small field of forageable flowers. The sprites mention rare forageables sometimes pop up, so I'll have to make coming here a habit. For the rest of the day, Sally and I ventured around the valley foraging before calling it in for an early night. Day 188, I started my day foraging down at the beach before taking the ferry across to Ginger Island. I thought what better time to try and catch some tropical fish and complete Willie's quest. Well, it turns out the answer to that was 5 days ago because I had a horrible time trying to catch anything in the river. I then tried out in the ocean, and I'll be honest, I caught some really cool new fish, but it just wasn't happening. It was getting close to evening when I called it quits, and I said to myself I'll try again another time. However, back at the farm, Camilla came knocking on my door. Now, she was the one who helped me with the Junimo writing all that time ago. Telling me there was some important business to attend to, she teleported us once again, and we were now standing upon a tall tower. She mentioned we were now in the continent of Glidora, and below us lay the magical wasteland called the Crimson Badlands. Camilla allowed me to place a warp gate here so I could return and try my luck scouring the Badlands at any time. She teleported us back to the farm and left once again. I headed to bed excited to return to Glidora and uncover what secrets lay hidden beneath the Badlands. It was Robin's birthday on day 189, so before embarking on an adventure, I gifted her some goat cheese. I then entered my nexus and took the warp gate back to Glidora. Before heading out, I met with Alicia and a guy named Isaac. I don't know about Isaac, he seems a bit shady, that one. Anyway, he showed me a map of the Badlands, which I had to memorize since I don't have my own map. And then I entered into the hellscape. I ventured across the Badlands, picking up void souls and fighting my way through hordes of powerful enemies. After a while of total nothing, I found my way up to a castle. However, magical protection on the outside meant I couldn't get through. So I fought my way south, where I came across an iridium-filled canyon. I grabbed as much as I could, but I quickly found out that these enemies are endless. So I hurried out of there before things got desperate. It was getting late and I was constantly being swarmed by enemies, so I tried one more attempt to open the castle with anything I had found on my adventure, but it was no use. So I rushed back to the entrance of the Badlands, through the warp gate, and all the way back home just in the nick of time. Day 190, my curiosity got the better of me. I was determined to make it through the castle and reach safety, so back out I went to the Badlands once again. From my adventures yesterday, I figured the graveyard full of bones may have something there that will help me open the gate, and then I saw it.
Holy Jesus. What is that? What the fuck is that?
A void serpent, 5 times the size of my own body, was now chasing me down. The damage he dealt was ruthless, and I didn't stand a chance. I was dead in seconds. Camilla thankfully intervened and kept me alive, but I had no health or energy left, so I vowed to come back another day and finish the job. In a strange turn of extremes, I decided to join everyone in the community center for Community Day. After almost dying, I think I needed it. That night, I collected up my ancient fruit wine, shipped it off, and headed to bed. Day 191 was another Tuesday, so I fell back to routine and picked my ancient fruit before kegging them up at the shed. I then swung by Robin's, who I caught just before she headed out to her workout group, and that was for another deluxe barn upgrade. Back on the farm, I had a bit of fun playing around with my slimes since my slime charmer ring keeps me safe from their damage. And then I made my way back through my own nexus to get to the Adventurers Guild where I handed Marlin a gift. Down in the saloon, I stocked up on some more salads since I was running low before heading to bed early. It was day 192 and I figured I would go visit the Sprite Spring. So through my nexus I went and I picked some beautiful flowers while I was there. Today was also George's birthday, so I handed him one of his favorites, a leek. On my way home, I popped by Pierre's to buy some seeds, and back home I filled up an empty section with more amaranth. My void salmon were feeling a little bougie today because they asked for a diamond, but I had saved up lots from my crystallarium, so I didn't mind. That afternoon I decided to visit the secret woods where I got some more hardwood and did a bit of foraging. With not much to do, I just headed home and to sleep early again. The rain was pouring down on day 193, and I started my day down at Marnie's where I got some ornamental hay bales. I circled around to Pierre's where I bought some grass, and back on the farm I placed down my hay bales and filled the field back up with grass. Ah, that's much better. I was clearly in a decorative mood today as I continued to decorate around the path by the bridge. I added some grass in the back, some stone pathways to add some texture, and finally these cool lamps I picked up from the guild's ledger book. I'm sure I'll add some more stuff later, but for now I was pretty happy with how it looked. Day 194 was a skull cavern kinda day. I spent the whole day diving through the caverns, ending up with a whopping 216 iridium ore, 5 prismatic shards, and a whole bunch of other goodies before passing out at 2 AM. I spent day 195 commissioning another barn upgrade from Robin, doing chores on the farm, and giving apples a starfruit for a gift. However, I did stay up late tonight as it was the Spirits Eve festival, and because this is expanded, the maze is different once again from last year's. Now I would like to play this out in real time, but we'd be here for another 10 minutes, so here's me getting the golden pumpkin. So yeah, just pretend this took like 2 minutes, and then we'll be fine. Day 196 was the final day of the fall season, and also Susan's birthday. So Sally and I rode up to Emerald Farm where I made good use of that golden pumpkin I got last night and I gifted it to her. I passed by my friend Gunther in the museum to donate another artifact before heading on over to Ginger Island. I had brought a whole bunch of pathways with me, and that was so I could map out where I wanted my iridium sprinklers to go. I plan on filling out this farm full of ancient fruit, but maybe I'll save that for the next 300 days. By the evening time I had finished up setting the borders within my island farm and decided to head back home and finally to bed. Day 197 was the first day of winter. I got to planting some winter seeds since there aren't a lot of winter crop options. Once the seeds were down and the farm chores were done, I headed straight back to Ginger Island. It's too cold in the valley. When I arrived back at the island farm, however, it was full of weeds again. You know, not much pisses me off in this game, but this certainly does. I placed down my iridium sprinklers and left without looking back. Back in the valley, I headed on down to the sewers where I gave Krobus a big old pumpkin for his birthday, before cracking open some golden coconuts over at Clint's. Back home that evening, I collected my ancient fruit wine as usual, and shipped it all off before hitting the hay. Day 198, I was following routine once again, picking my ancient fruit and shoving them into kegs, but I didn't mind because my wallet was feeling pretty heavy, because it was full of gold. Get it? Anyway, up at Robin's, I commissioned the final deluxe barn upgrade for my pigs. I would like to formally apologize for not getting the pigs in this 200 days. However, they will be bored in the next 300 days, and I will still be naming them after some of you watching right now from the first 100 days. That I can promise. But for now, I did some foraging down at the beach before tuning in at 3 PM. Yep, I think you can tell I'm ready for day 200. Day 199 was Linus's birthday, so I took a trip out to the desert where I collected some cactus fruit and coconuts before giving Linus a coconut back in the valley, after which I headed to sleep again at 12 PM. And finally, day 200. As is tradition in all of my 100 days videos, on the final day I take some time to soak in the bathhouse spa where I reflect on the past 100 days and just relax. And after everything that had happened, I was definitely in need of a spa day. I was back on the farm day 201. The snow was falling and I got to reacquainting myself with the farm. I said hello to my animal friends who I hadn't seen in a while, passed by Grandpa's shed which was now full to the brim of ancient fruit, and shoved some iridium into my furnaces. Ah, it's good to be back. I hitched a ride into town with Sally and made my way over to Clint's. However, I picked the one day that he wasn't there, so you know, that's a great start. Instead, I packed a slingshot and took a boat ride over to Ginger Island where I shot down this golden walnut which was stuck in a tree. On the west side of the island, I walked over to Mr. Key's walnut door. I'm hoping to unlock the door soon, and with only 8 walnuts left to get before he would let me in, it was looking pretty promising. Back in the valley, I tended to my slime hutch before turning in for the night. With my first day back on the farm over with, it was on to day 202. Today, I wasn't going to miss my opportunity at Clint's, so I filled my boots with snow as I waited for him to open, which I love, by the way. Once inside, I put my axe in for an iridium upgrade before riding with Sally up to the mines. I slapped on some of that new Gucci Monster Musk cologne and got to work. You see, one of the monster slayer goals I need is void spirits, and with Monster Musk increasing the amount of monsters that spawn on each level, it was the perfect way to achieve that goal. So I spent the rest of the day doing just that. As it was getting late, I knocked off the last one and finished the monster slayer goal. On my way back home, Linus and I got up to some interesting things in his tent. Oh, okay, he was just showing me how to craft a wild bait. You know, I really thought something else was going on there. Anyway, I made it back home, dumped my inventory into my chest, and finally headed to bed. Day 203 started with a trip through my Nexus to Sprite Spring. I had some comments from the 200 days video that there was a secret area behind the waterfall, and would you look at that? I didn't even know you could swim in the spring, let alone find a secret area, so thank you to those who let me know. I did try fishing to see if there were any secrets, but all I got was trash. I traveled back through the ancient grove and continued on into town where I handed Caroline a summer spangle, since it was her birthday today. She also showed me the power of green tea, which went about as you'd expect. Trying to get as far away from that as I could, I decided to head to Ginger Island where I planted a whole bunch of taro by the river, mainly for the golden walnuts you get for farming. Unfortunately, you can't get them from regrowable crops like my ancient fruit, and I'd need taro for the shipping collection anyway. So really it was two birds with one stone. Back on the farm that evening, I didn't achieve all too much, so on to day 204. It was the Festival of Ice today. However, before I could go and join, my winter seeds had produced their forageables. So after picking them all and turning them back into seeds and replanting them all, I headed on down to the festival. As an expert fisherman now, I demolished everyone at the fishing game. I mean, come on, Willie, you really call yourself an experienced fisher? My friend, you should be embarrassed. Back on the farm that night before bed, I collected up my ancient fruit wine from the shed and shipped it off for lots of that wonderful gold. I started day 205 with some ancient fruit picking. However, this time it wasn't just my greenhouse full of fruit. The ancient fruit in my shed had grown too, so I went along and collected them all up. Afterwards, I shoved them all into my kegs. As for the excess ancient fruit, I shipped them off for some extra cash. I do plan to expand my ancient fruit wine empire at some point, just not today. For now though, I found myself back at Clint's picking up my iridium axe and swapping it out for an iridium pickaxe upgrade. That afternoon, Sally and I rode up to the Adventurers Guild where I gifted Marlin a slime egg before heading to the movie theater. I jumped onto the crane game and played until I had Junimo plushies coming out of my ears. I took my 8 toys and 1 movie poster home where I left them inside for safekeeping. And then I spent the rest of the night smelting ores. Day 206 started with a trip back to the movie theater, this time to hand Claire a sunflower. And then it was off to Piers to purchase his catalogue and Robin's to get her furniture catalogue along with a bunch of wood. While I was there, I painted my shed since it was looking a bit boring compared to my other buildings. And back on the farm, I put the wood to good use by making a whole lot of kegs. I had decided the shed would be much more useful as another keg shed to make more wine, and I'd find another space for the jadestone crystallariums and oil makers at another time. In town, I passed by the special quest board where I picked up Caroline's Island Ingredients quest, which I definitely don't forget about. I quickly popped over to Ginger Island to hand Sebastian a void egg for his birthday before returning to the valley. I then spent the rest of day 206 to halfway through day 208 interior decorating. The only other important thing that happened was on day 207, I swapped out my iridium pickaxe for an iridium hoe upgrade. But apart from that, I spent these days slowly but surely decorating my farmhouse. And by day 208, I was stoked with how it was coming along. All I had left was one room I wasn't too sure what I wanted to do with yet. That afternoon on day 208, I paid Lewis a visit where I closed my eyes and spent 250,000 gold on the farm extension I had agreed to do at the end of the last 200 days. Watching all of that gold slip away like that brought a tear to my eye, but I had a feeling it would be worth it. That evening, I passed the time chopping up stumps for hardwood, tending to my slime hutch, and gifting Marlin another slime egg before calling it in for the night. Mayor Lewis popped by the morning of day 209 to let me know that my farm expansion application had been approved and will be cleared by tomorrow. Very exciting stuff. Down at Willie's, I paid for a ticket and travelled on over to Ginger Island. I found another gem bird on the north side of the island, so I took the gem and placed it on its pedestal. Just outside the Pirate's Cove, a mermaid sat atop a rock waiting for someone to play her some beautiful music. And what better person to do that than me? I tuned the flute blocks, I played her a melody, and I was rewarded with some golden walnuts. With 2 gems already placed on the pedestals from the gem birds, I quickly circled back to the valley, picked up a bunch of gems, and headed back to the island where I played a guessing game of what gem goes where. Luckily, I got it first try and got my hands on 5 more golden walnuts. I mooched my way through the rain and on over to Mr. Key's walnut room, who finally let me in. In this room, I can check my perfection status, accept difficult challenges, and spend key gems I get from completing said challenges on in-game items. But I think I'll come back and another day. For now though, I warped back to the valley where I got some much needed rest. My farm had gotten a little bigger on day 210. Did they do that overnight when I was sleeping? Or, you know what, never mind. I was very excited to have some extra space on the farm though. Sally and I ventured into town where I stopped by Clint's to swap out my iridium hoe for an iridium watering can upgrade, and I quickly paid Harvey's clinic a visit to hand him a truffle oil, as it was his birthday today. Then back on the farm, I spent the rest of the day making use of my new farm extension. I added a pathway to the new farm entrance and made an area for where my 4 obelisks will go. Since I placed my slime hutch where I was originally going to put them, this was probably the next best spot. Day 211 started with picking my winter seeds, turning them back into seeds, and replanting them all, which now filled up my entire crop area. And since I didn't have my watering can, a few were going to grow a day later, which totally doesn't annoy me whatsoever. I love when things grow at the exact same time and they look really dumb when they're at different stages of being ready. Anyway, I spent some time finishing off my obelisk area by adding some brick and stone braziers, and it's looking very nice. Later that evening, the night market had arrived down at the beach, so I took a quick look around before heading in to watch the mermaid show. I may have gotten a pearl from a secret note, but I'll never get that show out of my head anytime soon. It was a Monday night, so of course before bed I stayed up collecting my ancient fruit wine and shipped it off. Which of course meant I started day 212 picking my ancient fruit and shoving them into kegs. I even got to make use of my new keg shed. I quickly popped over to Ginger Island where I used some walnuts to unlock the island trader before heading back to the valley. And I spent the rest of the day cleaning out my slime hutch, gifting Marlin another slime egg, and collecting up some oak resin before heading to sleep. Day 213 I headed over to Clint's where I waited ever so patiently in the freezing cold to collect my iridium watering can, which now ticks off one of my goals. I then popped by Robin's where I commissioned my first of 2 sheds to be placed just below my obelisks. Remember how I said I'd find space for all of my jade stone and oil makers? Well, I found it. Down in the Cindersap forest, I found Krobus milling about the entry of the Junimo forest where he seemed to be enjoying some company. I found him back in the sewer where he explained to me that he can sneak there from the southern sewer pipe and that the Junimos from the village love him. Which is actually quite lovely. That afternoon, I got myself comfy just outside of Andy's farm and tried fishing for one of the 5 legendary fish. This one only spawns in winter, and in no time at all, I had caught myself the glacier fish. Back home, I put it into a big fish tank I had prepared earlier, but it was looking a little empty. So I went back down into the sewers where I cast my rod into the green sewer water and fished up the mutant carp, my second legendary fish. I added it to the fish tank along with some seaweed, stone, and a couple of sea urchins, and it was really coming together. Day 214 was a max luck day, and when I have a max luck day, I like to hit the skull cabins for resources. So I gathered up some bombs from the dwarf and waited patiently outside Pam's trailer to hurry her up. Okay, it's past 8:30. Pam, you can come out now. Pam? Oh my god, you've got to be kidding me. Oh god, this is so stupid. I have a max luck day. Why can't Pam just come out? Well, since there's no way of getting to the desert today, I decided the next best thing would be to use that luck in the volcano dungeon. I did manage to dig up another golden walnut and an ostrich egg. So hey, that's cool. While I was making my way through the dungeon, I was on the lookout for more golden walnuts, cinder shards, and dragon teeth. You see, I need 15 dragon teeth, 10 to go towards the island obelisk, and 5 to buy a banana sapling from the island trader, of which I need 10 for the island obelisk as well. I spent all day making my way through the dungeon and made it back to the island house just in time for bed. I started day 215 picking my taro in the pouring rain, which to be honest was quite a nice change of pace from the fiery inferno of the volcano dungeon. Back in the valley, I rode Sally up to Robin's where I commissioned the second shed to be built under my obelisk area. Continuing on from there, I found Marlin watching the snowfall where I handed him another slime egg, which put him at max hearts. I've been giving Marlin so many gifts recently because he has this boat I can't access without his permission, and I want on it. To finish the day off, I chopped some stumps down in the Cindersap forest for hardwood before heading to sleep. It was day 216 and Evelyn's birthday, so I headed on over to her house to give her a fairy rose flower. Down at the beach, I did some foraging before taking a boat ride over to Ginger Island. I then spent the rest of day 216 and day 217 scouring the volcano dungeon for any goodies I could get my hands on. The only other important thing to note is that on day 217, I commissioned a big shed upgrade from Robin's, which leads us on to day 218. Checking the TV again, I saw it was another max luck day, so I gathered my bombs, took off to Sophia's to buy an H bottle of Blue Moon wine for +7 luck, and waited outside for Pam to show up. She She's not coming out, is she? As I was riding back through town, I realized it was community day today, so I guess that's bad timing on my part, to be fair. Since my plans for the Skull Cavern run had been shattered yet again, I decided a good use of my time would be spent over on the island farm. Since I was going to turn all of my ancient fruit into seeds, I thought I might as well make it look good. So that's exactly what I did. I added wooden planks around the outside, wooden paths to the little bridges, and used my new and improved hoe to prepare the ground for tomorrow. By the time it was getting late, I quickly made a whole bunch of deluxe speed grow with coral and oak resin I had stored away, and a lot of grass starter with my fiber. Just before bed, I collected my ancient fruit wine and shipped it off before passing out, right in front of my house. I'm surprised I didn't get hypothermia, to be fair. Day 219 was a big day full of picking ancient fruit and replanting them on Ginger Island. Luckily, when I got there, it was raining, meaning any soil I needed to hoe would be watered for me. I then got to seed making. In between batches of seeds being ready, I would go and fill a section of land with the deluxe speed grow and come back to collect the seeds, which I kept on repeating until I had enough seeds to fill up the island farm. By 8 PM, I had finally filled the island farm full of ancient fruit, and my ancient fruit wine empire was that much closer to being complete. To finish the day off, I headed back to the valley where I managed to catch Leah hanging out in the saloon, and I gave her a goat's cheese as it was her birthday today. She then paid me a visit the next morning on day 220 to hand me a sculpture she had made just for me. Oh, isn't that just wonderful? I spent a good part of the morning picking all of my winter forageables, turning them back into seeds, and replanting them back into my crop area. Now I know they'll die as spring rolls around, but I won't have to worry about hoeing and watering a whole bunch of land when the seasons change, so hey, that's fine by me. I then did some chores around the farm before taking Willie's boat over to Ginger Island again. Over on the island farm, I finished up laying a whole bunch of grass since I want to minimize the chance of weeds growing and ruining my fields of ancient fruit. And then returning to the chill of the valley, I rode Sally up to Robbins to commission the second big shed upgrade before heading home to do some chores on the farm. Day 221 was Feast of the Winter Star. You know, one of these days I'll get it right. I joined the festivities in town where I handed Willie a rabbit's foot as I was a secret gift giver. Clint was my gift giver this year and he gave me... Okay, that's definitely one of the better gifts I've gotten, so hey, I'm not complaining. Speaking of Clint, day 222 was his birthday, so I repaid the favor by giving him a ruby. Sally and I passed by the beach to do some foraging before venturing all the way to the summit where I picked some thistle and winter star roses. I continued my foraging adventure through my nexus to Sprite Spring where I picked some more flowers and headed through the waterfall to forage in the hidden cave. Back on the farm that evening, I didn't achieve too much, so I just called it an early night. Day 223 started off with a trip to Blue Moon Vineyard where I handed Sophia a fairy rose for her birthday. And then my Skull Cavern wishes came true. It was a good luck day and Pam was back to driving the bus, so I gathered my bombs and aged Blue Moon wine and headed to the desert. Before entering the caverns, I downed the wine for my luck boost and headed inside. I spent all day diving through the caverns and ended up with 189 iridium ore, 2 prismatic shards, and a whole lot of other goodies before passing out at 2 AM. Day 224 was the final day of winter and the last day of year 2. I took the minecarts over to Clint's where I purchased a ton of coal since I was running low, and I found Sophia in the town square looking a bit down. So I offered to pat Dusty with her and she seemed to enjoy that. Sally and I quickly rode up to Robbins where I painted my 2 sheds. The first I painted green as this one will have the Jadestone crystallariums, and the second one I painted yellow since it'll house all of my oil makers. Back on the farm I spent the rest of the day smelting iron and copper into bars, and that's because I'm going to need quite a lot to meet the ancient fruit quota I now have on my island farm. And just before bed I added 83 kegs to the shed, which completely filled it out. Overnight Grandpa came and visited me in my slumber and told me he was very proud of the work I'd done to the farm. And you bet I was ready to kick into year 3. Welcome back to spring. It was day 225 and my crop fields were full of dead plants. However, I won't scythe them away until the egg festival when I splash out on a whole bunch of strawberry seeds, since I did all of my crop growing last year. Behind the waterfall, Grandpa had left me with a special surprise in the form of a statue of perfection. These give me between 2 and 8 iridium daily, so I decided to put it inside where I walk past it every day. Afterwards, I did some chores around the farm before continuing work on the farmhouse interior. I decided I want this corner room to be a gaming room. room. I'll fill it with more movie posters and arcade machines at some point, but I was excited at the prospect of it. In between my animal areas, I continued my decorating by adding some benches and decorative pines to the lamps, and it was looking very nice. I then rode Sally into town and past the special quest board where I picked up Willy's Tropical Fish quest. If that sounds familiar, then you'd be correct. In the 200 days, I was a little unsuccessful in completing this quest. I thought, what better time to try and catch some tropical fish and complete Willy's quest? Well, it turns out the answer to that was 5 days ago because I had a horrible time trying to catch anything in the river, and I'm hoping this time will be different. Sally and I headed north to the summit where I picked a new flower called the Ferngill Primrose before heading back to the farm and calling it in for the night. Day 226 was another Tuesday, so I spent the morning picking all of my ancient fruit and shoving them into kegs. I then quickly popped by Clint's to get some more coal since I used up most of it smelting ores a couple of days ago. That afternoon, I took the boat across to Ginger Island and I got stuck in trying to complete Willy's special quest. Now, before you ask, yes, the grass looks like it's still in winter, but it does fix itself, I promise. For the rest of the day, I stood in the rain fishing. I managed to hook 5 blue discus from the river and 5 lionfish from the ocean. I even managed to catch 2 new fish, a sea sponge and a lunaloo. And on day 227, I started my day over in the Pirates Cove, finishing off Willy's quest by catching 5 stingray. You know, without all the pirates here, it's actually kind of creepy. Anyway, I was fishing for quite a while, and when I finally made it back to the valley that afternoon, Magnus was waiting at my door. He was here to let me know that he was taking in a new student. Does that mean we'll have another friend in the valley? We'll just have to wait and see. To finish up the day, I spent my evening doing some chores around the farm. Day 228, I rode down to the wizard's tower to see if his new student had arrived, and upon entering, I met a new friend called Morgan. He seems fun, although Magnus told him off for using magic, so I didn't see him for too long. So I left before I got Morgan into more trouble. Today was also Kent's birthday, so I quickly popped on over to Ginger Island to give him a bowl of roasted hazelnuts. Back home, I decided to add some more pizzazz to my 2 new sheds by adding a pathway, some wooden walkways, fences and torches. And my farm expansion was starting to prove its value. Day 229 I spent in the volcano dungeon looking for more resources. I managed to get 4 teeth today though, so hey, that's pretty good. But yeah, that's about all I did today. Overnight though, Don gave birth to a baby pig who I called John, because of course I did. Day 230 I started my day with a trip into the road tunnel. I snuck a battery into the lockbox and started the Curious Mr. Key questline. But instead of continuing the quest like a normal person, I spent the rest of the day foraging, chopping up stumps for hardwood, and doing chores on the farm. Man, I get so easily distracted in this game. I took a trip to the Junimo village the morning of day 231 so that I could purchase some deluxe retaining soil, and you'll see why I bought it very soon. But for now, Sally and I rode into town to celebrate our very own Mayor Lewis's birthday by giving him a hot pepper. And then I hopped on over to Ginger Island. On the farm, I replaced an iridium sprinkler, and finally planted my ancient fern seeds and shrub seeds. Yeah, remember when I got them ages ago during the 200 days? Well, I finally remembered to plant them. And then I put my 10 deluxe retaining soil down, where I planted 10 pineapple seeds. Afterwards, I filled up the island with more grass so that the chance of weeds growing was close to none. Also, having deluxe retaining soil means I won't ever have to water those pineapples again, which is great. Back in the valley, I continued on with the Curious Mr. Key quest by throwing a rainbow shell up into the box at the railway. I received the next part of the quest, which was to put 10 beets in Mayor Lewis's fridge. So I took off on a bus ride to the desert where I bought some beet seeds from Sandy, but with no space to plant them, I'll have to wait until my ancient fern seeds and shrub seeds are done growing to plant them. So the quest for now was put on hold. Day 232, the rain was pouring down and it was also thundering. So in order to get a heap of batteries, I used a rain totem to ensure it would thunder again tomorrow. And you know what, I do this quite a few times actually, so it'll be raining for the next few days. I then traveled through my nexus to Galdora. Yes, Galdora, not Gladora, like I said last time, I got it wrong. I was here in Galdora to give Lance a birthday gift. Good thing I kept a hold of his schedule so I could find him. Back in the valley, I was passing through town and found Sophia looking a bit down, but she ran off before I could say anything. I was, however, on my way to catch a legend. The legend, I may add. Since it was raining, I had the perfect chance to catch my 3rd legendary fish. So I got comfy up at the mountain lake and started casting. It took me a few tries, but I managed to hook one, and I battled back and forth with it for a while. But after the struggle, I had caught it on my first attempt. honest. Not too shabby considering in my last series it took me like 5 attempts. And back home I put my fish into my fish tank with the other 2. Up at the railway I found Marlon paying his respects to his fallen guild members in the rain, and he invited me to join his meetings that he and Magnus have, to which I said I'd love to join. Before bed I was back on the farm collecting up all of my ancient fruit wine and dumping it all into the shipping bin. Marlon paid me a visit the morning of day 233 who wanted to discuss something with me up at the guild. Sounds interesting. However, before I go, it was of course another Tuesday, so after picking all of my ancient fruit and shoving them back into kegs, I took the minecart up to the guild. Obviously, I had jumped the gun because I was waiting in the pouring rain. But once I was let in, Marlon told me about an outpost Lance has in the Highlands. He was willing to let me use his boat to get there, however I needed to do something for him in return. What was that, you may ask? Well, it's a whole lot of monster loot. 100 Void Essence, 80 Solar Essence, 5 Slime, 40 Bat Wings, and 30 Bug Meat. Luckily for me though, I'm quite the hoarder, so I already had everything in my chests. I gathered up all the stuff I needed and hauled it back to the guild where I handed it all over to Marlon. For the rest of the night, I kinda just fluffed around the farm not doing too much, to be honest. Marlon was back the morning of day 234 letting me know that the boat was ready to set sail. I quickly passed by town where I handed Vincent a bunch of grapes for his birthday, and full of excitement I headed up to the dock. Marlon and I set sail on his boat, venturing through canyons and past beautiful waterfalls, and we finally docked just outside the outpost. We found Lance outside, who ushered us inside to discuss some important matters. He explained to me that beyond the confinements of the outpost were monsters who hold peculiar seeds with abnormal arcane properties. My goal was to obtain 4 different seed types, grow them, and return them to Lance. So my adventure began. Over days 234 and 235, I explored the vast highlands area. I started out by finding a path that led up to a winding mountain, and after making my way through hordes of never-ending monsters, I found my way to the top where I encountered a boss battle. This Pepper Rex definitely didn't go down easy, and the endless swarm of monsters certainly wasn't helping. But after a hard and long fought battle, the Rex was slain, and I was rewarded with a treasure and a golden key. While climbing down the mountain, I had noticed a huge cave entrance, so that's exactly where I headed next. The further I adventured through the cave, the greater the enemy's numbers grew. I was pretty much running through blind, but I managed to find a narrow path that led up to a dwarf who had been locked away in a cage. Turns out the key I had obtained from the Pepper Rex had been for this very cage, and I was able to set the dwarf free. I explored the cave a little bit more, but with the amount of enemies, I ran for the exit and made it out in one piece. Once out in the fresh air again, I stumbled across a large area surrounding a lake, and took my sword to slay the monsters that surrounded the area. By the end of the day, I had also managed to obtain all 4 seed types, which I'll have to plant sometime soon. So I think it's safe to say I had completed another goal. Looking for a change of pace on day 236, I reserved today for your favorite segment of all time. Yes, that's right. It's time for Panning with Poxeel! Panning with Poxeel is a game where I pan for the elusive lucky ring. Currently, I have obtained 2 this series and I want to keep adding to my collection. So I spent the day here, but unfortunately, I wasn't able to add another to the tally. Day 237 was the Festival of Eggs, so I finally scythed down my dead plants and headed into town. I went straight to Pierre's stall and got myself 999 strawberry seeds. Hey, you can never have too many strawberry seeds. And then I started up the egg hunt. This year went pretty well. I managed to get 8 eggs, which is pretty good, right? Let's see who won. I really don't want to talk about it. Day 238 was Pig Day. That's right, I finally bought all 48 pigs today. From all of your comments from the first 100 days, I managed to pick out 48 random names, and they are as follows: Coron, Megan Shannon, Mystery Mo, Cat Grace, White Wolf 957, Amber Sparks, EJ Kim, Thirsty Boy, Nala, Julia, Pumpkin Boyo, Sarah R, Bellamoo, Theni Bobini, Jacob Alpert, Pigpen, Grace, Chickadee, Marco Diaz, Nate Adam, Llama Queen, Zinzin, Spartan 0086, That Blackwing, 4 Muffinteers, Rainbow, Skid Dog, Elden Drink, Levi Owens, EJ, Alan Carlo, Janko, Gemini Dragon, Ham Famlet, Olivia Parr, Kind Kana, MJ, Blue Blood, Winter, Moonman, Kit Kat Katie, Sammy23, Makala Akalum, Booth76, Zappo, Terra13, She Wonders, and Sprox. Woo! That's a lot of pigs. Some names were too long, so I had to shorten them, but there you have it. Another goal done. Sally and I rode into town to hand Haley a sunflower for her birthday before adding a first lot of oil makers to my shed. I spent the rest of the day completing odd jobs, doing chores, and I made the hard decision to sell Ron, Don, and John since I had a whole pen of pigs now. You will be missed. Day 239, I headed on over to the volcano dungeon for the day. While I was there, I managed to complete the Magma Sprite Monster Slayer goal and get my hands on 3 more dragon teeth. That afternoon, I returned to the island with a chocolate cake to hand to Olivia since it was her birthday today, before heading home to collect and ship away my ancient fruit wine. Continuing routine on day 240, I was getting ready to pick all of my ancient fruit. However, all of my Ginger Island crop had finished growing, so I started there. Then back in the valley, I finished picking all of my fruit before shoving them into my kegs. The time had honestly flown by today, so I rode Sally mindlessly around the farm, thinking about how I could use the rest of my farmland. I concluded that I'll get another keg shed since I had so much excess fruit left over from the harvest today. I started day 241 with some chores around the farm and saying hello to all of my pigs, who were smartly staying inside out of the rain. I took a boat ride over to Ginger Island, where I popped by the island trader to trade in some dragon teeth and mussels to get a mango and banana tree sapling. Back in the valley, I circled around to Robin's and commissioned that second keg shed I had talked about yesterday. And back on the farm, I planted down my 2 new trees in the greenhouse. As it got late, I rode Sally around collecting any forage I could find before heading to sleep. If you hadn't noticed yet, it's still raining and thundering on day 242. Those rain totems are working a treat, and my battery collection was looking way better for it. Today was Pam's birthday, so I found her walking through town where I handed her a cactus fruit. And then I popped over to Ginger Island, where I spent the rest of the day back in the sweltering depths of the volcano dungeon, this time leaving with 3 more dragon teeth. Day 243, the sun was out and shining once again. I collected another batch of batteries and said hello to my 48 pigs, then Sally and I paid a visit to Robin. I splashed some cash on a few stacks of wood and stone and commissioned a big shed upgrade. Back on the farm, I put some of that stone to use by crafting 18 crystallariums. I placed them in my shed and filled them all with jadestone. If you are sitting there wondering why jadestone, it's because the desert trader trades 1 jadestone for 1 staircase on a Sunday, and staircases make some of the later game challenges a lot easier. Trust me, I highly recommend having your own jadestone shed. I then spent the rest of day 243 and 244 smelting ores. A new keg shed requires 138 kegs, which is 138 bars of copper and iron. So it was safe to say I took a while to smelt it all. 2 whole days, in fact. I also gave Shane a hot pepper for his birthday. Even the grouchy alcoholic deserves a birthday gift. Day 245, I woke up to the wonderful sound of Junimos picking my strawberries for me. I said good morning to my piggies, chopped down some hardwood in the secret woods, and did some foraging at Sprite Spring and up at the summit. On the way back through, I popped into Robin's to paint my keg shed the same colours as my other one, and bought 4 stacks of wood. I bet you can see where this is going. Back on the farm, I gathered up my oak resin, bars of copper and iron, and I made 138 kegs. After making the front of the shed the same as the other 2, I got to placing down my kegs. Now, isn't that just the most satisfying thing you've ever seen? As the evening went on, I placed some pathways down to the shed and added some grass and headed to sleep. Day 246, I was back to decorating, more specifically the last section of my farm expansion. I didn't have much use for the rest of the land, so around the pond I added some stone paths, trees, seats, a campfire, and grass, and I'm loving it. I'm sure when the trees grow in, it'll look even better. That afternoon, I took Marlon's boat back over to the highlands where I found the dwarf I had saved. He had made a cozy shop carved into the mountain and sold some cool decorative items, much like the guild ledger. I said goodbye and returned to the valley where I potted around the farm until my ancient fruit wine was ready to collect. I shipped it off along with my strawberries and put my head down for a good night's sleep. It was another Tuesday on day 247. I made a pro gamer move by parking Sally up by the farm warp and used a beach totem to get to the boat quicker. I picked my ancient fruit, ancient fern and shrub seeds, and pineapple before warping back home, where Sally was waiting right there for me. Man, I should be a speedrunner. I had this route optimized. After picking the rest of my crop and dumping it into all 3 of my keg sheds, Sally and I rode down to Fairhaven Farm. I found Andy inside, who had made big strides in his hygiene. You know, when I think back to it, I paid a visit to Andy's farm and found out he's a Joja fanboy, and also a bit of a slob. I'm very glad he did. I was visiting because it was Andy's birthday today, and he loves butterfish, so that's exactly what I gave him. Back on the farm that evening, I didn't achieve all too much, to be honest. So on to day 248. Upon checking my mailbox, Andy had sent me 50 Joja Cola. So, Thanks. All of my piggies were now fully grown and digging up truffles, which means I'll be adding truffle collection to my daily to-do list. However, today was the flower dance, so I headed down to the woods where I decided to ask Leah for a dance, who happily accepted, unlike Haley last year. And then it was time to boogie. Although I had my music off, so it made it kinda weird watching them dance in like total silence. Day 249 started with a morning boat ride over to Ginger Island. On the island farm, I planted the monster seeds around my spare sprinkler and left a couple of shrub plants there cause, you know, why not? All I had to do now was wait for them to grow. And then it was time for everyone's favorite segment, Panning with Poxio! I spent a while panning, but today's episode came with a lot of excitement as, yes, that's right, I added a third lucky ring to my collection. That night I went to bed and I dreamed about how awesome I am. It was day 250 and I spent the better half of the morning mooching around the farm completing menial chores. Sally and I then took off down to the beach where I caught Pierre just in time to hand him a rabbit's foot for his birthday. That afternoon I concluded I'd need a whole bunch of hardwood in order to fill my shed full of oil makers. So I took out all of my mahogany tree seeds and used this stretch of land I hadn't quite filled in yet to plant and fertilize some, which will honestly be way quicker than going to the secret woods every day. And then I stood still for a very long time. Day 251 I was back to Ginger Island. However, this time I beelined it to the forge. Once I got there I infused 3 rubies into my galaxy sword, which adds 10% damage per level, meaning it just does more damage. And I added the combat perk Crusader, which deals 50% more damage to mummies, ghosts, skeletons, and void spirits. And it also prevents mummies from reviving, which you'll see comes in very handy. I was tossing up between Crusader and Vampiric, which has a chance to heal you after slaying a monster, but I had enough money for food anyway, so Crusader it was. Afterwards, I took a quick bus ride over to the desert where I foraged for some coconuts and cactus fruit before finding Emily back on Ginger Island, for you see it was her birthday today, and I handed her some wool. Back on the farm, I collected up all of my truffles and decided to call it an early night. Day 252 was the final day of spring, and I started my day doing chores around the farm. Just before midday, I headed up to the playground and waited until the clock struck exactly 12 o'clock and received a giant Junimo plushie. I wonder if Apples would like seeing a massive size plush version of himself. Anyway, as the afternoon came and went by, I found myself running around the farm collecting ingredients and cooking in the kitchen. I thought it would be worthwhile making a start on the cooking collection. That night, I kind of fluffed around the farm with Sally making sure everything was all in order for summer. The smell of summer was in the air on day 253, and I got to work scything down my dead strawberry plants. Sally and I popped into Pierre's where I bought a whole bunch of blueberry seeds, and back on the farm I filled up my crop fields with them. After finishing up some chores around the farm, I waited patiently for my wine to be ready, and when it was I collected it all up, shipped it off, and went to bed after a very successful first day of summer. It was day 254, and while warping to the beach to make my way to Ginger Island, I found Willie on the pier. He showed me a legendary crimson fish he had caught, which honestly reminded me I needed to go catch one, so hey, thanks for that, Willie. I continued my day picking my ancient fruit and shoving them all into my kegs before taking a trip down to the Wizard's Tower. Here I bought 3 of the 4 obelisks. Yeah, that's right, I've been waiting for this day for a long time now. I can finally warp to the desert without relying on bloody Pam. Ah, today is a good day. Unfortunately though, I'll have to wait for my banana tree to be ready before I get the island obelisk. And for those who have never seen an obelisk before, basically they allow you to warp to different spots around the valley. They're essentially the vanilla version of what my Nexus is in the expanded mod. That night I collected up my truffles and put them into my oil makers, as I have been doing every day now, and I headed to sleep. Day 255 was a very good luck day, and now that I had an obelisk to the desert, that's right, it's Skull Cavern time, baby! I was there, geared up with bombs by 7:40. Isn't this just so wonderful? I spent the whole day making my way down the caverns, putting my new sword enchant to work. This is gonna make the mummy monster slayer goal so much easier. After a day's work diving through the caverns, I had made it all the way down to level 101 with 274 iridium ore, 4 prismatic shards, and a bunch of other goodies. And then I passed out. I treated Sally to a new hat the morning of day 256. It seems that every time I get a new one, Sally must wear it. She is the official keeper of hats. We took off down to Marnie's to stock up on more hay. You see, to combat all 48 of my pigs eating food every day, I keep a whole bunch of hay on me so that I can refresh the silo every second day or so. I mean it works though, so I'm just gonna keep doing it. Down at the beach, Alex and I tried playing catch, but we found out very quickly I'm just as good at sports as I am getting lucky rings. I then circled back to Marnie's ranch to give Jazz a fairy rose flower for her birthday before returning to the beach to catch the crimson fish. It took me a couple of attempts, but I finally hooked one after hours of fishing. In-game hours, that is, not real life hours. On my way back home, I passed by the special quest board and once again picked up Sophia's Fairy Rose Garden quest, which I'm determined to not forget about this time. A boat trip to Ginger Island is how I started day 257. I made my way over to Mr. Key's Walnut Room and had a look at what challenges were up this week, and I accepted the 4 Precious Stones quest, which tasked me to drop off 4 prismatic shards, of which I had plenty back at home. So after a return trip back home, I picked up the 4 prismatic shards and dropped them back off to Mr. Key, and I was now 40 key gems richer. I took a look at what I could buy, and after a lot of thought, I bought the key to the town, meaning I could enter any house at whatever time I wanted, which honestly makes gift giving much easier later on. I had a quick chat with Leo before picking up a lone golden walnut that I had completely missed. Back in the valley and before bed, I got to chopping down some mahogany trees that had grown. I used the hardwood to make a few more oil makers and placed them down in my shed. Day 258 was Martin's birthday, so Sally and I rode on over to the movie theater where I handed him a rabbit's foot. While I was there, I stuck around to play the crane game where I went after another movie poster. I did fumble it the first time, but I got it on my last try. And you may be wondering, Poxil, didn't you miss the movie poster from spring? And to that I say, yes. Yes I did. Stop reminding me. I then decided to spend the rest of the day back in the Highlands to double check I'd explored everything. But I got infatuated trying to get this treasure chest, but for the life of me I just couldn't figure out how to get it. So I gave up and went fishing. I thought maybe I'd catch some cool fish from the Highland River, but unfortunately, I did not. So I headed home disappointed. I started day 259 by adding some more oil makers to my shed and saying good morning to all of my piggies. I then went along replanting all of the mahogany trees I chopped down before taking a trip to the Skull Caverns. For those wondering, I was here to slay some serpents, which is exactly what I did. I spent the rest of the day here and managed to knock off the serpent slayer goal before it got too late. First thing on day 260, I headed out to my fruit bat cave, which I had obviously not cleared out in a while. So after cleaning that out, I paid for a ticket and Willie took me over to Ginger Island once again. I wandered over to Key's Walnut Room where I picked up the Skull Cavern Invasion quest. This quest turns the Skull Cavern into hard mode, but with a few staircases, I'm sure I'll have no trouble. Back in the valley, I rode Sally into town where I passed by the special quest board and picked up Caroline's Island Ingredient quest, which tasked me to gather 100 ginger. So I guess I'll add ginger collecting to one of my many daily chores now. Of course, I then headed back to the island to gather up as much ginger as I could before returning to the valley once again to give Gus a birthday present, as it was his birthday today. Back on the farm that night, I mooched around the farm, finishing up some chores, smelting ores, collecting my ancient fruit wine, and shipping it off before heading to bed for the night. Day 261 was another Tuesday, so my morning was taken up with picking my ancient fruit and shoving them into kegs. And as monotonous as it may seem, my wallet keeps looking healthier week in, week out, so you know what, I don't mind. After all of that was done, I returned to Ginger Island to collect up my daily harvest of ginger, and then I just did some chores around the farm before heading to sleep. Day 262 was Maru's birthday, so Sally and I rode up to Robin's where I gave Maru a strawberry. Back at home, I started to make some progress on Sophia's fairy garden. The first thing I did was make 10 fairy dust with some fairy roses and diamonds. Secondly, I ventured back through my nexus to the Junimo village, as I vaguely remember them selling fairy stone. And lucky for me they do. So I grabbed 3 out of the 5 that I needed and headed back home. I quickly popped by Clint's to get some more gold ore since I was running a bit low, and spent the rest of the night finishing up some chores and smelting ores. It was the day of the luau on day 263, with countless iridium quality truffles at my disposal. I dumped one of them into the potluck soup, and call me bloody Gordon Ramsay because I was a master chef of the making with how good that soup was. Day 264 started off with another visit to the Junimo village where I purchased the final 2 fairy stone I needed for Sophia's fairy garden. Then it was back to Ginger Island for my daily ginger harvest. Slowly but surely I was getting there. You don't realize 100 ginger is a lot of ginger until you have to get 100 ginger. Back home, I put all the gold I had been smelting to good use by crafting another 12 crystallariums and adding them to my jadestone shed. And then for a good solid 2 hours, Sally and I just kinda stared out across my field of blueberries. Don't ask what's happening, because I honestly have no clue. But I finally got moving again, where I finished the day collecting the day's truffles, putting them into my oil makers, and heading to bed for sleepy times. Day 265 was another birthday. Alex's birthday, in fact. Hey, I may not be able to catch a football, but I give out good gifts. I then spent the day riding around in the rain with Sally, foraging far and wide throughout the valley, which included down at the beach, Sprite Spring, the Secret Woods, Cindersap Forest, and the railroad, which honestly took up most of my day, so... On to day 266. I started my day warping over to the desert and visiting the desert trader, where I traded in 200 jadestone I'd been saving for 200 staircases. And then I popped into the Skull Cavern. I still had to make it to level 100 in the hard mode cavern, so I thought, hey, why not now? So I put my staircases to good use and started making my way down. Some would call this cheating. I call this being efficient. As I made my way down, I stopped off at floor 10 to slay some mummies and ended up completing another monster slayer goal, which only left me with one more monster slayer goal left to complete. A short while later, I made it all the way down to level 100. I collected my 40 key gems and headed back home. I quickly made my way over to Mr. Key's walnut room, where I purchased myself Pierre's missing stock list. Now you may be asking, why this over more fun items? Well, one item I needed for Sophia's fairy garden was fairy seeds, which Pierre only sells in fall. However, with Pierre's missing stock list, he sells all seeds all year round, meaning I'd be able to purchase them now. So back in the valley, I headed straight to him and handed over his missing stock list. I bought the 50 fairy seeds I needed, and I now had everything for Sophia's fairy garden. Sally and I quickly popped by Blue Moon Vineyard to put all the items in Sophia's chest, and the quest was complete. And hey, 35,000 gold ain't too bad either. And after a very productive day, I decided to head to sleep. Day 267, Sally and I headed back to Blue Moon Vineyard to see if Sophia had done anything with the supplies we'd gotten her. I then headed back on over to Ginger Island to gather some more ginger, and I accepted another quest. Since it was the start of a new week, a fresh pair of challenges were awaiting my acceptance. And funnily enough, the Skull Cavern Invasion challenge was back again, and for 40 key gems, it's an easy decision. One trip over to the desert later and I was back to diving down the cavern. As I staircased my way down to level 100, I made sure to stop off on any levels that had radioactive ore. This is a special ore that can only be found in the hard mode versions of the Skull Cavern and the mine challenges. It sells for quite a lot and I need some for the shipping collection anyway. But after a bit of time, I finally made my way down to level 100, collected my key gems, and headed back to the valley. That night on the farm, I collected up my ancient fruit wine and shipped it off before heading to bed. Day 268 of course started with the weekly ancient fruit picking and kegging, and once that was all finished, I collected up my blueberries that my hardworking Junimos had picked for me to ship off for a bit of extra cash. Over on Ginger Island, I collected up my daily ginger. I'm getting close to 100, I swear. Before paying a visit to Mr. Key's walnut room. Since I had a few key gems to spend, I splashed out and got the horse flute. Now I love the horse flute, and what it does is summon your horse no matter where you are, meaning Sally can join me in places outside of the valley. Back on the farm that evening, I finished up some chores and headed to sleep early, to be honest. Funny number day plus 200 was Sam's special day, so I surprised him with one of his favorites, a cactus fruit. I won't lie, today was kind of a nothing day. I did do some foraging up at the summit, I chopped down my mahogany trees and did some chores around the farm, but honestly nothing too exciting happened today. However, I woke up on day 270 with a special surprise. Mr. Key had sent me a golden piggy bank for earning 10 million gold, and I put it right next to my bed so every morning I wake up after dreaming about how awesome I am, I can be remembered about how awesome I am. I travelled over to Ginger Island where I collected the last ginger I needed for Caroline's special ingredients quest, shipped them off back in the valley, and the quest was finally complete. Oh my god, that took a while. Afterwards, I headed out for revenge. In my 200 days, I faced off against a void serpent 5 times the size of me, and I was humiliated. But not today, for you see, today was gonna be different. For today, I'd slay that serpent. Today, Camilla, we really have to stop meeting like this. With my tail between my legs, I returned home and I cried myself to sleep. Day 271, I was ready for a new day, and it started with a new crafting recipe in the mail. I'd gotten a solar panel recipe which allows me to get batteries from sunny days, meaning I wouldn't have to rely on Zeus for lightning, which will be nice. Also, my banana tree had grown and I was now collecting 10 bananas for the island warp totem. Too bad it only grows 1 a day, but hey, beggars can't be choosers. Up at Robin's, I found Maru needing help with some math questions, so I obliged and had a go. The first equation I took an educated guess and I actually got it right. The second question I took a random stab in the dark because I actually had no idea and I accidentally got it right. Genuinely, I was shocked. I was here to give Demetrius a birthday gift though, so that's exactly what I did. And for the rest of the day, I honestly didn't achieve all too much. So we're on to day 272. I took my prismatic shards and cinder shards up to the forge where I enchanted my pickaxe with the powerful enchant and my axe with the shaving enchant. Now the powerful enchant gives my pickaxe an extra power level, meaning it takes one less hit to break through ores, and the shaving enchant on my axe gives me 3 extra pieces of wood when chopping down trees and the chance for more hardwood when chopping down stumps. You could argue other enchantments are better, but you know, I like these ones. And then it was time for another installment of Panning with Poxil! Unfortunately though, I wasn't able to add another ring to the collection today. Day 273 started with a trip to the desert where I traded more jadestone for staircases. After my last few expeditions, I had used up quite a lot, so I thought it'd be a good idea to get some more. Down at Marnie's, I stocked up on more hay before visiting Galdora. Alicia was there selling some potions, and if I was going to take down that big waste of a space called a Void Serpent, I was going to need some extra firepower. One day soon, I'll take down that serpent. But for now, I popped by Clint's to buy a heap of gold, as I'm going to need quite a lot to fill my oil maker and crystallarium sheds. Back on the farm, in between smelting the gold into bars, I spent my time in the kitchen whipping up some meals and slowly adding to my cooking collection, which honestly took up the rest of the day. It was day 274 and the dwarf's birthday, so I rode to the minecart to the mines and handed him an amethyst. I then took the boat over to Ginger Island where I passed by Mr. Key's walnut room and accepted his hungry challenge quest. Now this tasked me to reach level 100 in the normal skull caverns without eating anything. But hey, good thing I've got those staircases, eh? Over at the island farm though, my monster crops had finally grown. So I picked them all and rushed to find Lance. His schedule said that he'd be at the Galdorian outpost, and that's exactly where I found him. So I handed him all of the crops and waited. But nothing happened, so I guess I'll just have to wait for something to happen tomorrow maybe? While I was in Galdora, I bought some more potions from Camilla and preparations for round 2 with Stinky Face before heading back home. It was a Monday night though, so I collected all of my wine from my sheds and shipped it off. Before bed, I managed to make another 18 oil makers, which I placed in my shed and finally went to bed. Day 275, the rain was pouring down as I collected my ancient fruit this morning, which, to be quite frank, was very lovely. After kicking all of my fruit, I headed over to Victor's place where I gave him a duck feather for his birthday. One boat ride later and I was back on the sunny shores of Ginger Island. I popped over to the island farm where I planted my beet seeds. Finally, back in the valley I collected up my truffles and the day had just flown by, so I called it in for the night. Lance paid the farm a visit the morning of day 276 to thank me for the monster crops, and he said he'd left me a present in his outpost. But today was our old mate Willie's birthday, so Sally and I headed down to the beach where I handed him a pumpkin. Back on the farm, I laid out and fertilized more mahogany trees before gathering up my staircases and heading to the desert. I entered the caverns and got to staircasing down. I got quite lucky and stopped off on a couple of prehistoric levels to slay some pepper rexes, but in no time at all I had made it all the way down to level 100, so I collected my key gems and headed home. To free up some chest space in my hub area, I ended up moving any clothing items I had to the dresser in my bedroom, and then I added 10 more crystallariums to the shed. Slowly but surely I was going to fill it up. I woke up on day 277 prepared and ready for revenge. I got all of my potions, travelled through my nexus to Galdora, and set out into the Crimson Badlands. After fighting off hordes of enemies, I found my nemesis stalking the boneyard, and I was going to make sure he would be the next attraction in said boneyard. I downed all the potions I could, and suddenly I was zipping around the Badlands like it was nothing. I dealt blow after blow to the serpent, retreating if I came close to death to re-energize. And then I got the serpent in a chokehold. He was stuck and I was swinging my sword so he couldn't turn on me. And as my speed potion ran out, I dealt the final blow, and he was slain. The rewards for my effort was a void shard. So back through the Badlands I travelled. It looked like it had some type of mystical power, and I'm sure Marlon will want to see this. So that's exactly where I headed. Up at the guild, I was met with concern rather than praise. It turns out that the corruption was spreading faster than we thought. So we took the shard to the wizard, who did some arcane analysis on the shard, but it broke. Bro, I spent so long trying to get that, and you just break it? Really? Magnus decided it best to take his findings to the ministry, but he said that I'd be rewarded for my efforts. And look, I'm a humble guy, so anything is fine, as long as it's nothing short of a huge gold statue of me. While I was around the guild, I decided to pass by the Highland Post, where Lance had left me a diamond wand. I tried it out a few times, and I won't lie, it's pretty fun. It like teleports the enemies away from you. but I don't see it being too useful. But hey, you never know. And after a long but very successful day, I headed home and finally to bed. Day 278 had a very different vibe to yesterday, that's for sure. Over at the Wizard's Tower, I purchased the Island Obelisk as I now had everything to purchase it, and I ticked off another goal. I used the obelisk to warp to Ginger Island, where I handed Leo a gift as it was his birthday today. I passed by Mr. Key's walnut room, where I used my key gems to purchase a pair of Junimo chests. They do work like ender chests in Minecraft. Basically, whatever you put into it, you can retrieve from the other chest. So I placed one on the island farm and one on the valley farm. That way, if I needed my tools for either farm, they'd be right there. That afternoon, I paid a long overdue visit to Krobus, where I purchased myself the Return Scepter for an eye-watering 2 million gold.
Oh, that's a lot of damage!
But look, it teleports me home. And between this, the 4 obelisks, my Nexus, and Sally, I could literally get anywhere in the valley in a heartbeat. For the rest of the night though, I kinda just stood in the rain, probably contemplating the meaning of life. Day 279, I was passing through town that morning and found Victor outside the movie theater. He told me he's finding it hard to be in the house with Olivia breathing down his neck about getting a job, and the fact he doesn't want to work himself to death in the city makes it hard to reason with her. So I told him that working at JoJo was awful, and I guess he can take what he wants from that. I was in town, however, to purchase some coal from Clint's, so that's exactly what I did. I then spent majority of the day foraging around the valley, sprinkle in moments of smelting ores and putting truffle in oil makers, and you've pretty much got the rest of my day. It was day 280 and I started the final day of summer with another trip to the Desert Trader where I got myself a bunch more staircases. I then popped by the movie theater to hand Claire a sunflower. Was it her birthday? No, I was just being nice. And then I spent the rest of the day back on the farm working hard in the kitchen, cooking up some Michelin style dishes, slowly but surely adding more meals to my cooking collection. And as the sun set, I headed down to the beach, where, as I'm sure you know by now, we watched the moonlight jellies roll into shore, and of course, had an absolute rave to this absolute banger. Day 281, I walked out of the farmhouse, took in the beautiful colours of my favourite season, and said to myself, God, I love this game. In typical first of the month fashion, I got to scything down my now dead blueberry plants. After popping by Pierre's to buy a mountain of cranberry seeds, I headed back to the farm where I got to planting them all down. Afterwards, I took off to Ginger Island where I passed by Mr. Key's walnut room and accepted another prismatic shard quest. And I harvested my beets since they had finally grown. I raced back to the valley where Sally and I rode on over to Lewis's house and planted them in his fridge. While I was there, I passed by the special quest board and picked up a quest from Andy, who was asking for some help to build a cellar. And before I could head off, I found Sophia ecstatic over her new fairy garden. And honestly, I couldn't help but be happy for her. And then I was back to the quest. Over in the desert, I placed a solar essence into the dragon's mouth and was told my reward was located in the log pile by my house. Because of course it was. So I warped home where I received my exclusive club card. I'll go visit sometime soon. For now though, I spent the rest of the evening making truffle oil, collecting up my weekly lot of ancient fruit, and shipping it off for that sweet, sweet gold. Sophia paid a visit to the farm on day 282 to let me know she was very happy with the fairy garden, and she repaid me with an updated ledger, meaning I could now purchase iridium sprinklers and nozzles. As cool as that is, I think it's a little too late. But hey, the thought was there, and that's what matters. Today was also Penny's birthday, so off to town I went where I gave her a lovely poppy. Over in the desert, I put my brand new club card to use by kicking this bouncer out of the way and entering the casino. I didn't hang around for too long though, because silly me had forgotten it was a Tuesday, and I quickly ran around collecting all of my ancient fruit before shoving them all into my kegs. That evening I finished up a few chores and decided to call it in for the night. I wanted to knock off another goal on day 283, so I took my stack of staircases to the desert, threw on some monster musk, and started my dive down into the caverns. After a while I stumbled onto floor 76 and got to slaying as many pepper Rexes as I could, and a short while later I knocked down my final Rex and completed my final monster slayer goal. Back on the farm, I found this very satisfying. And I popped by the Adventurers Guild just to double check all the goals were actually complete, and I collected my rewards from Gil. And seeing as I had required a new hat, I of course gave it to Sally, the almighty keeper of hats. I reserved day 284 for another episode of your favourite segment, Penning with Poxial, with special guest Sally. You feeling lucky today, Sally? My thoughts exactly. Well, unfortunately, today was another unsuccessful session, so no fourth lucky ring today. Day 285 was Elliot's birthday, so I started my day with a trip down to the beach to hand him a duck feather. Back on the farm, I decided to chop down my mahogany trees since most of them had grown, and got to work collecting everything Andy would need for his cellar, which included 500 wood, 75 hardwood, 500 stone, and 15 iron bars. And once I had everything, Sally and I rode down to Fairhaven Farm, where I dumped them into Andy's chest. Speaking of, I found Andy shortly after walking around trying to find some forage. We talked overlooking the river, and he said that he was proud of me. That afternoon, I added 8 more oil makers to my shed and did a few chores before calling it in for an early night. I started off day 286 looking at my shipping collection and shipping off a few things I haven't shipped yet. Afterwards, Sally and I ventured around the valley foraging everything I could find for a while. And I'm gonna be honest, I didn't do anything too interesting for the rest of the day. So we're on to day 287. It was our new friend Morgan's birthday, and I heard he likes void eggs, so that's exactly what I gave him. Over at the movie theater, I handed Claire another sunflower and played the claw game where I picked up another movie poster to add to my collection. And back in the farmhouse, I added it to the wall of posters. If only I didn't forget the spring one. Down at Marnie's, I bought some heaters and circled into town to buy some parsnip seeds from Pierre's. And then I headed on over to Ginger Island. I planted down my parsnips as I only needed one more golden walnut from farming, and it was killing me that I didn't have it. Riding along the beach, I saw an artifact spot, so of course I dug it up and... Holy cow. I swear this series just gets even luckier. That is now one of 2 snake vertebrae that I need for Professor Snail's museum. I did find another artifact spot nearby and thought I could get super lucky, but it wasn't meant to be. Back in the valley, I popped by Clint's to open a few golden coconuts I'd been hanging onto, where I managed to get the fossilized skull, another part of Professor Snail's museum. So of course I ran it back to him on the island. And then I finished the day off putting the heaters I'd bought into my pig farms. It may not be winter for a while longer, but hey, better now than never. Day 288 was a Ginger Island kind of day. Before I left though, I handed Claire a sunflower as she got off the bus because it was her birthday. That's not creepy, right? And then I headed on over to the island. I got myself a couple more golden walnuts, completing Professor Snail's island survey, looked around for some more artifact spots, and fished in the dig site river where I got a fossilized spine. One quick trip to Snail's tent and I handed him the spine, leaving me with just the second snake vertebrae to finish the museum. Back over at the dig site, it was once again time for another installment of Penning with Poxiel, with returning special guest Sally. It was another unfortunate day today though, as I couldn't add more lucky rings to the collection. That night though, I did place a banana on this pedestal where a gorilla came out and traded it for 3 more golden walnuts, and I finished my day back in the valley collecting up my wine and shipping it off. I won't lie, day 289 was an admin kind of day. I collected up my ancient fruit wine and dumped them all into my kegs, collected some jade stone, bought a prismatic shard from the Junimo village, went to Elliot's book reading, dropped off an artifact to gun through the museum, I stocked up my silo with more hay, tended to my slime hutch and made some more truffle oil. All before heading to bed after a long day full of chores. Day 290 started with a wee bit of a whoopsie. I may or may not have forgotten to press record until halfway through the day. But you didn't miss too much. All I did was hand over 4 prismatic shards to Mr. Key to complete that quest, and while I was there I accepted another Skull Cavern invasion quest, which leads us to right now. I made my way down the caverns, collecting radioactive ore when it was close by, and a short while later I had made it all the way down to level 100. Back home I made and collected some more truffle oil before heading to sleep. It was Jodie's special day on day 291, so I rode Sally through the rain to hand her a diamond. I quickly popped by the island farm where I picked up my parsnips and finally received the last farming walnut. And after a stop back home I returned with some strawberry seeds which I planted, because you know, why not? Back in town, I was passing by Blue Moon Vineyard, and Sophia decided to tell me about her parents, who sadly passed away. And she was the one who was left to take over the vineyard. So I said I'd come and help her sort out all of these boxes tomorrow, because I'm a caring person. Impatient, but caring. All I did on day 292 was a bit of fishing. I caught myself the angler, the final legendary fish, and the kittyfish, which I caught over by the West Bridge. Although I didn't have space in my main tank for the angler, I had to make his own little tank. Day 293 was spent giving Abigail a birthday gift and smelting gold. That's about it, to be honest. I started day 294 with another trip to the desert trader where I got a whole lot of staircases. And then back in the valley, I had to take over the till at the movie theater for a while. Claire wasn't feeling well, so I thought I'd help out. Afterwards, I finally headed to Sophia's to help her unpack all of her parents' boxes. Shortly afterwards, we got a cute little cutscene of Sophia walking through the town, absolutely loving life. And I think that's super wholesome. That afternoon, I found myself back in the rain on Ginger Island, where I purchased the island travel system with some spare golden walnuts I had. From day 295 to 299, it was honestly pretty standard stuff. I gave out birthday gifts and completed chores around the farm. On day 296, I re-kicked all of my ancient fruit and rushed so quickly to the Valley Fair that I completely forgot to get things for a Grange display. Over days 297 and 298, I went around the valley collecting secret statues. Scarlett also showed up at my door on day 298, asking her to visit her in Grampleton. So if that's a thing, I'll have to save that for 400 days. And on day 299, I found another golden walnut in one of the oyster clusters and added 14 more oil makers to the shed, which finally puts us on day 300. And as is tradition, I spent the day soaking in the spa reflecting on the last 100 days. As I enjoyed the hot water, I was ready to finish this series and vowed to reach perfection in the next 400 days. It was day 301, the rain was pouring down, and I took a moment to myself before getting to work. Like I said, my main focus for the next 100 days is to achieve perfection, which requires a lot of things to happen, including a few RNG elements, so let's hope luck is on my side. I spent the morning reacquainting myself with the farm and making a start on the shipping collection. I popped by Harvey's to pick up a sports drink and a stamina capsule, and back on the farm I picked out a few things from my chests I hadn't shipped yet. I then walked my way over to the desert where I paid Sandy a visit to buy some rhubarb seeds, because silly me had forgotten to grow some. So I made my way to Ginger Island, destroyed my strawberry seeds on my island farm and planted down my rhubarb. Down on the beach I was rudely denied a snake vertebrae for a snake skull instead. You see, the last item I need to complete Professor Snail's museum is a snake vertebrae. I was lucky enough to get one in the last 300 days, but I still needed one more. So let's again cross our fingers and hope that luck will be on my side. After circling back to the farm to gather some rice shoots, I returned to the island to plant them down by the river. Just another crop I hadn't shipped yet. That night I finished the day off with some chores around the farm, like adding hay to the silo, collecting some stray truffles, and shoving them into my oil makers, all before heading to bed after a very successful first day back on the farm. Which means we're on to day 302, and I was feeling up for a bit of fishing. So I grabbed my trusty rod and rode the minecart over to the mines. I headed on down to level 20 and I got comfy. I will say now that I have a lot of fish to catch over the next 100 days, and there's going to be a lot of fishing. But for now, I spent a long time catching nothing but ghost fish and rubbish, until I finally caught myself a stonefish. And decided to move myself further down the mines to level 60 where I did the exact same thing. Once again, I was here until the final hours of the day, unsure if I'd catch an ice pip or not, but I managed to hook one just before it got too late. Back on the farm, I hurriedly ran around collecting up my weekly round of ancient fruit wine from all of my kegs before shipping it off and heading to bed. Day 303, I of course started the day picking all of my ancient fruit. If you've seen my 300 days, you'll know it's kind of a thing. And then I shoved them back into my empty kegs. Afterwards, I spent the rest of my day catching more fish that I hadn't caught yet. I travelled through my enchanted grove to Sprite Spring where I caught myself a golden fish and a meteor carp. And down in the mutant bug lair I caught another new fish called a water grub, which if I'm being honest isn't much of a fish. Ew. Water grub, more like water ugly.
Oh, brother, this guy stinks!
Sorry. Anyway, catching those fish turns out had taken up the rest of the day, so we're on to day 304. I was feeling generous today, and something I needed to do a lot of was gift giving. Turns out giving out gifts on birthdays isn't enough to win the hearts of everyone. So I'll spend a lot of my time running around handing out the same gift twice a week to the same people because, you know, that's normal and definitely not weird at all. So I spent the better half of the day handing out some gifts. That afternoon, I ran into Claire in town, who was hung up on not being a part of the Tuesday fitness class. So I just told her to go for it. While I was around, I popped into Caroline's greenhouse where I picked a tea leaf. I'll need 2 for the shipping collection, so I'll grab them while I remember. And then it was back to fishing. I made my way back down into the mutant bug lair where I fished up a snatcher worm, which to my surprise looks even uglier than the water grub, and a slime jack. I ran out thanking God I'd never have to return there ever again. I went to bed that night and I had nightmares of water grubs chasing me. Day 305 started with truffle collecting and tea leaf stealing. Well, I guess it's not stealing if she says I can take it, so. Back on the farm, I put the tea leaf into a spare keg I had to make some green tea. I then rode Sally down to Marnie's ranch where I purchased a couple new animal friends, a cow and a goat, who I called Bert and Ernie. You see, I had stupidly never shipped any normal milk or goat's milk from the last 300 days because when I had them I put them all straight into my machines, and my animals produce large milk now. So this was my easy solution. That afternoon I ventured over to the highlands where I cleared a nice space between the monsters to go fishing in the lake, where I caught myself a daggerfish. And back in the valley, I waited very patiently that night up at the mountain lake for the clock to tick past 10 PM so I could catch a midnight carp, which I did just in time. It was day 306 and I knew I had a few crab pot items still to catch, so I crafted a couple more crab pots, collected the ones I already had from the ocean, and relocated them up to the mountain lake so I could catch some freshwater critters. I'll just have to wait a day to see what I've caught. Speaking of fishing, it's boring, isn't it? Why not add some danger to it by heading to the Crimson Badlands and trying to catch fish while monsters watch on, ready to attack in any second. I did manage to catch a bonefish without any problems, but as I was catching a second fish, the serpent decided he'd had enough watching and took action trying to kill me. But being the skilled fisherman I am, I reeled the fish in, slayed the serpent, and saw I caught an undead fish. Alright, that's enough danger for one day. Get me the hell out of here. Ah, that's better. I continued my fishing adventure to the witch's swamp where I battled long and hard with a void eel. But after wearing it down, I finally caught it. I definitely deserve my sleep tonight, that's for sure. Day 307 was a day full of promise and gift giving. Until I realized the Spirit Sea Festival was in town, so I wasn't allowed in. Meaning today would not be full of gift giving. Instead, I took a day trip to the desert where I collected some cactus fruit and coconuts, and fished up a scorpion carp. Another fish I can tick off my list. Back in the valley, I paid a visit to my crab pots to refresh the bait, and accidentally handed Linus bait as a gift, which he obviously loved. Whoopsie. I then stayed up way past my bedtime to attend the Spirits Eve festival. I made my way through the maze and collected up my golden pumpkin at the end of it. I backtracked through the maze and headed on home. Day 308 was the final day of fall, and I was ready to fulfill the gift giving I was meant to do yesterday. I did visit Morgan over at the Wizard's Tower, and they did a great job of impersonating Magnus, and I didn't get them into trouble, so yeah, hey, that's a win. And then I ran around the valley handing out gifts to the villagers of Pelican Town. By the late afternoon, I had finished my gift giving, so I traveled over to a gloomy day on the island, where I scythed down my unmilled rice and ticked off another item from the shipping collection. To finish the day off, I completed some chores back on the farm before sleep time. I woke to a frosty change in the air on day 309, and the valley was looking a lot more snowy today. I guess that means it's winter. I got to scything down my now dead cranberry plants and replaced them with some winter seeds I had saved from last winter. After filling my fields full of seeds, I passed by the sewers to hand Krobus a birthday gift and made my way to the highlands. I rode Sally across the snow-covered forest and made my way back through the monster-filled caves. Once I found a safe spot, I cast my line into the cave pond, where I went after another fish I hadn't caught yet. It was a tough battle, but I managed to reel it in, and I added a gemfish to my collection. But of course I wasn't finished just yet. Back in the valley, I perched up on the pier fishing until I finally caught a squid. And just before bed, I collected and shipped off my ancient fruit wine. Which means day 310 started with some ancient fruit picking. Between this and my truffle oil, I'm saving up 10 million gold to afford the golden clock. So yes, this may seem tedious, but trust me, it's necessary. After re-kegging all of my ancient fruit, I finally shipped off a small milk and goat's milk and rebaited my crab pots up at the mountain lake. Down in the sewers, I found Krobus with a friend of his, who upon seeing me, immediately wanted me dead. So I got out of there before things got ugly. I was down in the sewers to catch another fish, and that fish was a radioactive bass. However, the day had just flown by, so on to day 311. If I'm being honest with you all, I spent the whole day scrambling around the valley handing out gifts to as many people as I could. Man, who would have thought gift giving would be such a grind? Day 312 started off with a trip to buy some starfruit seeds from Sandy's shop. I then popped by the Junimo village to buy some deluxe fertilizer fertilizer, and pears to get some quality fertilizer. What am I doing with this, you may ask? Well, I'm running low on starfruit, and apples absolutely love starfruit, and with the fertilizers I can increase the chance of the fruit being a higher quality, making gaining hearts with apples a little bit easier in the long run. Although my rhubarb wasn't ready to be picked yet, so I'll just come back soon. Which, as you can see, I was very happy about, definitely not at all annoyed. Anyway, back in the valley, I spent the rest of the day with my chef's hat on, whipping up some more cooking dishes to add to my cooking collection. Day 313, I kind of just ran around like a headless chicken for a while. I wouldn't even ask, because I don't know what's happening. But when I finally came to my senses, I decided to take my mountain of geodes over to Clint's. One minecart ride later, and he's not here. Of course he's not here. Instead, I headed over to Ginger Island that evening to try and catch some more fish. And my luck finally turned around when I caught myself a shiny Lunaloo. At least I achieved something today. Day 314, Clint was back and his services were available once again. So I hauled my 267 Omni Geodes over to him, and he got to hammering them open. I spent a while here opening geodes, donating new minerals to Gunther, dropping off the other ones back home, and repeating the process over again. By midday, I had done this about 4 times and I wasn't getting any more new minerals, so I decided to stop. Over on the island farm, my rhubarb had finally finished growing, so I picked them all and got to replacing them with my starfruit. I then waited around until the evening time to fish out into the ocean, where I ended up catching a baby Lunaloo. Aw, why can't all fish look this cute? I'm looking at you, water grub. Back home, I just decided to call it in for the night. I started day 315 with a trip to the Desert Trader, where I traded 401 jade stone for 401 staircases. Now that's a lot of staircases. But hey, you can never have too many. Today was also Caroline's birthday, so I popped by Piers to hand her a summer spangle. I then decided to relocate the crab pots back down to the beach since I had caught all the freshwater critters. And then I added 4 more, cause you know, why not? Am I right? Over on Ginger Island, I was wandering around the beach where I found an artifact spot and... oh, damn it. Oh, another artifact spot. Ah, damn it. That afternoon, I potted around the farm doing some chores and paid the bear a visit. I bought a couple of cooking recipes he was selling and a few salmon since I'd need some for cooking. And speaking of cooking, I spent the rest of the day back in the kitchen whipping up some dishes to add to my cooking collection. Day 316, I awoke to a field full of winter forageables, so I went along picking them all, turning them back into seeds and replanting them. Back on Ginger Island, I passed by Key's walnut room where I accepted the Key kindness quest, which tasked me to hand out 50 loved gifts. That's a lot of gifts, so I'm gonna leave that for another day, I think. But for now though, I took to digging up some artifact spots and oh my god. With the second vertebrae acquired, I rushed to Professor Snail's tent and gave him the final piece to his museum. His collection was complete, and for my hard efforts, I received the ostrich incubator crafting recipe and a few golden walnuts, which put me on 129 out of 130 golden walnuts. So I had a quick chat with Leo's parrot, who told me the last walnut was stuck in a shelly stone. And sure enough, I found the last walnut, which ticked off my first goal towards perfection. Back on the farm that night, I used Professor Snail's recipe to craft an ostrich incubator, which I put down in my barn and popped my egg in to incubate. And just before bed, I collected up my ancient fruit wine and shipped it off for that juicy cash money. It was back to picking ancient fruit on day 317, and after filling my kegs full of ancient fruit, I was ready to find love. I bought a bouquet from Piers and I was ready to find my soulmate. Now I did put up a poll to see who you thought I should end up with, and with overwhelming votes it went to Sophia. So I made my way down to Blue Moon Vineyard and handed her the bouquet. Wait, what? No. Oh no, he's gone rogue. Poxiel, where are you going? I decided to go with Magnus. Screw the poll, this is love. Magnus and I have been through a lot together, and you know what they say, the heart wants what it wants. And trust me, he's an absolute sweetheart, so you will not be disappointed with my decision. Back on the farm that night, I started preparing a whole lot of gifts because over days 318 and 319, I gave out gifts. And that is seriously all I did. 50 gifts is a lot of damn gifts to give out. And by the end of day 319, I hadn't even given out all 50 gifts, although I was very close. Also, Andy showed me his new cellar that he built with the materials I gave him during the last 100 days. Morgan was also feeling the pressure of being a wizard, and I helped them cheer up by saying they'd be special to people in the future, which I think they appreciated. And Victor broke the news to his mum that he got an apprenticeship helping build and maintain bridges around the valley. But yeah, I loved gift giving. Which puts us on to day 320. Sam paid a visit to the farm, letting me know that his band was playing in Zuzu City, which which I definitely don't forget about whatsoever. And I started my day doing some chores around the farm, restocking my hay from Marnie's, and handing out some gifts I didn't get time to hand out yesterday. And after handing a salad to Leah, I finished Key's kindness quest and received my key gems, finally. So I walked my way back over to Ginger Island, and I moved my way over to Key's walnut room. I had quite the haul of key gems now, and I spent it all buying the crafting recipes he sells, an aquatic sanctuary, and Mr. Key's hat. I will admit I misclicked on the fish tank and accidentally bought it. I didn't mean to buy it, but hey, Sally looks pretty flash with a cool new hat, am I right? As she should be, being the ultimate keeper of hats. Back on the farm, I thought I shouldn't waste a good fish tank though, so I replaced the old one with this bigger one, meaning I could fit all the legendary fish in it. I then said hello to all of my piggies before calling it in for the night. Day 321, I started to make some progress with crafting every item. After buying a bunch of stone from Robbins and a lot of ore from Clint's, I got to work slowly but surely crafting anything I could. I took a break from crafting mid-afternoon to visit the desert trader to buy another crafting recipe, and I passed by the mines to purchase a rare crow from the dwarf, which left me with one more to get from the casino. You see, once you get all 8 rare crows, you get the crafting recipe for a deluxe scarecrow. But for now, I kept on crafting anything and everything I could. But it was getting dark, and after a big day, I finally went to bed. Day 322 was Harvey's birthday, so I hopped into bed with him and handed him some truffle oil. That's not weird, right? Today I wanted to get the final rare crow I mentioned yesterday, so I headed on over to the casino. Once I got there, I purchased myself some key coins, popped the cork on some aged Blue Moon wine for +7 luck, and hit the slot machines. It took a while, but after hitting 3 Nautilus shells, I finally had enough key coins to get the rare crow, and I skedaddled out of there before I got addicted. And back on the farm, I popped it down and my collection was complete. That afternoon, I decided to brew some pale ale and mead by chucking some honey and hops into kegs, as they're 2 items I still need for the shipping collection. I then had a steering contest with the Ghost of Christmas Past because I just stood there not doing all too much. So let's move on to day 323. My winter seeds had produced their forageables again, so I took some time to pick them all, turn them back into seeds, and replant them all. Afterwards, I rode Sally up to Robbins where I purchased a few brazier crafting recipes. It seems a bit silly that you have to keep going in and out of the shop to get the next recipe, but hey, that's just me. I then circled into town where I popped by Clint's to break a few magma and frozen geodes in hopes of obtaining a couple more new minerals. I did get 1 new mineral, so I donated it to the museum, but it should be noted I only needed a couple more minerals to complete the set. One can be found in a magma geode and the other in a frozen geode. So I paid a visit to the dwarf, bought some bombs, and started blowing up every level of the mines. It's tedious to mine every rock for a small chance of a geode, so why not just get a bomb to do it for you? By the end of the night I had 12 magma geodes, so hey, that's proof it works. I then finished off the night collecting and shipping off my ancient fruit wine. Day 324 started with, well, I bet you can guess what I was doing. And then for the rest of the day, I continued to collect geodes, this time opting to find frozen geodes around level 40. I started day 325 with a trip to Clint's to see if my hard work over the last couple of days had paid off. And well, it kinda did. My magma geodes let me down, but the frozen ones did not, as I got a piece of geminite, which I rushed over to Gunther to donate. All I had left was 1 piece of dolomite to find. However, I could not be bothered going back to the mines today. Instead, I spent the afternoon back on the farm continuing to craft the last of every item. I was at the point where I thought I had crafted everything, but I still hadn't yet received the achievement. So after a lot of big brain thinking, I remembered about the island trader, and after a quick visit I purchased the final crafting recipe. So back on the farm I crafted the deluxe retaining soil and completed another goal off the list. Day 326, I awoke to a very ominous message from Magnus, asking me to meet him this afternoon just west of his tower. Sounds interesting. But that's for later. For now though, I gave my newly hatched ostrich a name and called him Paul. Look at cute baby Paul, isn't he just adorable? And then I decided to cook a few more dishes towards the cooking collection. It was getting close to 2 PM, so I popped by the Hat Mouse and got Sally a new Christmas hat because 'tis the season to be jolly, before meeting up with the wizard. He said he wanted to show me something and teleported us to a beautiful spring. He talked about how much joy I've brought him over the past while and conjured us up a beautiful table full of food. Magnus certainly outdid himself this time. See, I told you he's an absolute sweetheart. Aww. Back on the farm, I spent a while riding Sally aimlessly around the farm, probably smitten with feelings after a perfect date. Day 327 was a day reserved for your favorite segment of all time. That's right, it's the final season of Penning with Poxil. Panning with Poxiel is a segment where I pan in the Ginger Island dig site in hopes of obtaining the elusive lucky ring. Currently, our counter is at 3 lucky rings this series, and I was hoping Sally could bring me some extra luck today. Any words from you, Sally? Very well said. Unfortunately though, I didn't have much luck, so I walk home empty-handed today. It was day 328 and once again I was back to running around the valley giving out gifts, hoping to win the hearts of all the villagers. And also we convinced Leo to move back to the mainland, so yeah, hey, that's pretty cool. The birds even renovated a tree for him to move into. Day 329 started with more gift giving, and Apple's showing me his starfruit friends who he named. I swear this little guy can do anything, and it's goddamn adorable. While I was out and about finishing off my gift giving, I came across a ticket box by the train stop, which took me all the way to a Grampleton suburb called Pondwood, where I stumbled across Scarlet. Alright, let me just add another person to my gift giving list then. I explored around a little bit where I met Trevin and Hank, who I believe are Scarlet's parents. But back in the valley it was getting late, so I collected more gifts to hand out from around the farm and called it in for the night. Day 330? Yeah, it was another day of gift giving. That night, however, I was ready for a big payout. You see, I'm pretty close to 10 million gold. So after collecting all of my wine up, I grabbed my 2 and a bit stacks of truffle oil and shipped them off. Wanna know how much gold I made?
Oh, yeah.
Day 331, I started with the weekly ancient fruit picking, but lucky for you, and for me, this would be the last ancient fruit harvest. After filling my kegs full of ancient fruit one last time, I decided to say goodbye to half of my tree farm, and chop down all of my oak trees. And because this was one of the first things I had ever made on this farm, it was a hard goodbye. But because I had no more space on the farm big enough for a golden clock area I wanted to make, it was a necessary goodbye. And then I got to work planning it out. I added a pathway, some fences and torches, a few trees, and some grass starter around the outside, and hey, it was a pretty good start. Which meant on day 332 I woke up to continue work on it. I took all of my secret statues I had found at the end of the last 100 days and placed them beside the fences and warped my way to the wizard's tower, where I dropped a casual 10 million gold to finally get the golden clock. My pockets may be feeling very light right now, but I can tick off another goal towards perfection. Over on Ginger Island, I passed by Key's Walnut Room where I picked up the Danger in the Deep quest, which tasked me to make it to the bottom of the mines again, except this time it was a lot more dangerous. But hey, nothing for an adventurer with over 300 staircases at his disposal, am I right? So that's exactly where I headed. I passed through the mines with ease by staircasing my way down and landed on level 120 without a single scratch on me. Okay, that's a lie, I got hit a couple of times. I mooched my way back to Mr. Key's Walnut Room where I spent my profits on some key seasoning and mushroom tree seeds. If you've never seen key seasoning before, it makes any dish you cook gold quality. I'm hoping it'll make some dishes I give out to villagers for gifts worth more friendship points. Speaking of gifts, day 333 was the Feast of the Winter Star. Yay, I finally didn't call it Christmas. My person this year was Lewis, so of course I gave him a hot pepper. My secret gift giver this year was Sebastian, and he gave me... Yeah, I've had worse. Definitely had better though. It was day 334 and I finally decided to replant all of my winter seeds. I'll admit they'd been ready for a while, but I just couldn't be bothered. However, with spring just around the corner, I thought it'd be best to get it over and done with. Afterwards, I decided to get some chores done around the farm before heading up the normal mines once again to look for magma geodes. I had finally rekindled my passion for blowing up rocks with bombs, and I was determined to find the last mineral. I ended up spending the rest of the day here, and I ended up with 9 geodes by the time I called it in for the night. Fortunately, on day 335, my hard work from the day prior turned out to be worth it, as Clint whacked open a piece of dolomite. So I ran it over to the museum and donated it to Gunther. Now all I needed to complete the museum was a few more artifacts. So after a quick trip to the desert trader where I traded some Omni Geodes for artifact troves, I was back at Clint's. Unfortunately, I think I used all of my luck on the piece of dolomite because out of 18 artifact troves, I got 0 new artifacts to donate. Instead, I went around visiting secret note locations and digging up some artifacts and treasures I hadn't found yet. After which I had $2 to donate, so I guess that made me feel a little better. That night, I kind of just stared into nothing, as I usually do. So, on to day 336. It was the final day of winter and the final day of my 3rd year in the valley. Over on my island farm, I collected up my now ready to harvest starfruit and replaced them with some fall seeds. Now, you may be thinking that's a weird thing to grow. Well, there's a certain cooking recipe that requires 15 blackberries, which I definitely don't have. So, I'll slowly but surely be gathering them from all of these fall seeds over the next while. And then for the rest of the day, I gave out gifts. Seems very fitting since I've been doing it so often. And after a day of handing out gifts, I headed to bed ready for a new year. Welcome back to spring in my 4th year in the valley. It was day 337, and in typical first of the month fashion, I scythed down my now dead winter seeds. I then replaced them with some strawberry seeds I bought a whole year ago. See, I told you can never have too many strawberry seeds. While I was paying a visit to the Junimo village, I found Abigail and Apples having a fun time together. I was here to buy myself a prismatic shard. You'll soon see why. That afternoon, to pass the time, I decided to hand out a few more gifts. Although I went on a wild goose chase to find Scarlet, and I couldn't find her anywhere. Until finally that night, I caught her just in time as she was heading home. And then I finally went to bed. I started day 338 with a trip all the way to the forge. With prismatic and cinder shards in hand, I put my fishing rod through the forge until I had the master perk, which adds a whole nother fishing level while I'm using it. This is also why I was buying prismatic shards. If you are confused, you'll see why I did this in a second. However, before I can tell you that, Vincent decided to show me the secret to cleaning spring onions, making them worth 5 times their value when selling them. And I offered a helping hand to Andy and Scarlet as they worked on preserving all of Andy's strawberries, which means I'll know exactly where to find Scarlet since she helps him out on weekdays. Alright, back to the rod. With the master perk and downing some seafoam pudding, you can cast far out enough to reach the water, where I got myself an iridium Krobus statue, which I placed by my golden clock area. Yep, I did all of that for a statue. But hey, now it's even and it looks great. Afterwards, I collected up my ancient fruit wine one last time before shipping it off and doing some chores around the farm. That evening, I decided to decorate this bit of land below my crop fields with a cute little pathway. I planted down my mushroom trees, placed some fences with torches on them, and surrounded it with grass, and I like where this was heading. But it was getting late, so I hopped into bed before it got too late. Day 339 started out with some chores around the farm before making a trip out to the highlands. I heard through the grapevine that green mushrooms can be collected there. After slaying some green dust sprites, I had 3 green mushrooms, and back home I shipped 1 away, ticking off another item. I kinda just fluffed around for a while, but I was about to make a big decision. That decision had to do with buying a mermaid's pendant from this gentleman here, and I took it all the way to Magnus where I asked him to marry me, and he accepted. He was halfway through a lesson with Morgan though, so bad timing on my part. But yay, we're getting married. Day 340 was Ken's birthday, so I surprised him in bed with a bowl of roasted hazelnuts. I'm sure Jody doesn't mind. Today was a day full of fishing. I went around the valley catching fish I hadn't caught yet, including a dorado, a king salmon, a grass carp, and a frog. Not a bad effort for a day's worth of fishing. It was day 341, and honestly, I didn't do too much that morning, kinda just ran around aimlessly. However, that afternoon, I got stuck in trying to figure out how many more oil makers I'd need to fill the shed. I came to the conclusion it was a lot. So, using the vast area of the expanded desert, I laid out a square of mahogany tree seeds. I know this won't cover all the oil makers I want to craft, but hey, it's certainly a good start. And then I decided to hit the hay early, because it was my wedding day on day 342. Okay, our wedding day. After a beautiful ceremony, I decided it would be a good idea to venture out into the Crimson Badlands once again to try and find a treasure room some of you told me about in the comments of the last video. But once I did find it, I got absolutely wrecked. Not once, but twice. Now my nemesis, old mate Stinky Face, was 2-1 up on me, and I wasn't happy about that, to be honest. But I'd have to come back and try again another day. That afternoon, I found myself back in the valley and saw Leo getting to know the other kids, which was nice. And I bought Sally another hat. That night, I collected up my piggy's truffles and pumped them into my oil makers, and after a roller coaster of day full of highs and lows, I headed to bed. Days 343 and 344, I'm happy to say, were a lot more relaxed than yesterday, as I spent my time over these 2 days wandering around the valley handing out gifts to everyone, which is honestly about all I did. Lance did pay me a visit on day 344, who said I should meet him on my Ginger Island farm at my earliest convenience. Sounds intriguing. And on day 345, that is exactly where I headed. He informed me that we'd be visiting the guild of the First Slash, which is the guild Lance is a part of, and after using a makeshift warp point, we arrived on the remote island. Once inside, Lance introduced me to the fellow guild members and showed everyone the monster crops I had helped grow. Our trip came to an end though, and I wandered around for a while trying to find a way back, but I think I'll have to be patient because I couldn't find the warp point we'd taken the first time. So I filled my time that afternoon back on the farm finishing up some chores. Day 346 started with Magnus informing me that I could use his warp point and his nexus to visit the First Slash guild hall, which was grand news. So obviously through the warp gate I went, and here I was on the island. I did some foraging around the beach and picked up some goodies before entering the hall. Being the curious bean I am, I found my way to an empty bedroom, which Jolene, the guild leader, let me take up residency. Outside, I decided to cast my line out to catch the last fish I needed. And not only did I end up catching a torpedo trout, but an octopus too, which was the last fish I needed to catch, so I ticked off another goal. Back home on the farm that afternoon, I shipped off a golden ocean flower I had found on the island earlier, which was the final item I needed to ship off, completing yet another goal. 2 goals in one day ain't too shabby. I didn't achieve all too much for the rest of the day, so we're on to day 347. After waking up and checking my mailbox, I was excited to see another star drop from Willie from catching all the fish, so hey, that's cool. And for the rest of day 347 and day 348, I decided to do some expeditions to the Skull Cavern. Each time I'd staircase down to around level 80 and start carpet bombing each level, and that was because I was on the lookout for Omni Geodes, because I still needed some artifacts to complete the museum. Trading Omni Geodes for artifact trophies would be my best bet. I took a break from the caverns on day 349 since it was the Egg Festival, and I reclaimed my title back as Egg Hunt King. You know, I don't want to talk about what happened last year. I really don't want to talk about it. It was day 350 and I started my day on a high as Magnus gave me yet another star drop. What a sweetheart. Today I was still on the hunt for Omni Geodes, but I decided to ditch the Skull Cavern idea for a bit and try out the gem caves in the highlands, since I'm pretty sure I'd seen a lot of geode stones the last time I was in there. And oh boy, I was wrong. By the time I'd made it around the caves, I had 6 geodes. And if I'm being honest, I died too. You'll never see me back in there again, that's for sure. Instead, I traded what Omni Geodes I had for artifact troves at the Desert Trader and hauled them over to Clint's. It wasn't all bad though, as I got one of the 3 artifacts I was missing, so I've only got 2 more to go. That night, I took some time to stare out over my strawberry fields. Probably still thinking about that water grub nightmare. Day 351 was another day full of gift giving, and attending a party Apples had put on for his friends, but sadly no one came because his friends thought turning the abandoned vineyard into a new home was a mistake. But the bear came and saved the day, so there was a happy ending. But yeah, that's about all I did today. Day 352 was honestly pretty similar. I started my day gift giving and only took a break halfway through to finally get the last movie poster I needed, which I put back in my farmhouse and my collection was complete. Ah, isn't that satisfying? Over on Ginger Island, I quickly popped into Mr. Key's walnut room to pick up the Danger in the Deep quest once again, before calling it in for an early night. I started day 353 staircasing my way down the mines again, and once I reached level 120, I received my 50 key gem reward. Afterwards, I made my way down to the edge of the Cindersap forest where I found Morgan undertaking their final test with Magnus, and after a lot of concentration, willpower, and strength, they managed to call the woodland animals to their side. Also, because I witnessed it, my animals now produce higher quality produce. Not that that matters, but hey, pretty cool nonetheless. Back on Ginger Island, I picked and replaced my fall seeds. Slowly but surely I'll get those blackberries. That evening, I paid a visit to the desert where my mahogany trees had grown, so I got to chopping them all down. And just before bed, I collected up my truffles and ran them through my oil makers. From days 354 to 357, I decided it was Skull Cavern time, baby! Because as you know, I'm after 2 more artifacts, and to get artifact troves, I need a bunch of Omni Geodes. So for 4 days straight, I ventured down the caverns, blowing up each level, hoping to get those precious Omni Geodes. And hey, Iridium ore and prismatic shards are a welcome bonus too. Oh, and I also found my first Skull Cavern lucky ring. And I'm gonna add it to the counter, because why the hell not? Which of course puts us on to day 358. I started my day with some chores since my farm had kind of been neglected over the past 4 days, and then I met up with Magnus on Ginger Island. I had recently reached 14 hearts with him, and he was going to show me something special. So he wrapped us up in bubbles and we headed into the sea. Once under the sea, Magnus treated me to a beautiful concert from this mermaid, and I was gifted a mermaid's bracelet. And I just think that's the sweetest thing ever. After that perfect date, I replaced my fall seeds once again and replanted my square of mahogany tree seeds in the desert. While I was there, I traded all the Omni Geodes I had for artifact troves before heading back to the valley, where I replaced Sally's goofy looking hat with a beautiful green bow. I started day 359 hauling my artifact troves to Clint's, where he got to smack them open. To my surprise, I got not one, but both missing artifacts. Thank God, I think I might have thrown something if I didn't. So I ran over to the museum, where I donated them to Gunther, where I received my final star drop, and I had completed another goal towards perfection. Afterwards, I circled around to the saloon where I waited very patiently for Gus to show up, but I picked the one day he isn't here, didn't I? Instead, I headed down into the sewers where Krobus introduced me to Nyx, the leader of the Shadow People. They were willing to mend a broken relationship between them and humans if I brought them 5 dozen Void Souls. I then tried bringing Krobus 5 dozen Void Essence, thinking they were Void Souls.
Hey pal, you just blowing from Stupid Town?
I was so embarrassed I sat atop Sally for a while thinking about my actions. Anyway, moving on to day 360. It was time for another episode of your favorite segment, Panning with Poxiel! Unfortunately, I walked away disappointed today as I couldn't add another ring to the counter, but Sally was here to keep me company, so that was nice. Day 361 was a day full of gift giving. However, the gift numbers I had to give out was significantly smaller than when I started. Now that's what I like to call progress. For the rest of the day, I kinda just mooched around the farm, so I headed to bed. However, overnight the adoption agency dropped off our beautiful baby boy, who I blessed with the name Bingus. I started day 362 off with a few chores around the farm. It took me a while to find some motivation to get moving again, but once I did, I filled my jade stone shed with more crystallariums. Those 4 days straight in the Skull Cavern really set me up with a lot of resources, and then I went back to lazing around again. So let's move on to day 363. I filled my morning handing out gifts to those who needed them, and the afternoon with more chores. That evening, however, I popped by Key's Walnut Room to pick up Danger in the Deep for the 3rd time in a row, and collected up my 4 seeds for the final time. And just before bed, I paid a visit to the Junimo village where I purchased a few hyperspeed grow for my coffee beans I'm about to plant. Day 364 was the final day of spring, and I was right back to Ginger Island where I used my spare sprinkler to plant down my coffee beans with hyperspeed grow. I need beans to turn into coffee for a cooking recipe, and totally forgot you need 5 beans per keg. But with the hyperspeed grow, they'll be ready in no time at all. I also decided to plant some strawberries around the coffee bean plants. Afterwards, I grabbed some staircases and once again made my way down the mines until I hit the bottom, where I was rewarded with my 50 key gems. And if I'm being honest, I didn't achieve much for the rest of the day, so Sally and I just watched the day pass by with summer just around the corner. Sun's out, guns out, cause it's summertime! As you can see, it's very exciting. I started day 365 with a trip to Pierre's to buy a mountain of blueberry seeds, which I used to replace my now dead strawberry seeds. I then spent majority of the day up at the mountain lake fishing, as I was after a rainbow trout for a cooking recipe, and by the late afternoon I finally managed to hook and catch one. And if I'm being honest, that's about all I did today. Day 366 I was back to gift giving, and I spent a long time waiting here for Scarlet to show up. I'll make it easy for you. She did not show up. If I'm being honest with you all, the rest of the week is pretty boring, so I'm going to save you the details. All I did was give out gifts to the last villagers who still weren't at full hearts. Day 373, however, was a much more important day.
My disappointment is immeasurable, and my day is ruined.
With my coffee bean plants now grown, I had everything I needed to complete the cooking collection. So I ran around the farm collecting up all the ingredients I'd need, put my chef's hat on one last time, and finally cooked every meal from the collection, meaning I could tick off my second to last goal towards perfection. And then I slept for 5 days straight, and I finally awoke from my slumber on day 378. You have to understand I was so close to perfection. All I needed was to win the hearts of 2 villagers, and that's exactly what I did. I found Scarlet in Pondwood and handed her some goat's cheese, which finally got her to max hearts. And back in the valley, I warped my way to Aurora Vineyard, where I handed Apples his final starfruit, and I could finally tick off my last goal. The next day, on day 379, I awoke to birds flying and the sound of the summit calling me. Sally and I rode to the base of the summit, and I walked to the top. Who was waiting for me there but none other than my own husband Magnus. I watched Krobus, the dwarf, Camilla, the witch, and fairies fly past, and the credits started to roll. Perfection is definitely no easy task, and I was happy to have seen it through. Although afterwards I found Scarlet phasing through walls, and I thought to myself, no wonder I can't find her some days. So there you have it, perfection has been achieved. And you may be wondering, Poxiel, it's only day 379. Well, you're right, so let me take you through what I did afterwards. From days 380 to 383, I decided to go on a massive decorating spree around the valley. I started off in my island farmhouse, which I think turned out quite nice. I then headed back to the valley where I added some finishing touches to my obelisk area and worked on my jadestone shed, which ended up with a bit of a blacksmith theme, and it turned out quite cool. I also realized these back machines are kind of useless because I can't reach them, but hey, I'm going for aesthetics here, people. I finished my decorating with a basement bar, which actually turned out way better than I thought it would. Days 384 and 385, I collected statues from around the world, including 2 gem statues and 2 statues of endless fortune from the casino, my statue of perfection from inside my house, and the statue of true perfection from Key's walnut room, which I then put down in front of my clock and finished off my golden clock area. Day 386, I purchased some potions from Camilla, which I used to zip my way into the Crimson Badlands treasure room, and I collected up my rewards. Unfortunately, I didn't have a prismatic shard on me, so I couldn't open this treasure chest. However, up at the forge, I finally turned my galaxy sword into the infinity sword by infusing 3 galaxy souls into it, and also picked up Concerned Ape's head, which I must admit looks pretty creepy on Sally. Day 387, I decided to decorate my oil maker shed, and by taking inspiration from the layout of the jadestone shed, it turned out pretty good. A lot more cozy than the other one. Day 388, I reserved for the final episode of Panning with Poxiel! The rain here was really summing up my luck, and once again I did manage to pan one up. But after what's happened over the last 400 days, I honestly couldn't be too disappointed, and my special guest Sally has been a wonderful co-host. Day 392, I watched the moonlight jellies roll into shore, and bobbed along to the best song in the game. From days 393 to 398, I went into full hibernation mode and slept away the days. I think you can tell I'm ready for this all to be over. On day 399, I rode Sally around the valley for the last time, just enjoying the views, seeing all the places we ventured to, and visiting places I may never visit again. And finally, on day 400, I soaked in the beautiful hot water of the spa. As is tradition in all of my 100 days videos, I do this to reflect on the past 100 days, and I can safely say I was very happy with how the last 100 days have gone, and I couldn't have asked for a more perfect ending. Well, there you have it. 400 days of Stardew Valley Expanded is finally complete. Here's a look at the final farm. I'm stoked with how this series turned out, and I hope you have all enjoyed following along with the expanded series. Unfortunately, this will be the last video in the series as I have nothing to achieve now, but I'm excited to get into the next series that I've been planning for a while now. If you have enjoyed these last 400 days, be sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel, as it helps push these videos out for more people to watch. And as always, you're all wonderful people, so have a wonderful day. And thank you so much for watching.